A gray-haired old man lies on the ground. Blood flows from his mouth and nose. Life fades from his eyes. A young blue-haired guy with hair-colored eyes, dressed in a kimono and carrying a wicker basket on his back. The guy stands frozen in place with a blank look. A sickle lies on the floor next to him. The guy looks at the body of his grandfather, who was cut in half with this same sickle. The guy thought that his grandfather died such a cruel death, but there was not a tear in his eyes. Looking at the burning house, the guy thought that he did not feel any sadness, although his grandfather was his entire family. The guy remembered how he joyfully returned home, bringing with him the herbs that his grandfather sent him to look for. The grandfather, holding a tray with leaves in his hands, was delighted at the guy's return, but the guy said that the herbs were to the east of the valley, as the old man said. Seeing how many herbs the guy brought in the bag was surprised, saying that it would definitely be enough for a couple of ounces. The guy said that he came across a foxhole, where there were only her cubs, to which the old man asked if the guy killed them. The guy incomprehensibly asked why he had to kill them, because the mother would be upset to see the dead children. The old man answered the guy that this was good, after which he said to sit down at the table when he finished with his business. The old man addresses the guy, calling him Cheon Ma, and asks him to promise him something. Cheon Ma asks Grandpa what exactly he wants the guy to promise. The old man tells Cheon to never show anyone the essence that lives inside him. Cheon asks for forgiveness from his grandfather, his eyes bloody and blazing with fire, and a devilish smile covers his face. Taking off from his seat, Cheon bent down as he ran, picking up the abandoned sickle that killed his grandfather. Growling furiously in a frenzy, Cheon thinks that he is unlikely to be able to keep his promise to his grandfather. View of Chongyang County. Many buildings in the city covered with black tiles reflect the light of the setting sun. A carriage slowly rides along a busy city street surrounded by guards. This cart carries all sorts of criminals, apostates, and robbers. Looking at the passing cart, the townspeople are talking, saying that the bandits and jackals from the past have finally been caught. Other residents of the city simply curse the captured robbers, showering them with reproaches. Following the large cage, a little behind, was a cart with one single prisoner. From the window of the cafe, a mysterious man in a hat is watching what is happening, talking with his interlocutor about who is being transported in the cart. In a single cart sits a blue-haired guy, shackled up to his arms and bandaged around the shoulder and chest. After drinking from the cup, the man said that the young man in the cage would be the same age as his young master. His interlocutor told him that you shouldn't judge people only by age because, according to rumors, this guy is the most terrible prisoner in the world, to which the man replied that he was not surprised by such security. Calling the waitress, the man in the yellow robe told the stranger in the hat, turning to him as a master, saying that he was unlikely to be surprised by such a story. But then he continued by asking if the master was interested in how many people this guy had killed with his sickle, saying that he was nicknamed the Ghost with the Sickle. The man asked the master what the master instructed him to do this time, to which he replied that he had to save the man. Looking out the window, the master continued by saying that he must save the young man, who doesn't care when he dies. Suddenly a stone flew into the head of the ghost sitting in the cage, breaking his head and staining his blood. The surprised guard looks at the stone thrower, who shouted that the maniac and heavenly punishment would not be enough. Hearing exclamations from the street, both men in the cafe turned their attention back to the streets. Seeing the indifferent and emotionless face of the ghost, the master opened his eyes in surprise. The ghost straightened his hair. Blood flowed down his face and hair, while he himself only meekly glanced towards the master. The man grinned, saying that it would be better if the ghost were a girl, because he couldn't believe that he had such a face, to which the master, standing up sharply, replied that he hoped that his wish would never come true. The master leaves while the man calls out to him, shouting that he is leaving immediately after calling him, calling the stranger Master Cam. Master Cam goes out into the street, passing the cart on which the ghost is being transported, and goes in the opposite direction. Moving further and further away from the cart with the prisoners, Master Cam kept only the word found in his mind. Taking another look at the ghost sitting in the cage, the master thought that this guy was an ideal candidate. Night has fallen. The light illuminates the closed windows of the prison of the fortress of Chongyang County, into which Cheon ended up. The time has come for the changing of the guard, and some guards came to replace others at the post. The two guards who had just arrived stood next to the door to Cheon's cell. Sitting in the cell with stocks on his hands, Cheon thought about the fact that he should have waited. Cheon remembers the scarred face of a bearded man with a hat on his head. Then the man told him that although he knew that he was being followed, he did not think that he would be a new guy who did not know how to fight. Looking at his shining eyes, Somewhat reminiscent of Cheon's own eyes, he decided that this man was a real monster. Cheon thought that although he had found his grandfather's killer, he was not at all like an ordinary freak, because Cheon had never been able to get out of his grip. Hanging in the grip of his opponent, Cheon thought that it was impossible to kill him, remembering the brutality of ridicule. Cheon wondered if he would be able to defeat his grandfather's killer if he mastered martial arts. Looking up at the ceiling, Cheon wondered if he would have a chance for revenge. A stream of smoke suddenly rushed past Cheon's feet, quickly filling the room. Seeing the smoke, Cheon first decided that it was a fire, but then he noticed that the smoke was intoxicating, remembering that while living with his grandfather, he had acquired a wealth of knowledge about herbs. By smelling the odors, Cheon was able to pinpoint the presence of herbs such as Sorus and Angelica. Cheon manages to distinguish valerian with trillium, while the guards, under the influence of smoke, begin to fall off their feet. Cheon remembered that by mixing all these herbs together, you can create dope, after which he sees that everyone else in the prison is lying unconscious. Inhaling the smoke of the dope once again, Cheon closes his eyes as the smoke rushes past him. Suddenly, the door to Cheon's cell opens, and Master Kam enters, standing opposite Cheon, who has lowered his head. Master Kam removes the chains that chained the stocks on Cheon's hands to the walls. However, Master Kam notices how the Phantom, who should already be passed out, is looking at him. Without having time to ask why the Phantom did not lose consciousness from the dope, the Master receives a blow to the stomach. Groaning in pain, the Master sees the ghost instantly run out of the cell, trying to escape. Running, Cheon thought that he did not understand what was happening but saw a chance to escape, confident that the dope would not finish him off. However, Cheon's escape is interrupted by a sharp push from behind, which confuses the young man. Cheon received 4 quick blows to the back on the pressure points, causing him to immediately slow down. Master Kam replied that he had paralyzed him, and that now he would not be able to escape. But Cheon was shocked by how quickly the warrior managed to get close to him. Grabbing Cheon, the Master forcefully threw him into the wall, deciding that paralysis was not enough. Clearing his throat, Cheon glances at the warrior, at first deciding that this is his master. But after looking closely, Cheon realizes that it's still not him, noticing the similarity, but thinking that the warrior in front of him does not have a scar on his left eye. Someone wearing a hat and looking like a nobleman asks Kam if this is the young man he was talking about. Kam answered the gentleman that he had better wait outside, but the man interrupted him, saying that he had always wanted to see what prisons looked like, noting that there was nothing here but a stench. The man continues saying that he wants to see Cheon's face, ordering Kam to bring a chair for him while Cheon just silently watched. Kam, taking Cheon by the hair, lifts him from the floor and sits him down leaning on the wall. The man grins, saying that Cheon really does look like him, intending to take off his hat. Opening his eyes in surprise, Cheon looks at the man sitting in front of him. The man, who turned out to be his exact copy, replies that they found the double at the right time and in the right place, calling it a wonderful coincidence. Looking at Cheon's surprised face, the man grins again, saying that he understands his surprise. Sitting on a bench with a hat in his hand, the guy says that he heard that Cheon will be executed in 2 days and quartered. Cheon answers his interlocutor in the affirmative, saying that everything is correct. The guy answers Cheon that this is an unenviable fate, saying that they were born with the same faces, but one became a nobleman and the second was sentenced to death. The young man continues, saying that Cheon has the right to a second chance, from which the latter immediately perks up. He invites Cheon to become a double of Mokyong-gun, a master from the Brotherhood of Swords, introducing himself at the same time. Annoyed by this proposal, Cheon began to think about what kind of chance he was being offered. Mok tells Cheon they are not afraid, telling him to imagine a mansion, delicious food, maids, and a soft bed. In addition, to add that with a salary like theirs, Cheon will be able to go wherever he wants. Kam holds out his hand with the red pill, telling Cheon that if he makes up his mind, he should eat it. Cheon asks if it is poison, to which Kam replies that they did not come to the suicide bomber for the sake of killing. Kam says that Cheon will receive the antidote after he completes their task, asking if Cheon is ready. Looking at the pill, Cheon mentally remembers his grandfather, thinking that he got a second chance. Having swallowed the pill, Cheon continued the thought that now he had a chance to get even with his grandfather's killer. Cheon asked the two if they would now allow him to have a second chance. Mok says it was a wise decision, telling Kam to remove Cheon's shackles. By delivering repeated blows to Cheon's pressure points, Kam restored his ability to move, after which he removed the shackles. Standing up to his full height, Cheon sighed, stretching his arms, which were swollen from the shackles, and stretching his legs. Kam tells Mok that he will go ahead, telling the master to follow him, to which Mok agrees. Mok turns to Cheon, telling him that it is time for them to move forward. Cam opened the door of the dungeon, looking around, and then said that the outside was clear and that they could go. But turning around, Cam saw that Mok was facing Cheon, frozen in place. Cheon looked at Cam with a sadistic smile, twisting his neck to Meister Mok. Discouraged, Cam cannot comprehend what is happening, shouting out the question, "What the hell is this?" Mok's body with his neck twisted falls at Cheon's feet, an emotion of horror frozen on Mok's face. Cheon asks Cam, frozen in emotion of surprise, what they should do, feigning surprise. Smiling madly, Cheon tells Cam that it seems to him that his double is already dead. It's night outside, screams are heard throughout the city while one of the buildings is blazing with fire. Inside a burning building, someone is holding a severed human head by the hair. Thinking about how much fun he is having, the man with the sickle chops everyone he meets left and right. With a crazy smile, waving a sickle and cutting up everyone he meets, Cheon thinks about how much fun he is having. Standing surrounded by corpses, Cheon thinks about the fact that until this moment, he had killed everyone, in his opinion, responsible for the death of his grandfather. Cheon remembered his grandfather's words that he should not allow the essence inside him to escape. Throwing away the head he had cut off, Cheon thought about what he should do now that the people in front of him were dead. Smiling and laughing, Cheon touches his face with a bloody hand, realizing what kind of entity his grandfather was talking about. Suddenly, one of the survivors backs away, calling out Cheon as a ghost while the latter comes at him with a sickle. Cheon wondered if he was truly evil, and then decided to think about it after finishing off the survivor. But before he can swing his sickle, Cheon receives a powerful kick to the side. Cheon's outrages were interrupted by a man in a red cloak and a wicker hat, holding a sheathed sword with one hand. From the blow he received, Cheon went into a long flight to the other side of the room. While Cheon was lying on the floor clearing his throat, the man saved by the stranger ran screaming while the warrior looked thoughtfully at Cheon. The man grins, saying he's impressed that Cheon is still alive, unsheathing his sword. The shaking Cheon, holding his aching side, just silently looked at the unfamiliar warrior, looking at a stranger. Seeing his flaming eyes, Cheon immediately realized that this man was dangerous. Approaching Cheon, the man said that in his opinion, the fighter from Cheon is insignificant. Quickly approaching Cheon, surprised by the speed of the stranger, the warrior asked how he could withstand his blow. The warrior grabbed Cheon by the throat, but Cheon wondered how he got to him so quickly, asking if there was a person in front of him. The man replies that he knew that he was being watched, but did not believe that it would be a man who did not know how to fight. Before the man can ask a question, he pierces Cheon's stomach with his blade, still holding him by the throat. Taking the blade out of Cheon, who was coughing up blood, the man again says that it's still surprising that such a new guy could withstand his blow. Having pierced Cheon again, already in the shoulder area, the man added that it would still be better to get rid of him. The man told Cheon that he shouldn't have killed left and right like that, because he could still live in peace. Cheon realizes with bitterness that as soon as he found his grandfather's killer, he was immediately and easily defeated. Cheon's gaze faded, and before losing consciousness, the only thing he thought about was whether he would kill him like this. However, Cheon managed to survive, although he was sentenced to death for his crime. Cheon thinks that if he got just one more chance, he would definitely achieve his goal. Cheon breaks Mok's neck as Master Cam looks on in bewilderment. Cam grabs Cheon by the throat and screams "bastard" and slams Cheon against the wall while his hat flies off his head. Shocked, Cam asked Cheon how he dared to kill the young master, wondering if he had gone crazy. To which Cheon, smiling, asked, "What if it's the other way around? Because a double always takes risks when it replaces the original." Still in Cam's grip, Cheon replies that he is clear-headed enough not to die for Mok. To which Cam asks if Cheon is afraid of dying by his hand, to which Cheon retorts that if Cam wanted, he would have been dead a long time ago. Cheon told Cam that he and his master were probably not that close, to which Cam reacts by throwing Cheon over his shoulder. Slamming Cheon's face into the ground, Cam twisted his right arm, immobilizing him. Having immobilized Cheon, Cam reached for the dagger behind his back, jerking to reveal the sparkling blade. Drawing his blade, Cam tells Cheon that he will now die, frozen over his immobilized opponent. Smiling, Cheon answers whether he really thinks so, after which Cam asked why he should think differently. Cheon replies that he took poison and that he cannot survive without an antidote, which means that he will only have to obey Cam. Cheon continued by saying that this is much more convenient for the master, because now the master of the Brotherhood of Swords will be his faithful dog. Cam was taken aback, asking if he meant that Cam should betray the young master by becoming his puppeteer. Cheon grins. He and Cam exchange meaningful glances, to which Cam only eloquently remains silent. Exhaling, Cam raised his blade over Cheon's head and then prepared to strike. Cam froze, holding the hilt of the blade, which was pointed straight at Cheon's head. But the blade did not reach its target, stopping right in front of Cheon's face, cutting off one of his locks. Rising, Cam said that from now on, Cheon is Mokyongun, master of the Brotherhood of Swords. Keon, definitely satisfied with what he heard, broke into a smile, maintaining his empty gaze. Keon and Cam are in the Brotherhood of Swords, a large fenced area resembling a fortress. While changing his clothes, Cam tells Keon that he won't have to meet the fraternity members. Keon replies that there won't be much difference with his double, to which Cam told him not to doubt himself, since he took the role of a puppet, because if he is discovered, it will not be possible to neutralize the poison. Coming closer, Cam said that if Keon disobeys or becomes cunning, he will die immediately. To which Keon, grinning, only answered in the affirmative, saying that he understood everything. Cam throws a pill to Cheon to neutralize the poison, telling him that he needs to take one every 12 hours if he doesn't want to die from the poison, and tells him to keep that in mind. Dawn lit up the cloud-covered sky, marking the end of the most unusual night of Cheon's life. Taking a bite of a poison neutralization pill, Cheon thinks that he is extremely lucky. Holding the wounds, Cheon thinks that surviving despite such wounds is a miracle, but he got another chance. Sitting on the window of the estate, Cheon remembers that his grandfather told him not to rush to the next world, to which Cheon asked his grandfather not to worry, because he will not leave until he takes revenge. Cheon remembers the face of his grandfather's killer, thinking that he is sure that Cheon is dead, and Mokyongun's body has already been found. Then, thinking that the Brotherhood of the Sword is a fighting clan, Cheon decided to impersonate their master in order to train hard and find his grandfather's killer. He thought back to the day he saw his grandfather's body cut in half. After which, smiling, he decided that his grandfather's killer would die the same death. A clear sky with clouds wandering across it. A tall pagoda rises inside the Brotherhood's fortress. Cheon sits at the table in his estate, thinking about the fact that he miraculously survived. Several dishes are laid out on the table in front of Cheon. Picking up the noodles with chopsticks, Cheon reasons that now he has a chance to learn martial arts. However, Cheon sees the silhouette of a man behind the door, realizing that this is a guard assigned by Master Cam, who must look after him, which annoys him. Standing in front of the door is a bearded man, Kokun, Master Cam's junior guard, wearing a green robe armed with a sword, tapping his foot, and clasping his hands behind his back. Kokun's face is distorted into an emotion of irritation, but Kokun only remains silent with displeasure. Continuing to tap his foot on the ground, Kokun wonders why they weakened the punishment for a guy who is not even trained in martial arts. A shocked Gochung shouts at Master Cam, asking if he really killed Mokyongun. Cam immediately shuts him up, telling him to stop yelling and adding that his job won't change because of it. Cam tells Gochun to watch and keep an eye on Cheon so that he doesn't run away, saying that he will prepare for the next meeting for now. After this meeting, Cam plans to get rid of Cheon, which surprises Gochung. Cam continued, saying that as soon as he was done with him, he would immediately start a new life. Gochung asks Cam if he didn't tell you that Cheon took poison. Gochung continued by asking if he had the opportunity to disobey, given that they had chosen the third young master, after which Cam interrupted him, saying that Cheon was not like that. Gokun asked Cam again, to which Cam replied that Cheon would not tolerate violence, because being a suicide bomber, he thought of killing Mokyongun and taking his place. When leaving, Cam says that although he is obliged to protect him, he is still a psycho, and therefore Cam hopes that everything will end soon. Looking after the departing Cam, Gochun only silently looked after him. Hitting the door behind him with his head, Gochun does not understand what is special about Cheon, because he's not a fighter, and besides, he is poisoned, after which he thinks that he is unlikely to disobey under the threat of execution. Hearing the guard knocking his head on the door, Cheon just silently looks in his direction. Continuing to eat noodles, Cheon thought that Cam didn't say why he needed a double. He only left a guard so that Cheon wouldn't run away. Cheon thought that even though he had not been in the Brotherhood for long, he already understood the original, thinking that nothing was in danger for him yet, considering that it was not so dangerous here, but too safe. Tapping his finger on the table, Cheon thought that it was impossible to do without a substitution. Smirking, Cheon wondered whether it was worth remaining silent if he so needed a double. Breaking the chopsticks in his hand, Cheon decided that now it was his time to become the boss. Gohan, who was guarding the door to Cheon's room, tired of banging his head against the door, decided to take a nap while standing. Gohan, scared, woke up when Cheon opened the door and left the room. Gochun asked Cheon what he was doing, believing that he was going to the restroom, which Cheon confirmed, saying that he would not be long and asking if Gochun would go with him. Gochun pointed an irritated finger at the room, telling Cheon to shut up and go back. Cheon asked if his name was Gochung, saying that it would be better for both of them to close their eyes. Gochung grabs Cheon by the clothes and then slams him hard against the door, which Cheon is clearly not very happy about. Holding Cheon, Gochung tells Cheon that he forgot his place and that he should not hope to deceive him and return to the room. Cheon just silently looks at Gochung with the empty look that Cheon is already accustomed to. Taking Gochung by the shoulder, Cheon said that Gochung was much weaker than calm, which confused Gochung. With a sharp movement, Cheon grabbed Gochung by the wrist, after which he immediately threw him over his shoulder. Having knocked Gochung to the ground, Cheon used the same grip on him that he experienced on himself from Calm. Frightened, Kokon caught himself thinking he couldn't move, which made him wonder if he was paralyzed. Gokna, thinking that Cheon was hiding his martial art, suddenly begins to move, which makes Cheon annoyed. Continuing to hit Gokun's painful points with his finger, Cheon said that Master Kam did it much better, while Gochung screamed heart-rendingly. Looking at Cheon with tears in his eyes, Kokon thought about what Cheon was carrying. He couldn't just spy Master Kam's skill. Looking straight into Cheon's face, distorted by a smile, Kokon realized that Master Kam was right that Cheon was a real psycho. Suddenly, Gokhan stood up and asked Cheon if he had forgotten that he had been poisoned. Gokhan, breaking into a scream, reminds Cheon that without an antidote, he will die bleeding to death in hellish torment. Before Gochung can continue his incredibly persuasive speech, Cheon grabs him by the jaw. Under Gochung's distorted words, Cheon answered him that he really took poison, asking how he could forget, biting a hangnail on his finger. Opening Gochung's mouth, Cheon poured his blood into his mouth, flowing down his bitten finger. Grabbing his throat and clenching his legs as if from suffocation, all of Kokhan's thoughts were filled only with the word poison. Trying to cough up blood, Kokhan thought that he had to cleanse the blood, while Cheon said that since childhood, he had tried different poisons while collecting herbs with his grandfather. After which he kicked Kokna and added that at some point Cheon's blood itself turned into poison. Licking his finger, Cheon said that he recognizes any ingredient by taste and smell, and besides, no poison affects him. Smiling at Gocheng, Cheon says that he won't need an antidote to their poison. Suddenly, Cheon's face changes to a friendly smile, after which he says that he wanted to ask how things were going with the Brotherhood. After which, Cheon adds that he is the only one who has the antidote, adding that he is sure that they will get along. In the middle of the Brotherhood's fortress stands a massive building, which is the headquarters of the Brotherhood of Swords. In the chambers of the head of the clan, a bearded, long-haired man lies on the bed, and another person stands next to him. On the bed lies the head of the Mokindan clan, whose beard and hair are streaked with gray, as if suffering from a fever. The old man in the hat, being a doctor, said that nothing was working, holding a towel in his hand. Wiping the sweat from the face of the clan head, the doctor thought that he had tried all possible herbs, but still did not understand either the cause of the disease or the cure for it. The disgruntled doctor reflects that it would have been great if the head of the clan decided on the issue of an heir. There were 4 candidates left in the Brotherhood, but none of them was appointed as a successor, which is why a storm will soon come, because with the death of the head, blood will be shed for his place. The doctor thought that the head's wife would not stand aside and would do everything to ensure that her son took his place, when suddenly a woman appeared behind him. A woman decorated with luxurious jewelry, who was the first wife of the head of the clan named Sok, asked how the head was feeling. The doctor responded by exclaiming to the lady that he was glad to see her, but Sok only replied that she asked him about her husband's well-being. The doctor apologized, saying that they had no idea how to treat the head, saying that it was all very strange, to which the head's wife just sighed, saying that she thought so. Juice tells the doctor that if medicines don't help, then only a Taoist spell can help, which causes the doctor to become overwhelmed. The doctor replied to the first wife that Taoist spells were mere superstitions, wondering how they could rely on such things. The woman, looking at the doctor, asks if the doctor decided that she left her husband to his fate. Without allowing the doctor to answer, Seok replied that she did not want to hear anything, and that the master was already on his way to the main house, and therefore asked Dr. Ha not to interfere. Smiling mysteriously, Juice tells the maids that now she will fight for her husband's life with the help of magic, and therefore they should not let anyone inside. Holding his fist to his chin, Gochang told Cheon that this is how the Brotherhood works. Holding his chin, Cheon says that in general, he understands the situation in the Brotherhood. Rising from the floor, Qian invites Gochang to get on the road, since this is all. When Kokhan asks where they will go, Qian replies that they will go to the head of the clan. Qian and Kochen left the estate, where Qian, according to Kam's plan, was supposed to wait for orders. Qian says that if Gochang's words are to be believed, Mokyonggun and Master Kam wanted to use Qian to remove Mokyongho and finish off both candidates, which Gochang confirms. Holding a paper in his hand with a picture of a certain man, Qian thinks that this is perhaps their best plan. The first of the candidates is Mokyongho, 20 years old. A special feature is a scar on his left cheek, loves women and carousing, does not want to train, and therefore is the least competent. Then 18-year-old Mokin Pyong, whose sharp eyes he inherited from his mother, has intelligence and cunning, so it is unknown what he will do for the post of head of the clan. According to Kam's plan, Qian was supposed to provoke Mokypyong to kill Qian, after which the eldest son would allegedly accidentally hurt his brother, killing two birds with one stone. As a result of the brawl, only one would remain, which Cheon calls how to ride into heaven on someone else's hump. It doesn't matter which of the candidates will survive. The main thing is that two of them will die, and Mokyonggun would remain unharmed, and therefore would immediately win. Cheon thinks that his tactics were very well thought out, but with his death, a new player appeared. Gokhan asked Cheon why he, the young master, should visit the head, to which Cheon said that he had to come because his life and death did not depend on him. While Cheon was scattering torn pieces of dossiers on the candidates, Go Chang warned that Master Kam would be unhappy if he found out about this. Cheon said that he was sure that Gokhan would not tell Kam the secret, for which he thanked him in advance, which made Gochan noticeably tense. First wife Sok stands at the entrance to the clan head's estate, holding a fan in her hand, waiting. Someone with a staff in his hand slowly approaches the entrance to the head's estate, going to meet Mrs. Sok. The man who approached turned out to be a Taoist master named Myoshin, who immediately asked if he could see the master. Sok, keeping silent at first, replied that she had heard that he was the best master, and therefore she would completely trust him. The old man thanks the lady, after which he says that the longer this lasts, the worse it gets, so he asked to immediately take him to the head. The old man continued, saying that everyone should leave the palace, including the lady, to which Sok replied that only the guards remained in the palace. Sok clarified with Myosin, because he had not forgotten anything, to which the old man replied that of course not. Myosin asked Mrs. Sok, what about his payment and the master's seal promised to him? Sok replied that if Myosin succeeds, he will be given 300 gold pieces, for which the old man humbly thanks. Lady Sok ordered everyone to leave the palace and not enter it until Sok ordered it, and her order was immediately obeyed. Moving away from the palace, Sok thought that in fact she didn't really believe in all this Taoist magic, but circumstances forced her. Entering the training area, Siak notices a bare-chested man practicing a pose. Looking at the young man, she recognizes him as Mok Yuchen, the fourth son, adding a note about what a degenerate he is. Irritated, Sok thought that this idiot could be understood, but turning around, she continued to think that he should not even think about the place of the head, because she would not allow this. Mistress Siak headed in the other direction from the training ground, followed by her maids. Just as Siak is about to leave, Cheon and Gokhan approach the training ground. Cheon hums questioningly. Looking towards the site, Cheon asked Gochang who they were both seeing now. Gochang replied that this is the fourth son, adding that he trains hard, but Cheon remembers that the guy's name is Mokyuchon. Watching Mokyuchon, Cheon thinks that even though he said that he seems careless, in reality he is confident and decisive, which makes him look like the head of the clan, and also looks like he values friendship highly. Cheon asked Gochang if it was possible to learn martial arts like this, to which Gochang replied that the stance of a horse, in which a guy stands, develops the strength of the lower body. Gochang also added that this is where all martial arts come from, which is why Cheon mockingly calls him Master Gochang. Then, with a completely indifferent face, Cheon asked if he could kill Kam by becoming a master, causing Gochang to fall into a stupor. Cheon turned around without hearing the answer, and asked if he could kill Kam if he became a master. Gokhan, with visible panic on his face, wonders why Cheon came up with such a question, believing that he already understood that they were going to abandon him, surprised by Cheon's intelligence. Gochang answered Cheon that the basis of martial arts is internal training, and Cheon asked what it was. Gokhan replied that this is what they call breathing, saying that through breathing, the energy of nature circulates in the body, accumulating chi energy, and the more of it, the stronger you are. Then he continues, saying that it is impossible to master chi energy in a day, Because even if everything works out, such a first-class warrior cannot be defeated because it took Calm more than 30 years. Cheon replied that Calm had clearly succeeded in this, adding that this was unlikely to happen in a short time, which Gochang confirmed. However, behind Cheon's back, Gochang mockingly thinks that Cheon will never succeed. Gochang did not say that time is also important for internal training, so if you do not sharpen Chi, at least from 5 to 9, then energy will accumulate, but will never be properly collected. Looking at Cheon, Gochang continued to mentally mock, saying that even his life would not be enough to collect all the energy. Smirking and looking away, Gochang compared Cheon to a frog in a well, believing that Cheon would never succeed. Suddenly, Cheon turns around, and with a blank look reaches his hands towards Gochang's face. Pushing back Gochang's eyelid with his finger, Cheon replied that his eyes were so attractive that Cheon wanted to tear them out. Then letting go of his face, Cheon with a friendly smile invited Gochang, calling him a master, to become his man. After which Cheon quickly turned around, hearing an uncertain agreement from Gochang. While Gochang covers his eyes with his hands, Cheon wonders if he couldn't just kill Calm, because he doesn't trust Cheon and therefore it will be difficult to win him over to his side. Gochang tells Cheon that they better get out of here quickly. Cheon wonders why. Gochang replies that the third son did not get along with his younger brother, and Cheon asks why. Gochang says that 2 years ago the younger brother insulted his own mother, after which the third beat him half to death, which made Cheon laugh. Cheon laughs, saying that the third brother is quite cute. To Gochang's misunderstanding, Cheon replies that at least they are still alive. Gochang says that it's time for them to go, otherwise there will be big troubles. The sunset descended on the palace, causing the sky to turn purple like lilac flowers. There was still not a soul in the palace, following the order given by Lady Seok. There are many red threads stretched along the room. Some of them have coins twitching on them. The hands and feet of the head of the clan are tied to threads that entangle most of the space of the bed. Myoshin stands nearby, holding the threads in his hands. Corruption spreads throughout the body of the clan head, flowing through the veins and approaching the heart. The old man thought about it. At first glance, it looks like poisoning, but there is definitely something deadly here. And the monk is surprised that the head could withstand so much, wondering what kind of mighty warrior he is. Having opened his suitcase, the old man understood that with every passing moment, the chances that the warrior would survive were getting less and less. Having taken out paper and ink, Myosin intended to do what was asked of him, regardless of whether the warrior died or not. Sitting down on his knees in front of the paper, the old man raised the brush soaked in ink over the paper. Drawing secret signs on paper with ink, the old man created a talisman, saying a prayer. Having finished reading the prayer and finishing the talisman, the old man immediately threw it towards the head of the clan. Having stuck to the body of the head of the clan, the talisman began to shine with light, illuminating the room with rays. The old man began to make seals with his fingers, shouting spells, ordering him to appear and fight. The head of the clan groaned painfully as Myoshin continued to make seals, talking about the general who protects the Dharma and instills the trap before the manifestation of the form of the golden body. Changing the seal again, the old man continued, speaking about the golden and unsullied body of the Buddha, the protector of the water crystals, the Dharma, which made the warrior cry out in pain. Shocked that the flesh was too strong, the old man rushed to finish the ritual. Under the pressure of the old man, the eyes of the clan head turn red, and the cries of pain become louder. Suddenly, Myosin hears a noise behind him, causing him to be distracted from the ritual. Turning around in horror, the old man decided that it was Mrs. Sok, thinking that if she disturbed him, something terrible would happen. Suddenly, dark energy erupts from the clan leader, throwing the old monk back and knocking over his tools. The throned priest was surprised that he did not hit the wall, but someone's legs. Turning around, he saw Cheon and Kokan, who asked the old man in horror what was happening here. The confused old man does not have time to ask who is in front of him, as Cheon, under the questioning cries of Kochan, moved forward. Smiling, Cheon folds his hands forcefully, greeting the head of the clan. Under the surprised glances of Myosin and Gochang, Cheon greeted his father, who was groaning and passed out. Continuing to look with a smile at the lying head, Cheon says that he is glad to see him. A loud cry was heard from the palace of the head of the clan, demanding to leave immediately. Cheon stood over the clan leader's body, wheezing in agony, as the monk urged Cheon and Gochang to leave immediately. Myoshin says that he almost managed to control the demon inside the head of the clan, but now he will become much stronger, again telling those present to get out. The old man, hysterical, tries to convince Cheon and Gochang to leave because otherwise he will not be able to finish what he started. Suddenly, to the surprise of everyone present, the head of the clan groaned loudly, stunning everyone around him. Kion and Kokon looked in surprise at the head who suddenly screamed, to which Myosin only sighed in annoyance. Kion watched as the eyes of the screaming clan head suddenly began to transform, barely resembling human ones. The talisman on the head's body burned down, and the filth began to be released from his body again. When Myosin saw this, he realized that a demon had taken possession of his soul. Myosin rushed to Gochang and Cheon, telling them to help him restrain the possessed leader and prevent him from breaking the threads. The possessed clan leader soared above the bed, and the threads began to fall off his arms and legs, leaving the heroes little time to act. Gochang and Cheon clung to the head of the clan, while Myosin pasted a talisman on his forehead and began to read a prayer. From the words spoken by Myosin and the influence of the talisman, the demon lost his temper and screamed. Having grabbed Kokhan's hand, the demon immediately twisted it, leaving Kokhan no chance. Kokhan screamed pitifully, his eyes watering and sweat rolling down his forehead. Kion and Kokhan were surprised that the possessed man managed to tear off a piece of the bed. Myosin replied that the demon had become stronger. Myosin told the guys to hold the head tightly, because they will all be finished if the monster manages to get out. Kokhan notices how the demon is crawling towards him along the head's hand, which is why he screams. Seeing that the demon had almost overtaken his hand, Kokhan shouted, saying that the monster was already here. Immediately reacting to Gochang's cry, Cheon cuts off the head's hand with a swing of his blade, preventing the monster from reaching Gochang. Cheon saw that the demon had avoided the blow and went up the arm and back to the body. Seeing Cheon's crazy face, Gochang asks what Cheon is up to and tells him to stop. Cheon, without listening to Gochang's advice, cuts off the head's forearm with a blade, separating the demon from the body. Kokhan, splashed with blood, thought with horror that Cheon was crazy because he just went and cut off the master's hand. As soon as the severed hand with the demon in it fell to the floor, Myosin immediately stuck a talisman on it. While Kokhan was wrapping the head's shoulder with one hand, Myosin silently bent over the severed hand. Looking at Kokhan, Myosin realizes that not only did he not fulfill the request, but the head's hand was also cut off, which is why he decides to run away before everyone gets alarmed. Myosin's thoughts were interrupted by Cheon's blade aimed at his neck, preventing the old man from escaping. Looking at Cheon pointing his blade at him, Myosin became indignant, asking what the hell this was. Gochang was about to ask Cheon what he was doing, but Cheon pointed at him with his finger to keep his mouth shut. Cheon asked Myosin what happened to the head, to which the monk replied that a demon had possessed him and that he could still die. Myosin continued, saying that there was almost no time left, and asking if Cheon also wanted the death of the head. Hearing the word too, Cheon asks Myosin who wanted the death of the head of their clan. Gochang is shocked. Cheon asks the monk who hired him, to which Myosin replies that it was all a misunderstanding. Cheon tells Myosin that his hands are stronger than the old man's, and therefore with honesty, he will make his life easier. The old man, without thinking twice, answered Cheon that his mother hired him because she didn't really want to save her husband. Myosin continued by saying that, with the help of the demon, he was supposed to find out about the holy book and the master's seal, which shocks Gochang and causes confusion in Cheon. Gochang is amazed that the master's wife is capable of such a thing, thinking that the eldest son has practically taken Cheon's place. Gochang immediately shouts that Cheon must save the head of the clan, surprising Cheon. Thinking that they cannot allow Mokyungo to become the lord, he says that otherwise Seok will not leave him behind. Agreeing with Gochang's opinion, Cheon understands that Seok interfered, but Myosin says that he can save the head of the clan. However, Cheon stops the old man's speech about salvation at any cost, which causes misunderstanding in Myosin. Cheon replies that they still need to find the holy book and seal, so he tells Myosin to continue searching. Gohan, just like the old man, are shocked by such a statement, not believing that in such a situation, Cheon will think about the book and the press more than about the life of the head. Myosin says that if the monster inhabits the head's body again, it will only get worse, to which Cheon just says to hurry up, while Kokhan wonders what Cheon is thinking about, calling him a psycho. Agreeing to Cheon's request, Myosin entwines red threads around the head's hand, along with the severed hand and the wooden doll. Looking at the wooden humanoid figurine in the hands of the old man, Cheon asks what it is. Myosin replied that this was a voodoo doll that would help deceive the demon, because if the head came into contact with the demon again, he would die. Placing the voodoo doll on the head's severed hand, Myosin wound one of the red threads around his finger, casting a spell. The demon immediately broke free from the severed hand, grabbing the doll with a hand formed from flesh. The head's eyes immediately began to shine, and the room was filled with his furious scream. While the old man continued to read the spell, his hand squeezed the doll more and more tightly, gradually breaking it. Myosin, having covered himself with sweat, realizes that the flesh has become stronger, and if he presses a little harder, the ghost will be freed. The old man wonders what he should do since the young man is unlikely to listen to him. However, with a sly smile, the old man suddenly comes up with a plan for further action. Myosin tells Cheon that he will control the demon, but asks him to stay with him. Cheon decides that this is a funny idea and stays while Gochin leaves the room, saying that he won't be long. As soon as the door slammed behind Kokhan, the old man continued the ritual, casting a spell that made the demon inside the head's body groan. Suddenly the demon asked through the head's body who called him, throwing the old man and Cheon into shock. Myosin, delighted with his success, immediately asked the ghost, asking him to tell him something. Myosin asked the ghost where the holy book and the master's seal are. Wheezing, the ghost replies that the book and seal are in the basement of the medical ward, in the stone gates. Hearing that the book and seal were in the medical room and the stone gate, Cheon and Myosin tensed, when suddenly the voodoo doll that the ghost's hand was holding breaks into splinters. The old man immediately shouts to Cheon that he must cut the thread, which Cheon does not understand. Myosin replies that the demon wants to destroy the body of the clan head, and therefore asks Cheon to hurry up. Cheon, with a swing of his sword, cuts the thread in the place where the distorted flesh has almost reached, when suddenly the flesh attacked Cheon himself, entangling his leg with many arms. As the arms continued to entangle him, Cheon glanced at Myosin, whose face was distorted into a smile. There were more and more hands enveloping Cheon, and they practically covered his face. Myosin sticks a talisman on Cheon's face, thinking that the ghost and a strong monster have possessed him. Looking at the destroyed voodoo doll, the old man thinks that the release of the ghost was only a matter of time, and therefore he very successfully made Cheon his vessel. Myosin decides that it would be best to blame everything on Cheon, thereby killing two birds with one stone. The demon that possessed Cheon asks him how he dared to deceive him with a puppet. Looking at Cheon, the demon is surprised that he was deceived by him, noticing Cheon's sweet face. The demon replies that he will take Cheon's body instead of the old man, and then tells Cheon to be stuck in his own mind forever. The bright sun is shining from behind the treetops. Cheon is standing, carrying a wicker basket on his back. Cheon stands by the stream, holding a bucket in his hand and admiring the surrounding nature. Looking around, he finds the landscape extremely familiar, realizing that this is his mineral spring. Listening to the bird chirping, Cheon thinks about how quiet and beautiful it is in the mountains. While collecting water from the spring, Cheon says that he cannot forget this spring, because he came to it every day. Walking back along the path with water, Cheon catches himself thinking that he is now feeling a strange sensation. Hearing an unclear noise in the distance, Cheon thinks that it's as if someone is leading him, after which he silently thinks. Suddenly, looking at the trees, he notices a pillar of smoke and fire behind the trees, instantly alarmed. The shocked Cheon suddenly realizes that all this time he was walking towards his house, which makes him even more horrified. Having thrown the bucket of water, Cheon immediately begins to run towards the house, shouting to his grandfather. Running towards the house, Cheon mentally prays that this is not what he thinks about. Running out to the burning house, Cheon notices his grandfather's body lying on the ground, cut in half. Grabbing his grandfather's body, Cheon screams in panic, begging his grandfather to hold on and not die. Holding the body in his arms, Cheon thought that he finally understood what kind of person his grandfather was. Pressed against the crippled body of his grandfather, Cheon realizes that his grandfather was very dear to him. Watching from behind and hearing Cheon's thoughts, the demon raised his hand, realizing what exactly Cheon wanted. Pointing his hand towards Cheon, the demon concentrated the filth and then directed it towards Cheon. As soon as the filth overtook Cheon, his eyes and ears became covered with dark lines, and behind Cheon, he heard the voice of his grandfather calling him. Grandfather asked Cheon if he wanted to help him, saying that Cheon was kind of absent-minded. Shocked by the fact that a living grandfather suddenly appeared in front of him, Cheon does not understand what the hell is happening. Intoxicated by the demon's spell, Cheon stops hugging his grandfather, causing the grandfather to drop the wicker basket. Grandfather asks Cheon what's wrong, saying that he almost knocked him down, to which Cheon only apologizes to his grandfather. Hugging his grandfather, Cheon thinks that he will not lose him again, because his grandfather is the only thing worth living for. Grandpa chuckles good-naturedly as he hugs Cheon, just as the demon behind Cheon laughs. Watching the embrace of Cheon and grandfather, the demon suddenly comes to a conclusion. The demon thinks that the annoying but precious past and memories with love are doomed to be lost. While Cheon asks his grandfather why he was given such a name, the demon thinks that let Cheon continue to stay with his grandfather. With his eyes sparkling, the demon thinks that now Cheon will never lose his grandfather again. When suddenly Cheon turns around, piercing the demon behind with a blank stare. Cheon immediately rushes at the demon, who has not had time to understand anything, grabbing his mask-like face. While the grandfather froze with a sickle in his hands, Cheon, who grabbed the demon, thanks him for the unpleasant memory. The demon asks Cheon how he can see him, but Cheon only replies that he is annoyed when they try to deceive him with the image of his grandfather. Smiling, Cheon asks the demon if it seemed to him that the demon was mistaken. Cheon continues by saying that the demon decided that what he wants most is happiness, but in reality, that's not what Cheon wants. Cheon says that the only thing he wants is for his grandfather's killer to die by his hand. Cheon is still holding the demon's face, which is why he understands that Cheon is pouring into him, saying that he has a rich imagination and a sincere desire to kill. Looking at Cheon's face distorted by a crazy smile, the ghost thinks that even a vengeful spirit would not refuse such pure anger. The demon realizes that Cheon is hiding his identity, but that his intention is tied to something, when suddenly the grandfather decides to tell Cheon the secret of his name. The grandfather, who began to evaporate behind him, says that Cheon is a unique boy, but his grandfather wanted him to remain good and correct, and therefore his name means justice. Crumbling to a skeleton, grandfather tells Cheon to remember his name and bear it with honor. The ghost cannot withstand Cheon's pressure, causing his mask to begin to fall into pieces. Having escaped Cheon's grasp, the ghost realizes that he urgently needs to escape. Taking the sickle in his hands, Cheon immediately rushed after the ghost, who said that Cheon was a real psycho and that it was advisable for him to run away. The spirit managed to break away from Cheon, thanks to the fact that it penetrated his body, and therefore decides to calm down because he can take control of his body. Suddenly, the ghost found himself in the middle of a blooming green field dotted with flowers. Not far away, the ghost saw massive sealed doors standing in the middle of the field. The ghost is surprised that he ended up on the field and that there is a meadow inside Cheon's soul. Coming closer, the ghost examined the gate, noticing with surprise that it was there. The ghost sees that on the gate, which is the gate to the memory of Cheon, there is a seal of Buddha, which is why he does not understand why his memory is locked. The ghost, who ignored the seal, stretched out his hand to see for himself what was behind the gate, when suddenly it began to dissipate. Darkness immediately enveloped the legs of the ghost, who, realizing that the decay was going in the opposite direction, immediately begged. Shrouded in darkness, the ghost began to fall through and dissipate, being absorbed by Cheon. Although the ghost tried to resist, it was soon completely absorbed by Cheon. Suddenly, Cheon opens his eyes, awakening from his ghost-induced trance. To the old man's surprise, the energy from Cheon's body immediately begins to scatter throughout the room. Turning back, the old man saw Cheon, who was removing the talisman from his forehead. Cheon put his hand to the floor, after which streams of shadow began to creep from his fingers. The shocked old man watched as a silhouette formed from the darkness behind Cheon. Turning around, Cheon looked at the demon standing in front of him, who, expressing respect, folded his hands and greeted his master. Evening was falling on the street. A man was sitting on the steps on the way to the palace of the head of the clan, wondering if this was normal. General Manager Chang Myungan sighed heavily as he clasped his hands together. Myungan thought about the head of their clan, Mokindan, remembering that in his youth he was a true hero worthy of admiration. He remembered their meeting 20 years ago, when they defeated the pirates at the Salty Lagoon. Then Myungan was the master of the Cholgan clan, and they united to defeat the pirates. After defeating the pirates, Myungan became a manager and swore allegiance to Mokindan, but now he wonders why everything turned out this way. Myungan remembered a conversation with Sok, who asked him if he really believed that a young man from the bottom could become the head of the clan. She continued by saying that this concerns the future of the Brotherhood of the Sword, because until the Taoist finds out where the sacred book and seal are, the head will not have an heir. Thinking that the spell could be a lie and that they could have tried to intimidate the gentleman from the very beginning, Myungan was languidly silent. Suddenly standing up from the steps, Myungan shouted that this shouldn't happen, clenching his fists. Thinking that what was happening was contrary to the principles of his lord, Myungan headed to the palace, deciding to sort everything out and return it to how it was. The monk looks towards Cheon with a look full of horror, thinking that this is not an ordinary soul in front of him. Looking at the massive demon standing next to Cheon, Myosin came to the conclusion that this was a supreme evil spirit. Cheon ordered the demon monk to kill Myosin, after which the demon then rushed to the old man. The old man barely had time to raise the barrier when the demon rushed in front of him. Myosin is shocked that Keon communicates with the demon as if he were an old acquaintance, wondering who it is in front of him. Myosin's barrier could not withstand the demon's pressure, causing the demon to throw Myosin away, dispelling the spell. Smiling, the demon came closer and closer to Myosin, extending his hand to him. In a panic, the old man grabs a sword from a wall shelf, shouting at the demon to stay away. The demon attacks the old man, using the same curse that Keon had previously experienced on himself. The arms entangled the old man, and Myosin screamed, begging Keon to spare him, saying that he would do anything. Keon only replies that he doesn't need Myosin, to which the old man believes that the reason is that Myosin deceived him. Keon says that it's not a matter of deception, but that the old man also heard about where the sacred book and seal lie. As the ghost pulled the old man deeper and deeper, Myosin realized what kind of brat Keon really was. When the ghost's hands completely enveloped Myosin, he finally realized that Keon had been planning to kill him from the very beginning. Keon looked outside the room, telling Gochang, who was standing nearby, to follow him in. Kokon at first believes that everything is finally over, but upon entering the room, he is shocked. Myosin lay dead on the floor, blood still flowing from his eyes, mouth, and nose. Gochang asked Cheon if Myosin had died, to which Cheon replied to ask questions later and help remove the corpse instead. Swinging his sword and breaking furniture, Cheon tells Gochang that they will tell that Myosin went crazy and began to swing his sword, cutting off the master's hand at the same time. Cheon continued, saying that after the old man's rampage, they suddenly appear and stop him, while Gochang only silently picks up the corpse. Gokhan asked Cheon if he wanted to hide what happened, to which Chan agreed by asking what the problem was. Kokhan replied that the plan was very well thought out, but it would not be so easy to deceive Seok, and even if nothing worked out, suspicion would fall on Cheon. Keon asked if it really wouldn't work, to which Gochan replied even if it were made out that Myosin was going crazy, it wouldn't be easy to convince Seok. Keon agrees with Gochan's idea, deciding that he needs to come up with something else and then thinks about it. Suddenly, Cheon pierces his leg with a sword, saying that he will say that the old man, having cut off the head's hand, tried to kill him too. Gokhan, not yet tired of being surprised by the madness of Cheon's actions, shouts out asking what Cheon is doing. Taking the sword out of his own leg, Cheon asks Go Chang if this version is plausible enough. Kokhan thought about the fact that although disguise is very important, Cheon really pierced his leg without thinking. Gochan, holding his twisted arm, tells Cheon that he needs to stop the bleeding, to which Keon replied that the paler, the more believable. Well, just as Kokhan finished the thought that he would not want to be Cheon's enemy, the manager burst into the room. The manager looked around to see the wounded Keon, the dead Myosin in the head, missing an arm. The manager breaks down, shouting loudly and asking Cheon and Gochan what is happening. Kokhan and Cheon answer in two voices that the manager misunderstood everything. Cheon stood up, twitching, heading towards the manager and holding out his bloody hand, saying that first you should pay attention to the head. After which Cheon fell to the floor like a sack of potatoes, leaving the head and Gochang in bewilderment. The manager attacked Gochang with questions about what was happening here and why the third son Mokyongun was here. Kokhan, seeing that Cheon fell to the floor and began to smile, realized that he was just pretending. After the incident, Cheon was taken to the Sword Brotherhood's medical ward in the middle of the night. Lying in the ward with a bandaged leg, Cheon thinks about how pleasant the smell of the herbs that are piled in the medical ward is. Then Cheon noticed that the place the head named smelled even nicer. Kokhan is also in the medical room with his hand fixed. Surrounded by many people, Cheon thinks that it is better to look for a book and a seal at night without prying eyes. Kokhan entered the room in which Cheon lay, announcing his arrival, after which Cheon immediately stood up. Cheon tells Gochang that he was late, after which Gochang takes out Myosin's books from under his clothes. Cheon wonders why there are only two of them. Kokhan replies that these books were hidden because they were going to be burned. Kokhan continued, saying that all the things of the Taoist master were burned by the guards, suggesting that this was how they got rid of evidence. Cheon felt a little sad when he read that the books were called Paranormal Activity Volume 1 and Yin Yang School of Thought Original Volume. However, with a warm smile on his face, Cheon thanked Gochan, saying that he did a great job, causing Gochan to wince. Cheon asked what was wrong, to which Gochan replied that everything was fine, then asked what he wanted to find in the books. Cheon asks Gochan to look out the window, asking him to say what he sees there. Kokhan replies that he sees nothing outside the window, although at that moment a spirit monk was hovering right in front of the window. Cheon tells Gochun that's why he wants to find out, but Go Chang still doesn't understand what Qian is talking about. Suddenly, Gohan and Qian, quickly hiding the books, hear a noise outside the door. Someone shouts saying that they should not enter the room. Someone tells Mrs. Seok that the young master has not yet recovered, but she only tells him to get out of sight. The door opened and Seok came into the room, accompanied by her guards looking at Cheon. With a noticeable displeasure on his face, Seok tells Qian that they should talk. Go Chang immediately bowed down and greeted her, addressing her as First Madam, which surprised Qian. Hearing that Gokhan called her first, Qian realized that this was the first wife from a family of hereditary military men, Mrs. Seok. He also notes that Master Cam is an important person from her wing, and that she herself is a hereditary warrior and a woman of genius. Having come to the conclusion that the lady should beware more than the eldest son, Cheon bowed and greeted Seok. Sitting on the bed in a bow, Cheon apologizes to Seok, saying that he is still uncomfortable standing on his sore leg. Gokhan, looking at the lady, came to the conclusion that it turned out better than he thought, saying that everything would work out if Cheon was just as resourceful. Seok tells Cheon that she came here for a reason, which makes Cheon confused. Suddenly, Seok strikes directly at the wound on Cheon's leg. Cheon screams in pain. Gochang only manages to be perplexed by the situation until bodyguard Seok takes out the sword. Putting a sword to Gochang's throat, bodyguard Seok ordered him not to move. Seok praises Cheon, saying that the wound is real and that he managed to hurt himself for the sake of disguise. She continued by saying that the general manager believed him, adding that there was something he didn't know. Smiling, she said that a real Taoist never goes crazy from the ritual, but Cheon just remained silent. Laughing, Sok asked how a real Taoist could go crazy and run away. Hitting Cheon in the face, she asked him how he could lie to her so blatantly. With his blow, Seok threw Cheon straight to the window, which Go Chang could only watch helplessly. Waving his hand, Seok asked Cheon not to force her to repeat herself and to tell her what really happened. The wound on the leg of Cheon, who was leaning against the wall, was bleeding, but he just sat silently with his head bowed. Suddenly, to the surprise of everyone present, Cheon began to laugh, looking at the discouraged Seok. Cheon's laughter began to develop into maniacal laughter, looking at which Cheon annoyedly asked if he had gone crazy. Cheon's laughter stopped, and raising his head, he pointed his finger in the direction of Seok, giving an order to the demon monk. The demon monk immediately rushed through Seok, the flow of wind from his flight ruffling Cheon's hair. Not understanding what had happened, Juice began to look around, feeling as if something had rushed past her. Turning around, she saw how the eyes of everyone in the room were focused on the maid floating in the air. The image of the murdered Myosin flashed through Sok's head, and Sok realized that there was a ghost in front of her. Cheon came close to Seok, asking that she needed a book and a seal. While the ghost was strangling a maid named Sowa, Cheon told Seok that if she needs a book and a seal, then she needs to negotiate and not pointlessly threaten. Cheon tells Seok that she may not believe it, but he wants to live long, after which he says that Mokyungho is not the only one who is going to become the head of the clan. Then he added that since she treats him like that, then perhaps he should turn to his older brother. Cheon continued by saying that maybe he should meet his little brother, because even if they don't get along, maybe they should make peace. Cheon asks if the lady now understands who the sword is hanging on, moving away from Seok. Cheon then said that it was quite cold outside today, and that the lady should take care of herself. Returning to his chambers, Juice goes on a rampage, throwing furniture around the room out of impotence. Trampling a wooden chair with his foot, Seok shouts, asking how Cheon dares to behave so impudently. Seok continues to destroy furniture, saying that Cheon is impudent and a scoundrel, after which her bodyguard asks Seok to calm down. Juice asks the bodyguard that in her opinion, Juice is not calm after this upstart fooled her, to which the bodyguard only remains silent. Seok thinks about how she could have been led, believing that if something intimidates Cheon, he will become nervous and tremble with fear, not understanding why everything has changed so much. Looking at the box, Juice thinks that everything that is happening is quite strange, as if the third son had been replaced. Suddenly she wondered what if he was actually hiding his true nature. She recalls that at his age, the third son was a very gifted young man. However, after the death of his mother and grandmother, things only got worse, wondering if this was his way of protecting himself. Seok realizes that she should not have let her guard down no matter what happened, after which the maid tells Seok that they must finish off Mokyungun before he cheats. Juice does not agree, saying that if the book and printing are transferred to someone else, it will be much worse. But then Seok says that he still doesn't want Cheon to pursue her. Then he tells the maid to report the death of Master Myosin in the chambers of the head of the clan. Hearing Sok's words, the shocked maid immediately remembers that Myosin was part of a group of Taoist monks. Seok, smiling mysteriously, thinks that he won't let Mokyungun go just like that. Midnight in the medical ward, Cheon studied the books he had received, reading the Yin-Yang school of thought, which talked about the images of ghosts. Sitting in the dark by the lantern, Cheon continued to read about how the shape of a ghost depends on different conditions. The first type is Zhongnyon, which can cause chills and goosebumps with its presence. The second is Churyong, which can make a person feel pain and heaviness. The third is Huanyon, who becomes deadly and should be feared because meeting him ends in painful death. Suddenly, a demon monk emerges from the medical ward counter, right in front of Cheon. Cheon asked the demon monk if he had ever encountered such people, to which he nodded, after which Cheon assumed that the demon monk was Huanyong. Reaching his hand towards the door of the little-used medicine, Cheon noticed that the ghost's abilities were useful for walking through dungeon walls. However, he remembered that the ghost's power did not work on juice and he had to use it on the maid. Opening the door, Cheon remembers that he previously managed to use the power of a ghost on Gochang. Suddenly, the secret passage behind the shelves with medicines opened with a roar. Approaching the passage, Cheon thinks that suddenly the ghost's power does not affect Seok, since she is a first-class master. Opening the book again, Cheon thinks that it wouldn't hurt to find a stronger monster. Reading about the fourth type of Nonyon, which can intimidate by inspiring voices. Delighted with the find, Cheon took a lantern and approached the stairs leading to the dungeon. Pointing the lantern in front of him, Cheon intended to go in search of the book and seal. Going down for quite a long time, Cheon admitted that it was quite deep here, and all in order to hide the seal and writing. Continuing to descend, Cheon thought that this is probably why everyone is running with their eyes burning, because it would be nice to get the scripture and seal into their own hands. Cheon thought that apparently the power of the demon monk would not affect Master Calm, and therefore he would need other trump cards against him. Entering the small wooden gate, Cheon found himself in a huge cave. In front of him was a rise to a platform on which 5 doors were located. Having passed through the right door, Cheon found himself in an even larger cave, the edge of which was not visible from the entrance. Cheon wonders if the scripture and seal were hidden too far away. When suddenly, Cheon's foot sinks slightly into the ground, activating the pressure plate. Hearing the roar, Cheon raised his head, seeing a giant boulder falling on top of him. Having hardly jumped away from the boulder on the chain, the stone crashes into the ground with enormous force, cracking into fragments. Landing on the ground, Cheon says that these are the expected traps, while at the same time activating the stove again. This time, Cheon easily managed to dodge the trap of the releasing arrow. Cheon shot down the rest of the arrows fired by the trap with the help of a lantern, waving it like a flail. The last arrow almost hits him in the head, but Cheon manages to cover himself with a lantern, causing the arrow to stick into him. Cheon says that now he is playing big, watching as a block of stone tied with ropes to the ceiling rushes towards him. Cheon jumps onto a block flying at him from above, thinking that there are too many traps for a dungeon. The block hits the wall. Cheon, jumping off it, wonders whether the Holy Scripture is worth it, from which one comes to the conclusion that something more important than Scripture is hidden behind the traps. A lot of blades, spears, and other sharp objects tied on chains fall on Cheon from above. Having dodged the sharp objects on the chains, Cheon wonders what exactly is being guarded by so many traps. Cheon passes the passage filled with dangers, leaving behind triggered traps. Coming out to a certain hall, Cheon exhaled, saying that now the traps were definitely over. Walking inside, Cheon thinks that he did not expect to see any buildings in the dungeon. Looking around the hall illuminated by the light of a lantern, Cheon wonders if life was in full swing here before and training was conducted. Walking through the hall, Cheon approached the table on which lay a closed box. Opening the box, he saw 2 books in it, The Brotherhood of the Sword, The Basics of Fencing, and The Brotherhood of the Sword, The Path to Knowledge. Cheon remembers that Gochang told him that the scripture consists of the basics of fencing and the path to knowledge, after which he takes both books. Looking around, Cheon thinks that the room is somehow too empty given its size. Cheon went to one of the corners, in which there was a massive wooden box. As Cheon approached, he saw that it was a platform, and heavier than usual, and that, judging by the traces, it had been moved often. Cheon moves the podium, wondering if they really wanted to hide something with its help. Moving the podium aside, Cheon confirms his fears, seeing a hole on the wall sealed with seals. Having broken the seals and opened the hatch, Cheon sees a container inside. This container turns out to be a chest, which, like the hatch, is sealed with several seals. While removing the seals, Cheon thinks that he feels an ominous energy, that it was clearly not scripture that they wanted to hide here. As soon as Cheon opened the chest, The flame in his lantern inexplicably went out. Without having time to think about why his lamp went out, Cheon looks into the chest and freezes. Cheon took out a leather-bound book from the chest, entangled with red beads, and Cheon immediately realized that this was not just a book. From its pungent smell and texture, Cheon realized that it was covered with human skin. Someone, inflamed by the shouts of the crowd, beats the drum with wooden sticks. A nobleman who bears a suspicious resemblance to Cheon dances in a circle of musicians and onlookers. The dancing nobleman turned out to be the second candidate, named Mokun Pyong. Approaching the window, Mokun Pyong is happy about the party going on, saying that thanks to it, the Brotherhood Palace looks much brighter today. With a smug smile, he says that it's probably because he will soon become the head of the clan. Behind him is the silhouette of a man whom Mokun Pyong thanks for his successful future. This man turns out to be Master Kam, whom Mokun Pyong welcomes with open arms. Kam bows, telling Mokun Pyong that he is glad to see the second young master. It's night, illuminated by moonlight, and Mokun Pyong apologizes to Kam for keeping him waiting. He continued, saying that he wanted to have a party in honor of a good man, saying that even if his father is in bed, this is not a reason to cancel the meeting. Kam thanks Mokun Pyong, saying that he is very kind, to which he laughs, telling Kam to go ahead. When the moon was completely hidden behind the clouds, people began to leave the hall, signaling the end of the party. Mokyung Pyong grinningly asks Kam if Mokyung-gun really lost his skills. Kam, with a gloomy look, reasoned that the original was already dead, and the double had not yet been trained, noting that he was not lying now. In addition, Kam did not want to reveal that Cheon was only a double, because then he would get it because he failed to protect Mokyung-gun. Thinking that he does not intend to dance to Cheon's tune, Kam replies that Mokyung-gun has really lost all his skills. Mogun Pyong grins, saying that this idiot is so incompetent that he has lost his fighting skills. Laughing, Mokun Pyong told Kam that thanks to him, he had gained mastery, asking if he should thank him, to which Kam also laughed. Mokyung Pyong asked Kam if he would like to tell him why Mokyung-gun lost his skills. Sitting on a chair, Mokun Pyong said that even if Kam himself was to blame, he would forgive him, because everyone makes mistakes. Kam replied that he couldn't tell yet, for which he apologized, thinking that if the truth came out, he would have to clean up after Mokun Pyong. Then he added that Mokun Pyong was not in danger, which made him laugh, saying that he would believe Kam. After which, with a sly smile, he added that Kam was, after all, one of the same kind of killers, which put Kam into a stupor. Mokun Pyong asked Kam what was the matter, while Kam was thinking that he had always considered his interlocutor, albeit an evil one, to be a child. When suddenly Mokun Pyong leaned closer to Kam, and with a smile on his face asked if this was also a secret. Thinking that Mokun Pyong had decided to delve into his past, Kam then responded with tears in his eyes that everything was wrong. Smirking and grunting, Mokun Pyong told Kam that he could leave and that he would call him later. Mokun Pyong stood at the window, looking at Master Kam as he left into the night. Mokun Pyong told the two people behind him that Kam has something to hide, which means he knows something about Mokyung-gun. He orders one of his henchmen named Cho Il-san to follow Mokyung-gun, saying that Kam is hiding the reason for the loss of his skill, and Cho is close to the first circle. Cho asks Mokun Pyong if he should just follow up. Mokun Pyong replies that it's not interesting, saying that if he comes to him, then let him break his leg. Meanwhile, Cheon was still standing in the hall, holding a strange book made of human flesh in his hands. Cheon thinks that the pulsation coming from the book was not an illusion, adding that the fact that it does not feel alive is ironic. Suddenly, Cheon's eyes widened. He clearly felt that the pulse emanating from the book was nothing more than a dying pulsation. Wondering how this thing ended up here, Cheon decides it's time to unwind the beads and see what's written on it. Suddenly, a violet flame mixed with black energy appears behind Cheon. A demon monk emerged from the fire whom Cheon did not expect to see because he did not call him. Cheon asked the demon monk approaching him what was the matter. As soon as the demon monk saw the book, he immediately fell to one knee bowing. Looking at the demon monk, Cheon could not believe that the ghost was really reacting to the book like that, because fear was clearly visible in him. At this moment, Cheon was once again convinced that the book in front of him was clearly special. However, Cheon puts the book back in the chest, thinking that since the demon monk is here, then there is someone else nearby. Looking up, Cheon realizes that apparently an uninvited guest is heading towards his room. A silhouette in a cloak was quickly approaching Cheon's room, briskly galloping along the roofs. Stopping on a tree near Cheon's mansion, the man noticed Go-chan yawning. Jumping away from the tree, Cho wondered what Ko-chan was doing on the street and why he wasn't guarding the wounded gentleman. Wondering if Mokyung-gun was really hiding something, Cho looked out the window, surprised by what he saw. In the room, he saw Cheon lying on the bed, apparently sleeping. Making his way into the room, Cho thought, if he was sleeping, then why did he send Kokon on guard? Intending to check the chi of the sleeping Cheon, Cho's gaze suddenly stops at a book lying on the table. Cho is shocked because this book turned out to be Holy Scripture, the basics of fencing of the Brotherhood of the Sword. Frantically leafing through the scripture, Cho realizes with horror that he is holding the original in his hands. Cho at first wonders how Mok Young-gun managed to find him, but immediately decides that it doesn't matter, because with the writing they will certainly win. But Cho, who was engrossed in the Holy Scripture, did not notice how Cheon crept up to him. Grabbing Cho by the head, Cheon immediately hit his head on the table with such force that the tea utensils flew into the air. Cheon asked Cho what he was doing in his room, joking that Cho must have come to sleep. Cho thought that Cheon was apparently pretending to be asleep, while Cheon replied that he could help him, after which he continued to slam Cho's head into the table. Cho only has time to think that Mok Young-gun is a real madman, and after another hit of his head on the table, he passes out. Cho came to his senses after some time. His broken nose was smeared with blood. When Cho woke up, he saw an upside-down Cheon in front of him, asking if he had woken up. Having finally come to his senses, Cho, suspended above by the Naga, began to fidget and scream, asking where they were. Cheon, ignoring Cho's questions, took out a knife and plunged it into the floor in front of Cho's surprised face. Rolling up his sleeves and a sadistic smile on his face, Cheon asked the terrified Cho if he wanted to chat. Cho lies on the floor with a broken face, coughing from difficulty breathing with a broken nose. Gochung exclaimed in surprise. Cheon asked if he knew him. Gochung replied that in front of them was Cho Il-sun, one of the 3 guards of the second son. Cheon is surprised, asking why the second son's guard came to him. Gochun replies that he doesn't know, but believes that if Cho entered wearing a mask, then he probably had good intentions. Cheon throws Cho's body on his shoulders, telling Ko-chan that he should then tell everything himself. Gochung objected with a shout, saying that if Cheon was going to torture him, then it was better to leave him alone. Gohan replied that Cho was still Mok Gun-pyong's guard, and that it would be bad for him if Cheon harmed someone from his circle, to which Cheon only twisted his hand. On his knees, Gochun shouts out to Cheon not to carry Cho into that room, because it is very dangerous. Falling on his back from powerlessness, Kokon turns over and says that he no longer understands anything. Exhaling, Kokon thinks that Cheon may not kill Cho, because for all his cruelty, he is smart, looking at what happened to the head of the clan. Hanging upside down in front of Cheon, Cho tells Cheon to untie him. Cheon, not understanding this request, asks Cho why he should do this. Cho replies that since Cheon saw his face, he must know that he is here on Mok Gun-pyong's orders, after which he asks if Cheon thinks that he can get away with everything. Cho continued telling Cheon not to irritate him, and just give him the book, and he would tell Mok Gun-pyong that Cheon spared him, thinking that Cheon intended to torture him. Smirking at Cho, Cheon just looked down, answering that he was saying interesting things. Taking the knife out of the floor, Cheon replies that he heard that Mok Gun-pyong is terribly worried about his subordinates, because even now, he trusts his master and boasts. Cheon walks behind Cho, saying that so be it, he will let him go, to which Cho replies that this is a wise decision. Cho didn't have time to say that he would tell his master about Cheon's act, when he suddenly noticed blood dripping onto the floor. Cheon, holding the severed index finger in his hands, asked Cho to answer him whose finger it was. Cho, looking at his bleeding hand, thinks that if Cheon cut off his finger, then why doesn't he feel pain? Suddenly, Cho realized that he could not move and could not feel chi. Cheon answers the thoughtful Cho that it's a matter of hallucinations from a mixture of herbs, after a couple of injections of which Cho will no longer feel his body, after which he says that he will ask a couple of questions. Cheon, raising a knife in front of him, says that for silence he will cut off one finger at a time. Cheon asks the first question why Mok Gun-pyong sent him. Smirking, Cheon raises the knife, saying that the report begins right now. Immediately after the report begins, Cheon cuts off Cho's finger, to which he shouts, "Just wait." Cheon replied that Cho was silent, after which he decided to continue and cut off the second finger. Cho shouted that Cheon was a bastard, demanding to stop, to which Cheon cut off his third finger. Cheon already cut off the fourth finger, after which Cho shouted just enough. Cho screamed pitifully, begging Cheon to stop, spraying blood in all directions. Smiling, Cheon asked Cho, surprised by his reaction, asking whether to cut off his thumb as well. Cho replied that Mok Gun-pyong sent him to find out that Mok Young-gun had lost his skills. Cho sighs helplessly while Cheon just silently looks at Cho, thinking about what he heard. Thinking about Cho's answer, Cheon thought that Cho was investigating his loss of skills. Thinking that everything had changed quickly, Cheon asked the next question. It was Master Kam who told them this. Cho said that it was, after which Cheon asked if he had deprived him of turning on his brain, saying that who knew that they would not find out the whole story. Cho is shocked that Cheon realized so quickly that Master Kam is a traitor, wondering if Cheon is really that smart and suspected him from the very beginning, or if Kam was a spy. Cheon stood up, turning to Cho and saying that he had no more questions. Looking at Cho, Cheon asks him what they should do now. Cho looked at Cheon, his whole appearance showing that Cheon was not going to let him go alive. Suddenly, Cho shouts out that he swears allegiance to Cheon, which disarms Cheon. Cho shouts out that he couldn't even think that the third master was so smart, saying that only he deserves to be the head of the clan. Cho continues saying that he is ready to do anything, even give his life for him. Cheon agrees to Cho's surprise, saying that he needs to do one little thing. Cheon asked if Cho could help him, to which, thinking that he had survived, Cho shouted out enthusiastic agreement, saying that he just needed to order. Before Cho could finish his plea, Cheon stuck a knife into his throat. Smirking at Cho, who was choking on blood, Cheon said that Cho was ready to give his life. After which, pulling the dagger out of his throat, he answered that then Cho would lend him some blood. Choking on blood, Cho's last thoughts were about what a scum Cheon is. Taking the book in his hands, Cheon said that he could not forcefully untie the rosary that covered it, believing that it was a seal from the book of the yin-yang school of thought. Moving the box under the blood flowing from Cho, Cheon says that the seal will weaken if unclean blood is poured on it. The blood of the unjustly killed Cho Il-san flowed down, penetrating the beads and wetting the book. The blood continued to flow onto the book when Cheon suddenly felt something ominous. The beads on the book cracked and shattered, releasing the book and spattering blood. Cheon looks at the now free book, wondering who will come to him now. Suddenly, blood bursts out of the box, hitting Cheon's legs in a violent stream. Cho's body is thrown away and blood splashes throughout the room, covering every wall. Suddenly, streams of blood again gather directly above the book, forming a kind of whirlpool. The blood thickens, turning into a tissue-like substance, creating a cocoon in which a human silhouette can be seen. The silhouette glows brightly, splashing blood in all directions, causing Cheon to cover himself with his hands. When the wind flows towards him died down, Cheon removed his hands and looked at what appeared before him. The hall seemed to have become another dimension. The entire floor was covered in blood, and a figure froze in front of Cheon, from under whose robes only a leg was visible. The creature wrapped in fabric began to slowly approach Cheon without touching the floor with its feet. A blonde-haired, red-eyed woman wrapped in cloth and with a hat on her head appeared before Cheon. Cheon looked at the woman in front of him in shock, realizing that this did not look like Nanyan. Cheon thinks that according to the book, the fifth type of ghosts appeared before him, the blue spirit. He is Cheongnyeon. Cheon thought that he expected Nanyan to be in front of him, but he was lucky and his knees immediately gave way. Cheon fell to his knees in front of the ghost, who called Cheon just a stupid child. The ghost told Cheon to empty his soul and show her his true nature. Cheon remembered that the book said that Cheongnyeon is capable of exerting a significant influence in a certain radius, causing pain and hallucinations, and to fight them you need at least 10 Taoist masters. The ghost looked at Cheon in surprise, asking if he was a fool for still not emptying his soul. Having tensed, Cheon thought that, judging by the book, this was the same ghost. Smiling, he realized that now it was clear why, but said that now he was interested. The ghost asked Cheon what he saw so interesting. Cheon replied that the size, status, or strength of the body does not matter. The ghost will do anything that seems funny to him. Cheon continued, saying ghosts are helpless if they don't have a vessel. Cheon said that if the spirit wants his body, then he will have to take it by force. To Cheon's words, the spirit immediately responded by hitting him with a stream of blood. Cheon was surprised by the ghost's attack, which hit his side, leaving only a hole. The wounded Cheon fell groaning in pain, but the ghost only arrogantly called Cheon a stupid mortal. The spirit immediately dealt another blow with blood, but this time on Cheon's face. Having removed the skin from half of Cheon's face with a blow, the spirit asked whether Cheon had to force her. The spirit asked if Cheon now understands that he will not be able to do anything. The spirit continued, saying that Cheon only needs to obediently offer his soul. Despite the ghost's attacks, Cheon, out of breath, was still able to stand on his feet. The ghost was surprised that the guy managed to resist, even when she tore off half of his face with her attack, saying that he was not a simple brat. However, she continued that it didn't matter, lifting Cheon up by his arms and legs and pinning him to the post. The spirit offered Cheon a deal. If his soul obeys her, she will fulfill one of his wishes. When asked why she needs this, the spirit replies that this is payment, because if she continues to cripple Cheon, she will damage his soul. Cheon asked what would happen if he refused, and the spirit replied that she would kill him and find a new soul. Kian, with a peaceful face, tells the ghost that he has something he wants. The spirit began to question enthusiastically, saying that his anger showed that he had never lived an ordinary life, asking if someone had killed his family member or betrayed him. The spirit continued, saying that she would tear anyone into small pieces and that his soul would leave this world, after which he ordered Kian to name his wish. Kian, with a blissful smile on his face, says that he wants her to shut up and become his ward. The angry spirit raised pillars of blood, telling Cheon to try and endure it. Calling Cheon a short-sighted creature, the ghost unleashed all her power on Cheon. Cheon plunged into a bloody whirlpool, while the spirit asked if he could withstand the pain when his flesh was torn and his bones were broken. Watching Cheon in the bloody hurricane, the spirit says that she is sorry that his soul is a little spoiled. Swimming in the streams of blood, Cheon thinks that this taste is redder than cherries, thicker and dirtier, disgusting, with a metallic aftertaste. All his senses tell Cheon this is indeed blood, but Cheon understands that this taste is not the same as he knows it. It is different. He remembers that as a demon with a scythe, he tried a lot of blood. He asked himself if it tasted like this then, remembering that the trembling and warmth made him feel alive. And now, all he feels is death. The ghost is shocked that Cheon managed to overcome her deception. Cheon realized that in front of him was only an illusion, after which he interrupted the ghost's deception. The ghost was thrown with force into the wall so that she only groaned in pain. The ghost looked in shock at Cheon, who was standing in the middle of the room with his back to her. Looking at him, the ghost only thought that what happened was simply impossible. The ghost creates a butterfly from blood and then points it towards Cheon. Having flown to Cheon, the butterfly becomes only a bloody stain on his cheek. The ghost realizes with irritation that Cheon is now in a state of sensory freedom. Freedom of the senses is a Taoist technique that removes all sensations and allows you to leave hallucinations by deceiving your five senses. The spirit thinks that it sounds much simpler than it actually is, which is why he does not understand how a child managed to do it, who is not even a master of Taoism. Looking at Cheon, she wonders if he was really born with all the qualities of a Taoist master. Cheon, looking at the spirit, laughed as hard as he could. The spirit, irritated by Cheon's arrogance, asked if, having escaped from hallucinations, he decided that he could cope with her. Cheon closed his eyes and then answered from under his brows that a funny thought had come to his mind. Cheon showed the book to the spirit, causing her face to noticeably change. A book from the yin-yang school of thought says that the older the monster, the more likely it is that it has a vessel to which it is connected. Why does Cheon come to the conclusion that this book is the vessel of the spirit, after which he bites off a piece of it? By tearing a piece from the book, Cheon caused the ghost incredible pain, causing her to scream loudly. Cheon, convinced that he was right, continued to tear and gnaw the cover of the book. The ghost is shocked that a mortal had the courage to do such a thing, thinking that before no one could damage a book endowed with a terrifying amount of chi. Even outstanding masters could barely seal the book, causing the ghost to reply to Cheon that he had angered her. The ghost rushed at Cheon, grabbing him by the throat and pressing him against the column. Looking angrily at Cheon, the spirit told him to try and say that this was also a hallucination. The spirit continued, saying that she no longer needed his soul, and that Cheon cursed his stupidity for refusing her mercy. Cheon said that it's strange that she still hasn't taken the book from him, and wonders why. Looking into the annoyed face of the ghost, Cheon says that as he thought, the spirit should not touch her. Having concluded his conclusion, Cheon began to chew the bitten-off piece of the book, from which the ghost ordered him to stop. Starting to choke Cheon, the spirit ordered him to immediately spit out a piece of the book. Cheon, swallowing the flesh from the book, realizes that the blood that previously got into him is rampant and flows in the opposite direction. Pain runs through Cheon's body, reminding him of the first time he ate poisonous herbs. But brighter than the pain, he felt the wrath of the evil spirit. The spirit cried out that Cheon, a crazy mortal, while Cheon felt a strong desire for revenge. Cheon still managed to swallow a piece of the book, after which suddenly both he and the spirit were overcome by a strange feeling. Suddenly Cheon found himself in the middle of a city blazing with scarlet flames. Asking where he was, Cheon looked around, seeing only a field strewn with many corpses. In the middle of the field, Cheon also saw a spirit kneeling in front of a certain person on the throne. The wounded, kneeling spirit looked with anger at the figure sitting on the throne. Tearing off pieces of his robe, the spirit tied the blade to his hands, unable to hold it on his own. Pointing the sword at the figure on the throne, the spirit said something that Cheon could not hear. Cheon couldn't hear her words, but he clearly felt her all-encompassing rage. With tears in her eyes, the spirit pointed her blade at the man on the throne. The man sitting on the throne, with horns on his head, just grinned. The spirit immediately rushed with rage at the one sitting on the throne, shouting something incomprehensible. However, the one sitting on the throne with a quick movement struck the spirit in the chest, splashing its blood. The horned one tore his hand out of the ghost's chest, thereby completely depriving her of the opportunity to fight. From the wound she received, the spirit fell from the pedestal into a bloody puddle on the ground. She, lying exhausted on the ground, was immediately surrounded by many people in robes. The people surrounding her with burning eyes raised their daggers. Under the blood moon, people struck blow after blow, splashing spirit blood everywhere. In the place where the spirit's body lay, only her hair remained and the book that appeared. Keon opened his eyes when he heard a sharp scream next to him. Keon didn't understand what kind of scream it was, after which he noticed a red thread sticking out of his chest. Keon discovered that the source of the scream was a spirit, screaming that she had become his familiar. Under his malicious smile and the thought that he now has a blue spirit, the ghost shouted that this cannot be real. Dissatisfied with this outcome, the spirit immediately attacks Cheon, again grabbing him by the throat and pressing him against the column, demanding his release. But before she can finish speaking, a pain in her throat hinders her speech. With annoyance, the spirit leaves Cheon, who at this time believes that the familiar feels the same pain as his master. Suddenly, Cheon wonders how the demonic monk feels there, because in fact he has just been resurrected, while the monk himself did not look particularly happy. Cheon turned to the ghost, telling her that since they were now together for a long time, why don't they introduce themselves, to which the spirit only silently smoked. Cheon introduced himself as Mok Young-gun, asking the ghost what he should call her. Having not heard an answer from the ghost, Cheon continued, saying that apparently he can call her whatever he wants. With a mocking expression on his face, Cheon calls the ghost a red dung beetle. The provocation worked, and the ghost responded, telling Cheon that he was crazy. Cheon laughed, asking that the spirit did not like such a nickname, which made the spirit ask how dare he play with her. Cheon asked that if she didn't like the name he suggested, why didn't she give her own, to which the spirit replied that she didn't have a name for mere mortals. Cheon, realizing that there is nowhere to go and needs to give the ghost a name, remembers that there was Cheongnyeon in the Book of Ghosts and gives the ghost this name, after which she tells the ghost that from now on she will call her Cheongnyeon. However, this does not change Cheongnyeon's attitude towards Cheon at all, which is why Cheon understands that he will have to approach her differently. Picking up the book from the floor, Cheon asked Cheongnyeon if she knew what was written in it, to which the spirit replied that she didn't know, asking what Cheongnyeon was. Waving the phone, Cheongnyeon says that he doesn't know anything, adding that she's busy and that he shouldn't distract her. Opening the book, Cheon saw that all the text inside was written in blood, and finds it funny that a book made of leather was written in blood. While reading, Cheon comes to the conclusion that the local scriptures are too abstract and delusional, without understanding what the meaning is. Looking at Cheon's blank face, the spirit turned around giggling, finding it funny. Seeing Cheongnyeon's giggling face, Cheon realized that she didn't want to tell anything, deciding that if you want to do something well, then do it yourself. Peering at the book, Cheon read the lines in which nothingness and hopelessness, a strange shape and deep volume are written. Hearing Cheon's words, Cheongnyeon turned around warily as Cheon began to read out the names Mojong-ko-san and Musan Hyunwoo-jeon. Suddenly, energy began to envelop Cheon, who continued to read what was written in the book. Cheon read another line, Magari and Hago, surrounded by streams of energy. After saying Yoki Mugigul, Cheon suddenly felt changes in the book in his hands. Feeling the spine of the book, Cheon felt that the book had hardened. Cheongnyeon suddenly intervened, shouting at Cheonwoo to stop. With a face full of surprise, Cheongnyeon asked how Cheon managed to perform the ritual. Not understanding what was going on, Cheon asked the spirit if the book had anything to do with what was happening. When suddenly Cheon felt the impact of dark energy, which is why he immediately became distorted in an agony of pain. Seeing the impact on herself, Cheongnyeon was shocked by what was happening. The spirit immediately shouted to Cheon to quickly even out her breathing, seeing how he clutched his chest. She tells Cheon to clear his mind and not think about anything, to which Cheon just bites his lip. Concentrating, Cheon froze in place with his eyes closed while the book, as if stuck to his hand, hung down with its spine. Suddenly, the book became detached from Cheon's hand, falling down, and the dark veins on his hands began to disappear. Cheongnyeon was surprised that Cheon managed to guess the image of the book so quickly. Thinking that it's a miracle that a guy who doesn't know martial arts was able to awaken the scripture at all, Cheongnyeon says that she's never seen anything like this before. Sitting down on the steps, Cheon says that he thought he would die of suffocation, asking Cheongnyeon what it was. The spirit answered Cheon, saying that he was unable to stabilize the fusion ritual because he was breathing incorrectly. Smiling, Cheon asked if Cheongnyeon was telling the truth now. The spirit immediately burst into dissatisfaction, saying that she was simply afraid that Cheon would drag them both to the grave with his antics. Cheon asked what kind of ritual this was, to which the spirit replied that it was something you sucked out and combined energy, but nothing came of it because there was emptiness inside Cheon. Pointing to the corpse, the spirit invites Cheon to try the spell on it. Cheon asked whether it was necessary to use a spell on a corpse, to which the spirit answered correctly, adding that it was necessary to cast a spell below the stomach, believing that since he had died, he had lost energy. When Cheon asked if they should touch below the navel, Cheongnyeon asked if he needed to chew everything at all. When Cheon touched the corpse, Cheongnyeon told him to read the spell again. Concentrating, Cheon began to cast the spell again, being once again enveloped in energy. Having finished reading the spell, Cheon felt a sharp surge of energy emanating from his body. Cheon felt the energy flow into the vessels on his palms and envelop his entire body with warmth. After starting to smoke, Cheongnyeon told Cheon to pull on something and let it connect, even if it was spirit. Cheongnyeon asked Cheon if he felt the energy, saying that this was the fusion ritual. Warm energy engulfed Cheon's stomach, and he felt chi, finally understanding what Gochang was telling him. Cheon remembered that Gochang said that collecting chi energy takes a long time, after which he wonders whether it would be easier to take it from other people because this way he can quickly gain strength. Suddenly, Cheon felt that the warmth he felt began to rapidly dissipate. Cheon asked Cheongnyeon if he was losing energy, to which she replied that it should be so, because chi tends to dissipate. Cheongnyeon continued that this is why it needs to be accumulated using breathing techniques, and then the energy will not be dissipated and will be collected in the body. However, the chi energy collected by this method is unique, since it does not mix with foreign chi. Cheongnyeon summed it up by saying that in this way, Cheon will not be able to accumulate chi energy through the fusion ritual. The distressed Cheon says that he hoped that he had found a loophole, to which Cheongnyeon grins, asking if he thought that becoming a master was so easy. But Cheongnyeon immediately reassured Cheon, saying that the merger ritual was quite enough for him, which Cheon did not understand. She continued, saying that the first of the 8 formulas of the ritual is the main one, and having learned at least one formula, you can endlessly experiment with it. Cheongnyeon added that although chi dissipates quickly, it is still energy, telling Cheon to concentrate it in his hands and circulate it, Cheon's misunderstanding written on his face. Cheongnyeon told Cheon to imagine energy, saying that circulation, just like writing, depends on the imagination, saying that by managing to circulate Cheon, he will be able to cope with chi. Cheongnyeon immediately thought that Cheon would not succeed, because without understanding there is no point in circulation, and Cheon lacks skills. Suddenly, Cheon concentrated, and streams of chi energy began to envelop him, concentrating on his palms. Cheongnyeon, who definitely did not expect that Cheonwoo would immediately be able to circulate chi, was surprised by what she saw. Circulating the chi in his hand, Cheon clenched it into a fist and hit the pillar in the hall, leaving huge cracks. Cheon's blow turned out to be so strong that one was enough to demolish the column, throwing it aside. Cheongnyeon was perplexed by such an unthinkable, not understanding how Cheon managed to imagine everything so quickly. Cheon, satisfied with the result of the key concentration strike test, admired his own strength. Still confused, Cheongnyeon looked at Cheon, trying to understand what the hell she saw. She thought that she had seen many talents, but this was the first time she saw someone with such good instincts, wondering where he came from. Turning to Cheongnyeon, Cheon said that everyone has their own reasons for practicing martial arts, saying that this way it will become much easier to kill people. Cheongnyeon was surprised at first and thought that Cheon understood exactly the essence of martial arts, because enlightenment and dreams are just nonsense, since the true essence is how effectively you can kill. Cheon asked Cheongnyeon what the second formula of infinite order was, and she practically answered him. However, Cheon suddenly says that the kid practically deceived her, saying that he won't do everything for him. Cheongnyeon thought about the fact that she talks too much next to someone who learns so quickly, understanding why old people usually complain about their students. Cheon asked Cheongnyeon again, expecting an answer, but all he hears in response is a request not to talk to her. Cheon is annoyed that he did not receive answers to his questions, but he feels something in his hand. He thought about it, because Cheon is sure that the property of chi is that it dissipates, wondering what kind of cold energy he feels. Looking at Cheongnyeon, Cheon wonders if he should ask her about this energy. But she immediately decides not to ask, thinking that she won't answer anyway. Deciding that it would be more interesting to find out everything himself, Cheon tells Cheongnyeon that it's time for them to leave. Moonlight in the night illuminated the facade of the building, which resembled a temple. A woman from Lady Sock's guard named Hoen arrived at this temple on the orders of her mistress. Standing at the entrance of the massive pagoda, Hoen assumed that this was the same ghostly palace. Opening the doors, many sculptures appeared in front of Hoen, at the head of which stood a statue of a monk. Tensing, Hoen wonders why so many wooden sculptures are placed haphazardly around the room. Suddenly, a fire lit up on a small pedestal in front of her, to which Hoen eloquently remained silent. Hoen said that as indicated in the letter, Master Myoshin died due to the anger of the third son of Mokyongun. Putting down the purse of gold, Hoen said that this was compensation from the lady, and added that they would add more if their request was accepted. Slightly nervous, Hoen said that their request was to get rid of Mokyongun, and then asked if they would accept the request. The atmosphere in the temple suddenly became oppressive, as if some forces were influencing it. Suddenly, the flame on the pedestal went out to Hoen's surprise. Expressing respect and gratitude, Hoen replied that she hoped her request would be fulfilled. Coming out of the temple, Hoen shuddered, thinking that even though there was no one inside, she could not shake the feeling that she was being watched, adding that she would definitely not return there without instructions. Meanwhile, inside the temple, Myosin's body lay on a table, right in front of a huge statue. Suddenly, figures in robes with hidden faces appear around the body. One of the monks says that this is definitely a murder. Other monks came out from behind the statues one after another, one of whom said that judging by the words in the letter, the maid was hovering in the air, which means that it is Huanyan. The monks argue about whether the third son is possessed or whether the spirit may have become his familiar. Having come to the conclusion that it is impossible to make a familiar into a spirit, the monks believe that the matter is much more dangerous than it seems. The head monk summed up the discussion by saying that one of those present would destroy Mokyongun from the Brotherhood of the Sword. Having said that this way Myosin's soul would rest, the chief monk gave an order to be carried out by a certain figure named Zhongmyeon. Morning came, and the sun's rays fell on the roofs of the buildings of the Brotherhood Fortress. A dissatisfied Gokhan wanders towards Cheon's room, saying that he didn't sleep all night, but as soon as he took a nap, he was immediately called to a task. Going into Cheon's room, Gochang said that he brought everything that Cheon asked for, thinking that he was trying to do everything in his power and address Cheon with respect. Gochang lit a fire in the stove he had brought earlier at Cheon's request. Sitting down to warm his hands by the fire, Gochang asked why Cheon needed to bake, to which he replied that he wanted to burn something. Kokhan was surprised that Cheon wanted to burn nothing more than that very scripture of the Brotherhood. Before he could get an answer to the question of why he wanted to burn it, Gochang watched as Cheon tore out pages from the scripture. Screaming in a frenzy, Gochang could only watch as Cheon burned the scripture page by page. Looking at the pleased Cheon, Gochang cannot believe that this psycho really burned the scripture. Having finished burning the first book, watched by a shocked Gochang, Cheon intended to continue. Suddenly, Gochan breaks down and asks Cheon what he is doing, loudly but in a respectful manner. With tears in his eyes, Gochan says that many people dream of at least looking at the cover of the scripture, asking how one can burn it, even if he wants to hide the martial art. Throwing the book at Gochang's face, Cheon said that that's why he had to burn everything. Cheon replied that he would use the arts in this way, to which Gochang asked again, "How is it?" Cheon pointed his finger at his temple, telling Gochang that all the secrets of martial art are now located here. Getting ready to leave, Cheon told Gochang to give the scripture to Mrs. Seok and the second son at dawn. Looking at Gochang's incomprehensible face, Cheon added that he himself said that everyone wants to get them, noting that he likes such a family idol. With a face sparkling with cunning, Cheon said that sharing the scripture with them would be just wonderful. The morning dawn flooded the roofs of the pagoda and houses with its radiance. Someone enthusiastically makes his bed, that his morning is fleeting, and that as soon as he wakes up, he quickly gets dressed and makes his bed. This someone turns out to be Master Cam, who, having cleaned the room, checks his to-do list for the day. While getting dressed and equipping the dagger in his belt, he added that this habit remained with him from the days of working as an assassin. As he ties his headdress, he notes that soon, however, there will be no need to constantly plan and adhere to discipline. Looking out the window, Cam says that if he manages to change the life of the second master, then career growth will not be long in coming. Holding a cup in his hands, Cam thinks that even though he lived as a murderer and an orphan for many years, now everything will be different. Suddenly, a man entered Cam's room and said that Mokun Pyong wanted to see him. Turning around, Master Cam threw a blank look at the newcomer. Clouds floated carefree across the sky. The fortress of the Brotherhood of Swords was immersed in peace. Suddenly, out of breath, Master Cam ran out of one of the buildings, leaving the doors open behind him. Blood flowed down Cam's face, He ran, gritting his teeth, mentally cursing what had happened. A moment before this, Master Kam learns from Mokupyong that Cho Il-san has disappeared. Mokupyong tells Kam that Cho was sent to make sure that Mokyungun had lost his skills, but went missing. Mokupyong, gritting his teeth in anger, asks Master Kam how dare he lie to him. Kam, afraid of Mokupyong's reaction, thought that something was clearly wrong, and replied that he would never dare to lie to him. Suddenly, Mokupyong threw an object that came under his hand at Kam's head, ordering him to remain silent. He asked Kam why then Cho Il-san did not return, after which he asked whether Kam really took him for an idiot. Clenching his fists, Kam wondered how it turned out this way, thinking that at this rate his new life would be much worse than the previous one. Mentally screaming that he won't let all his efforts go to waste, Kam asked Mokupyong to give him some time to search for Cho. Mokupyong intended to interrupt Kam, but he shouted that he swears on the warrior's life and puts his right hand on the line. Satisfied with Kam's proposal, Mokupyong agrees, telling him to try to justify himself. Mokupyong shouts out that he gives Kam 2 hours, and that he will believe him if he finds Cho Il-san, but if he does not succeed, he will lose not his hand, but his life. Master Kam bowed to Mokupyong, saying that he would remember his words. Walking out of the gates of Mokupyong's estate, Kam thought that it all started exactly from the moment the double appeared. Master Kam doubts that Cheon did anything, but decides that if he is involved, then Kam will definitely take revenge. Climbing the steps, Master Kam ran straight into a familiar face. Kokon, slightly in the clouds, was coming towards him, and Kam immediately headed towards him. Kam grabbed Kokon by the throat and pressed him against the wall, from the impact of which Kokon groaned. The embittered Kam told Kokon that he ordered him not to take his eyes off his double for a moment, asking if he had forgotten about it. Kokon replied that he had not forgotten, after which Kam asked what he was doing then, reproaching him for working with a double. Shaking Kokon by the robe, Kam saw that something was hidden under it. Kam pulled out a mysterious book from under Kokon's robe, asking him what it was. Kam peered at the title of the book while Kokon shouted loudly so that Kam would not kill him. Master Kam froze and his eyelids opened wide, sweat running down his cheek. Kam realized that in his hand he was holding nothing more than a sacred scripture after reading the title Brotherhood of the Sword, The Path to Knowledge. Kam, filled with anger, asked Kokon what he was doing here. The servants of the mansion watched in shock as Master Kam dragged Kokon across the floor, whispering along the way. Kam kicked down the door to Cheon's room, who at that time was holding something in his hands while standing in front of the mirror. Master Kam threw Gochang inside the room. Cheon was distracted from reading and turned around. Seeing Gochang lying unconscious, Cheon greeted Kam with welcome words. Master Kam, with a face full of dissatisfaction, demands that Cheon explain himself immediately. Cheon, thinking that his mood drops every time he sees Kam, asks him what exactly to explain to him. Kam closed the doors behind him, telling Cheon to stop fooling around, to which Cheon just grinned. Kam began to approach Cheon, saying that he warned him, while Cheon could not understand why he was so worried. Kam pounced on Cheon, grabbing him by the throat and pressing him against the wall, his fist ready to strike. Kam told Cheon that if he cheated, he would kill him, to which Cheon smilingly replied that their original agreement did not provide for this. Kam shouted at Cheon, asking what he did with Mokunpyong's man, to which Cheon asked who he was talking about. Kam desperately shouts that Cheon should not dare to lie to him, to which Cheon says that Kam already knows about his powers and that he could not hurt him. Master Kam thinks intensely about what he knows and about Cheon's strength, and that he couldn't hurt Cho, but he feels some kind of unpleasant feeling. Cheon continued to gloat, telling Kam how could the third son, who had lost his skills, kill him. Realizing that this was still the work of Cheon, Kam, calling him a vile brat, raised his dagger to strike. Laughing madly, Cheon asked Kam what he will do now, since he has already replaced the master. Cheon continued that despite this, the damn double killed the second son's man. Kam, with eyes full of rage, stabbed Cheon with his dagger, spraying blood. Cheon sat against the wall, leaning his back against it, while Kam stood on his knees, sighing. Still sitting on his knees, Kam continued to talk, intending to tell Cheon his life story. Kam said that he was born an orphan and grew up as a killer, spent all his time and money to escape from there, after which he was an errand boy for the Brotherhood of the Sword for 3 years. Kam, in a frenzy, says that his life depended on these 3 years, but Cheon ruined everything. Because it was not enough for him to kill Mokyungun, he also killed his beloved guard, Mokunpyong. He continued by saying that he should kill Cheon, because if he stays here he will die, and if Cheon dies he will be able to escape, and there is no other way out. Suddenly a thought strikes Kam, causing him to sharply shout no, confusing Cheon. Creeping closer to Cheon, Cam says that Cho Il-sun is dead in any case, and the dead cannot be returned, especially since he can be replaced. Putting his hand under his robe, Cam grabbed the book, saying that he didn't know where Cheon got it from. But Cam continued, asking Cheon that he also had the second part of the scripture. Cam orders Cheon to speak, thinking that by bringing the scripture he can hush up the matter with Jo Il-sun. Cheon replies that he doesn't know, Cam answered, and said that Cheon apparently hasn't realized the situation yet. Bringing the dagger to Cheon's face, Cam said that if he angers him, Cam will rip out his Adam's apple and leave, but will change his mind if Cheon tells everything. Cam continued by saying that if Cheon behaves like a fool, he will cut him for a long time until he gives him the scripture, telling him to start telling before his patience runs out. Sighing, Cheon replied that so be it, he will tell Cam everything. Having let go of Cheon's head, Cam was happy, thinking that the fear of death still cannot be overcome no matter how well you pretend. Cam extended his hand to Cheon, telling him to give him the scripture. Cheon just silently took Cam's hand, which greatly surprised the latter. Not understanding, Cam asked Cheon what this meant, and he replied that he was giving him the Holy Scripture. Cheon immediately cleared up the misunderstanding by saying that the second part of the scripture was in his head. And while Cam was shocked by what he heard, Cheon added that there was something else. Grabbing Cam's hand, Cheon began the fusion ritual, draining the chi energy from Cam. Shocked, Cam suddenly realized that his energy was being sucked out of him. Cam swung the dagger with a scream, while Cheon laughed and said that he was not sure where and against whom it could be used. Laughing madly, Cheon told Cam that he himself had volunteered to be a pioneer, for which Cheon was grateful to him. Striking Cheon's hand with a dagger, Cam shouted at him to let him go. Cam continued to strike Cheon blow after blow, spewing blood in all directions. Unable to resist the pressure of Master Cam's blows, Cheon let go of his hand. After which Cam immediately pushed Cheon away with a kick to the stomach. Shuddering, Cam looked at Cheon kneeling against the wall. Looking at his hand, Cam realized that he did not feel the chi in his hand, wondering if Cheon had absorbed it. Cheon stood up and said that Cam was indeed a first-class master, as expected, but added that this was not enough for him. Cheon said that apparently there was no choice, and he would have to kill Cam in another way. Cam was outraged by Cheon's self-confidence, saying that after learning a couple of dirty tricks, he decided that he could defeat Cam. Cam again attacked Cheon, raising his dagger, shouting, "Die!" Cheon's eyes glowed red, and he called for help from the demon monk, who immediately knocked the dagger out of Cam's hand. Not understanding how Cheon blocked his blow with a frozen hand, Cam asked Cheon what kind of tricks these are. Cheon replied that this was just another trick that he would demonstrate clearly this time. Suddenly, Master Cam saw that his hand was being grasped by a demon monk. Rolling his eyes in surprise, Cam tries to break free, not understanding what the hell this is. Cheon replies that he will return everything to Master Cam, the chi and the dagger. After which Kama plunges the dagger into his chest, causing the master to burst out screaming. Looking from the brow, Cheon added that both the dagger and chi belonged to him. Cam walked away from Cheon, while the blood from his shoulder dripped onto the carpet. Gasping, Cam thought that the blow hit a critical point, which is bad, because if you pull it out carelessly, blood will flow from the wound. Cam thought that he could not believe that Cheon would use a demon to take away his chi, thinking that he was foolish to rely on such a madman. However, Cam suddenly asked Cheon if he had forgotten about the poison, thinking that it was precisely for such an occasion that he fed it to Cheon. Cheon remained silent at first and asked Cam what he wanted to say. Cam, thinking that Cheon fell for his trick, says that he is offering a deal. Cam continued by saying that if they continue to fight, they will both lose in many ways. Cam says that he will give Cheon an antidote and a lot of money, thinking that he can give in for now, because he will always have time to kill Cheon. Suddenly, Cam falls to his knees, coughing up a large amount of blood. Looking at his bloody hand, Cam thinks that something is wrong because the blood is circulating, but the body continues to weaken. Suddenly, Cam realizes that the cause of his profuse blood loss is poison. Approaching the window, Cheon says sarcastically, saying that even though his wound from the knife is small, it hurts him a lot. Cam asks how he managed to poison the dagger. Cheon replied that while Cam was picking at it with a knife, he dropped his blood there. Cam, not understanding, asked what he meant. Turning around, Cheon told Cam that his blood was incredibly poisonous, shocking Cam. Cheon listed poisonous plants, such as angelica and fennel, saying that as a child he ate a lot of such nasty things, which made his blood more dangerous than any poison. Leaning towards Cam, Cheon said that he, as Cam had already understood, did not need an antidote. In despair, Cam remained silent, but Cheon asked him why he was trembling, suggesting that he was frozen because of the open window. Keon continued by saying that because of the poison, Cam's temperature rises, and that the lower temperature slows down the spread of the poison, which will make Cam live longer. Suddenly, Cam, with eyes full of fear, stretched his hands towards Keon, begging him to spare him. Pulling Keon by the robe, Cam screamed pleadingly, begging Keon to spare him. Keon knelt down in front of Cam while he begged Keon for mercy, saying that Cam was ready to become his faithful dog if Keon would spare him. Taking Cam's hands, Keon replies that he likes this attitude. Keon replies that Cam is doing wonderfully, and that with such an attitude they would work well together. Cam, with visible relief in his eyes, agreed with Keon, a tear running down his face. But Keon told him that they would have worked together if their attitude had been like that from the very beginning. After which he takes the knife into Cam's chest up to the hilt, saying that Cam has betrayed more than once for the sake of his own goals, saying that loyalty is loyalty. Sitting on top of Cam, Keon pressed on the dagger, saying that this is why Cam will die. Cam struggled in agony, wheezing and jerking his arms and legs as Keon continued to press. After a couple of minutes of agony, Master Cam still gave his soul to Buddha. Keon got up and began to stretch, indignant that his shoulder hurt and that his clothes were ruined again, although he had just changed. Shaking off the book, Keon says that he did it much faster than expected, saying that he was lucky and that he had to kill Cam because he knew the situation. Looking at Kochan, who is lying unconscious, Keon thinks about whether to kill him too. But he immediately changes his mind based on the fact that Cam did not know about the burning of the scripture, which means Kochan knows how to keep secrets and is also useful. Suddenly, Cheon tells Gochan to stop pretending, causing the latter to immediately jump up. When asked how Cheon understood, he said that Gochan's body kept changing position during the fight, adding that Gochan knows how to keep his mouth shut, saying that he likes it. Cheon told Gochan to tell the servants to disperse immediately while Cheon himself took care of Cam's body. Standing over Cam's body, Cheon thought about where he should start. Leaning over Cam's body, Cheon began to absorb the chi. Feeling that the heat was quickly disappearing, he wanted to check something. Cheon remembers that he felt something similar in the basement of the medical ward. He felt a cold and dark energy when he killed. Cold and gloomy energy replaced chi and instantly enveloped Cheon. Cheon feels how this energy accumulates in him and does not dissipate, remembering how he felt like this when he was a ghost with a sickle, wondering if he needs to kill more to accumulate this energy. Cheongyeon silently watched Cheon's actions while smoking her pipe. She suddenly turned to the demon monk, saying that she most likely understood how he was subdued, after which he tells the demon monk that Cheon is a real devil. Meanwhile, first-rank Master Jong Yang Pyong reports to Mokgun Pyong what Master Cam told him, believing that he did not lie to the master. While polishing the sword, Mok Young-yeon asked why do this because the truth will be revealed anyway. He continued saying that a person is a person, and that if you prove yourself right away, you can rise high. Mok Young-yeon said that it is the image of the master that should inspire respect and awe in order to show mercy at the right time. He continued by saying that the carrot and stick method should be used to achieve greater effect. Chan bowed, saying that the young master is insightful, to which Mo Kung-yeon grinned, calling it idle talk. Chan replied that this was true, thinking that Cam was not distinguished by loyalty, which is why the test was necessary, thinking that the young master really understands people. The doors to Mokgun Pyong's room opened, and someone shouted that they had a problem, to which Mokgun Pyong asked what was the matter. Second-rank Master Hansen ran into the room and said that Cam was trying to kill his third son. Hearing such news, Cho and Mokgun Pyong fell into a misunderstanding. Mokgun Pyong says that Cam is ridiculous in trying to prove his innocence, but Hanseng says that this is not the main problem. Hansen says that the third son said that the criminal who incited Master Cam to kill was Mr. Mokgun Pyong. In a fit of anger, Mokgun Pyong stabbed his sword into the table, shouting the name Mok Yonggun. Hansen asked Mr. Mokgun Pyong not to touch Mok Yonggun because this will only play into his hands. The gentleman does not want to sit idly by and let Mok Yonggun mock him. Hansen invites the gentleman to go to a secret organization known for its cruelty. This organization is famous for its strict rules, especially in relation to the members of the organization themselves. They complete the task at any cost. Hansen wants to tell more about the mysterious mercenaries, a group of hereditary killers from Junwan. Although they are better known under the name Killers Who Bring Death, Pizalmun, Mokgun Pyong too is filled with a mixture of horror and curiosity. Meanwhile, Mok Yonggun continues to repeat the breathing technique from the scripture. Unfortunately, the energy dissipates, preventing it from collecting enough energy. Mokyogun calls Gochan and asks him about the possible reasons for his failures. Kokon is surprised by Mokyogun's progress, because until recently, He did not even know about martial arts, but is already able to feel the circulation of energy. Inside, Kokon is outraged at how quickly and easily everything comes to Mokyogun, but he still wants to know more about why energy dissipates. Go-chan asks Mokyogun to concentrate and sit next to him. Without any training or techniques, Mokyogun gained energy that flows through his entire body without any problems. But then Kokon felt something strange, cold and exciting. He was pushed away by a splash, after which the concentration of forces dissipated. Mokyogun asks if he's so hopeless and receives a disappointing answer. Kokon noticed next to the master's energy something with a nature unknown to him. Mokyogun wonders if he should give up martial arts. According to Go Chang, this mysterious cold energy is not like ordinary qi. Heat is life and cold is death. If so, the energy should be reversed. Kokon wants to stop the master from his dangerous undertaking but is interrupted by the spirit. The spirit binds Kokon and wants him to be silent. Since it cannot harm its owner, the only hope for liberation is for Mokyogun to destroy itself. At the same time in Hewadan, the Taoist master New Moon comes to the palace. Mrs. Sok is surprised that, judging by the voice, they sent a young girl instead of the late Master Myosin. In addition, the body of Master Myoshin himself was also brought. New Moon wants to find the killer using the body of Myosin's follower. The Taoist master wants to make sure of one more thing. The fact is that the third son will definitely be killed. Lady Seok admits that she is on the same side as the Taoist master. New Moon, as a sign of agreement, straightened her robe, beginning to recite the text of the prayer. To complete the ritual, she pierces the dead man's chest with a wooden stake. The dead man opens his eyes. A terrifying howl was heard. The energy of death filled the room. Mrs. Sok contemplated what was happening with horror in her eyes. Hundreds of hands begin to spread out from all the cavities of the late master's body, filling the entire room. Unexpectedly for the spirits, hordes of hands instantly break into Mokyogun's chambers. The demon monk stops the flow of hands right in front of the owner. But even his strength is not enough to hold back the flow of demonic hands. The reverse killing ritual reflects each blow on both Mokyogun and the demons within him, or so Lady Seok thinks. The Taoist master continued to strike blow after blow. Mrs. Seok's face is filled with pleasure from the suffering caused to Mokyogun. In one clear move, Cheongyeon cuts all the demonic hands in the room. She's angry that someone is trying to interfere with her plans. Only after repelling the master's blow does Cheongyeon strike back. The attack hits New Moon and she flies away along with Master Myoshin's body. New Moon sees with horror how her entire veil is covered with her own blood. Taking a breath, the master only offers the lady to increase the price of her services. The servant is outraged by the new price, twice the previous one, but only for such a fee can the master risk his life. According to her, a supreme evil spirit lives in Mokyogun's chambers, and meeting him is extremely dangerous even for the master. If you leave everything as it is, the spirit will become Nonyon, after which the Taoist masters will no longer be able to harm it. The mistress is considering the deal, wanting to deal with Mokyogun as quickly as possible. Her servant's face is distorted in surprise. With absolute disgust and hatred, Lady Seok agrees to the deal, but demands that the problem with Mokyogun be resolved. The New Moon unties the veil, telling us that demons, like shamans, are divided into levels. Throwing off her cape, she lists the levels, noting that Myosin, after 5 years of grueling training, never reached the first level. Adjusting her hat, New Moon reports that her level is third. Lady Seok is shocked by New Moon's face, surprised by her youth, which is not typical of Taoist masters. Finally, New Moon reports that in the ghostly palace, there are only 3 masters with personal spirits. As New Moon walks away, a huge shadow follows her along the wall. The master in turn promises that the third son will forget about peace forever. Meanwhile, Mokyogun continues to concentrate energy. Cheongyeon is surprised that the energy of death and cold completely surrounds a living person. She doesn't understand the reason for what's happening, because Mokyogun was simply trying out all the techniques he could learn about. Cheongyeon looks at the awakened Mokyogun with obvious interest in what is happening. With a slight grin, Mokyogun notes that with the help of reverse circulation of energy, he was able to achieve concentration without dissipation of forces. Cheongyeon looks at Mokyogun in shock, asking if he's still alive. She doesn't understand at all how a living person attracts the breath of death. Finally, Mokyogun looks back and asks what happened. He approaches Kokhan, who is lying on the floor, not understanding why he has passed out. The demon monk quickly explains to the owner all the details of what happened. Cheongyeon begins to beat the demon monk for immediately telling the owner everything. Afterwards, she nevertheless confesses that she saved Mokyogun's life from the reverse murder ritual. Suddenly, the room is filled with noise that distorts the space itself. Mokyogun asks Cheongyeon what it is while she smokes silently. A horde of insects begins to fill the room, approaching Mokyogun. Cheongyong is stunned that someone made a familiar out of the all-consuming spirit, namely the ghost from Yoya Mountain. Beetles, larvae, scolopendras, and spiders are visible in the shadows. Thousands of insects are walking towards Mokyogun. Mokyogun froze, looking at the horde of insects gradually entering the room. There is a creature called Im living in the mountains and something living on the sea called Malyan. They cause natural disasters called Lime Malyan. And among the detailed evil spirits, there is a mountain spirit, an armadillo that summons insects. He's like a bird with a snake's tail and creates disasters with the help of heaps of insects. New Moon, leaving her chambers, says that she is not worried about the death of Master Myosin. Then he continues, saying that, however, looking at the disfigured face of a familiar person is not a pleasant sight. The New Moon makes a seal, wanting to feed the third sun to her spirit. The mountain spirit quickly heads to Mokyogun's chambers. With one powerful slap, Mokyogun brings Kochen to his senses. Insects have already filled almost the entire room. Mokyogun is trying to contain their influx. Just touching the insects, Kokkan's hand became covered in blisters. Cheongyeon mocks Mokyogun's efforts and says that they are about to be eaten alive. Mokyogun reminds Cheongyeon about the contract, asking how long she plans to sit idle. Cheongyeon, in response, offers to help in exchange for his soul, which is why Mokyogun decides that it is better to die. Cheongyeon offers instead a bet that if he finds himself near death, he will give his soul to the spirit. However, if he can handle it on his own, Cheongyeon will begin to protect him with full force. Mokyogun decisively crushed the beetle, saying that he was determined to win against Cheongyeon. The third son wants to set the lamp on fire to scare away the bugs. Mokyogun performs a fusion ritual, concentrating dark energy. The lamp flies straight into Mokyogun's hands. Mokyogun gradually realizes that Mrs. Seok is behind the attack. Kokkan, for better effect, suggests setting the blanket on fire. Mokyogun's thoughts are focused on killing the Taoist who serves Lady Seok at any cost. After New Moon's command, the beetles suddenly begin to squirm in the air. It turns out that the Taoist master's right eye is white because he sees the hidden world of Qi. With the help of such vision, she has no problem attacking through the wall, seeing everything in full view. The armadillo spirit breaks through doors and walls in the path of its owner. New Moon meets Mokyogun's gaze. In it, she sees two flows of Qi, indicating the presence of a spirit in its submission. 1,000 hands pin the demon monk to the floor. The hidden dagger for throwing Kokkan is immediately revealed by the vision of Qi. The Taoist master uses a talisman that shoots lightning directly at Gochung. He orders the spirit armadillo to deliver the finishing blow to Mokyogun. Mokyogun, with Kochan's dagger, runs towards the master. But a blow from thousands of beetles pins him to the wall. It seems that the battle is already over. Even the remains of the third son are not visible behind the beetles. Kokkan is unconscious, the demon monk is immobilized, and Mokyogun is invisible behind a swarm of beetles. The master praises his familiar for a job well done. New Moon was about to leave. She expected the task to be more difficult. But suddenly Mokyogun rises from the shadows, clothed in a dark aura. With a dagger, he strikes blow after blow into his own flesh. From his blood, the beetles instantly fall to the ground. Mokyogun, with madness in his eyes, drenches himself in his own blood. With his hand raised above his head, blood flows onto Mokyogun's head. He points the dagger at the enemy, because his blood is pure poison. New Moon still jumped back at the last second. The familiar armadillo instantly comes to the defense of the mistress. Meanwhile, the master completes a spell that enhances the strength of the spirit. But Mokyogun intercepts the armadillo with the help of a fusion ritual. The familiar is defeated. The beetles now pose no danger. The pain that is caused to the armadillo also affects the New Moon. Suddenly, she realizes that Mokyogun is absorbing her familiar's powers. Since the armadillo has negative energy, it is an ideal source of strength for Mokyogun. Mokyogun is delighted with the amount of negative energy received from one spirit. It replaces hundreds of murders of people. New Moon, in tears, asks to spare her henchmen. Meanwhile, Mrs. Seok is still waiting for the result of the battle. She wants to verify Mokyogun's death for herself. In addition to killing his third son, Seok expects to receive the Holy Scripture so that it does not fall into the wrong hands. The lady sees a silhouette approaching her, reminiscent of the New Moon. The lady is already anticipating good news about Mokyogun's death. Her son will become the head of the clan. She has dreamed about this for so long. She had already seen her subordinates congratulate her on her success. The Taoist master abruptly stops in place. The lady and servants look blankly at the Taoist master. Juice asks the master to tell him about what happened and the result of the battle. The New Moon reports that the ghostly palace is faithful to its mistress, but cannot eliminate the third son. With this news, Miss Seok was speechless. In fear of losing the armadillo, New Moon conspires with Mokyogen. She undertook to blame Lady Sok for everything that happened, which would lead to a conflict between the monks and her court. Overcoming her pride, New Moon reports that the third son was not possessed, and she cannot kill him. She asks Mrs. Seok to never contact the Ghost Palace again. The night is interrupted by the roar of the crowd. Everyone goes towards the lady. The guards approach. They are already aware of the murder of the third son ordered by the lady. Seok can't think of anything other than his hatred for Mokyogen. The third son asks New Moon about what happened. She only draws his attention to the illuminated streets and the roar of the crowd outside the walls. New Moon realizes that by betraying the principles of the ghostly palace, a terrifying fate awaits her. Before leaving, she asks for the familiar to be returned, as agreed. But Mokyogen still had a few questions for her. He wants to know more about the owners of spirits such as the demon monk or the armadillo. With Chi's vision, New Moon sees that the third son is subjugating two spirits at once, but notices that there is another one inside him. Mokyogen strangles the armadillo because he wants to get an answer as soon as possible. She reports that mountain spirits are divided into 6 stages. The spirit of Hyunsu, who is also a ferocious beast. The spirit of Kwesu, called a monster. Yeosu, a werewolf spirit. The spirit Masu is a beast. Yongsu is a spiritual beast. Shinsu is a mythical animal. Including the New Moon, there are only 3 spirit masters in the Ghost Palace. She spoke about Master Go, who remained in the shadows for a long time, with the spirit of chaos and destruction. There is also the Shadow Palace. Little is known about him, but he occupies the highest position. Mokyogen suggests that the spirit of Master Go is Yongsu or even Sinsu. The New Moon does not confirm his guesses, saying that such creatures were found only in legends. She gives her third son a book with information about spirits called the Book of Mountains and Seas. Mokyogen wants to get the best Lemelian. The armadillo is returned to its owner, for which New Moon reluctantly thanks the third son. With an exhausted familiar in her arms, New Moon leaves Mokyogen's chambers. Now, Mrs. Seok will not be able to keep a close eye on Mokyogen, and the absorbed energy of the armadillo should be enough to create an energy core, and therefore to master the martial art. Koken is still worried about the leaving guest. He sees in her a hidden grudge against Mokyogen. Mokyogen himself only tells him with a grin to continue to watch, because he is sure that New Moon will keep his word. Looking at the suffering familiar, she believes that he's about to die. New Moon sincerely wishes Mokyogen a death full of suffering. A terrible sudden pain covers her. Her eye bleeds. She feels a ritual of reverse murder. In the light of the blood-red moon, Cheongyeon looms over the New Moon. With horror in her eyes, New Moon chokes on her own blood. Meanwhile, Mrs. Seok accuses Mokyogen of slander in court. The judge interrupts her and asks the lady to remain quiet. When asked about the disturbances in the chambers, Seok speaks of the need to prohibit visits to the chambers of the head of the clan. The judge notices that the young master saved the head, and he asks again if she tried to kill him. Mrs. Seok, in a panic attack, screams to the chief judge. The judge promises to investigate the case impartially. The judge is going to question everyone, Lady's second son and third son. In private, he ponders the reasons why his first wife and second son want the third to die. This is a power struggle that the youngest son, under the tutelage of the head, is unaware of. And the third, after losing his family and skills, has no chance of winning. The judge noticed strange behavior in the third son. Perhaps there is something he doesn't know about that is bothering him. Mokyogen, in the company of Kochen and the demon monk, continues to concentrate energy. Cheongyeon leaks through the wall, which attracts the attention of the demon monk. Cheongyeon is surprised at how quickly Mokyogen was able to begin concentrating the energy absorbed from the armadillo. The idea of creating an energy core with the breath of death now seems quite real to her. Cheongyeon notices that Mokyogen has a very pretty appearance. Mokyogen locks eyes with Cheongyeon, asking what she's doing. With a blush on her face, Cheongyeon turns around and says that it's none of his business. Mokyogen responds with a smirk and the question, seriously? With a red face, Cheongyeon tells Mokyogen to stop doing nonsense and focus on Chi. She now regrets that she made a bet with him, saying that the Taoist did not try hard in their duel with Mokyogen. And then Mokyogen remembers that he wanted to check something, namely the same energy core that required so much energy. Cheongyeon, smoking a pipe, thinks that it is impossible to create a core in such a short time. Immediately, Mokyogen demonstrates the energy core to his spirits, which causes Cheongyeon sincere surprise because it is almost impossible to cope with such things. She wants to personally check the state of the core and chi energy. Cheongyeon puts his hand to try to reach the core in the host's body. However, Mokyogen's body does not allow her hand, which makes her clearly upset. Cheongyeon suggests that the demon monk try to do the same. The result remained the same. They failed again, for an unclear reason. Cheongnyeon's guess is that this happened because they are related to Mokyogun. She turns to Gokhan, who is snoring next to them. Sharply, Cheongnyeon penetrates his chi, after which Gochang screams heart-rendingly. After the spirit's unexpected manipulation, he passes out, but Cheongnyeon notices that he was only pretending to be asleep. The result proves that the problem is not with Cheongnyeon's abilities, but no way to test Mokyogong's chi was found. Suddenly, there is a knock on the door. The voice of the Supreme Judge is heard. He introduces himself and asks if the third son is sleeping. Mokyogun does not understand why the Supreme Judge came so late. Chief Judge Sun Unbaek, the most faithful servant in the Brotherhood of the Sword, is trusted by the elders because he has repeatedly proven the inviolability of his principles. Because of him, even the restless Mrs. Seok must control herself. At the moment, he is the most powerful person in the clan. The judge enters the room. Mokyogun asks what's the matter. Sang Unbaek bows, apologizing for the danger the third son was exposed to. Mokyogun says that nothing bad happened, and he doesn't have to worry. It is clear that for the judge this is not a trifle but a serious offense. But still Mokyogun convinces him that everything is fine with him. Here the judge raises his hand over the third and says that he did not come in for long. Mokyogun doesn't understand what the hand above his head has to do with it. The judge begins to pat him on the shoulder, convincing him that his words made him feel better. But he's interested in where the dagger that the judge gave to all candidates for self-defense went to. He is worried whether the third one has lost it. Turning around, Mokyogun looks at Kochan lying unconscious. Mokyogun says he put the dagger in a drawer in the closet, which pleases the judge. He says that it would be sad if the dagger was lost. The light tone of the conversation is disrupted by Mokyogun's phrase. He has not heard of anyone receiving a dagger. The judge only confirms that indeed nothing happened in the first place. Afterwards, the judge delivers a sharp blow towards Mokyogun, who was expecting such a move. The bed is destroyed, but Mokyogun managed to jump away and avoid damage. The judge says that he made two mistakes. He hits the vital points, immobilizing the third, and says that the first mistake was that the third son was always proud when someone bowed to him. And secondly, after the fourth son got rid of the third, if someone raised a hand against him, he cowered. But Mokyogun was too noble and too calm today. The judge has sealed all the meridians. Now the third cannot move. Sun Unbaek is waiting for an answer. He asks where the real third son is. But then, with a smile, Mokyogun gets to his feet, which stuns the judge. He cannot understand how he can move at all with blocked meridians. With a terrifying look on his face, Mokyogun calls out to the dark spirit Cheongnyeon. Suddenly something otherworldly penetrates the judge's chest. He feels his heart being squeezed by someone's hand. She asks him why he acts so thoughtlessly because he wants to die. Mokyogun praises the strength of Cheongnyeon, who still holds the judge's heart in her hand. Cheongnyeon realized that she could not penetrate Mokyogun because their energies, life and death, were opposites. She sees how Mokyogun actually formed an energy core. Cheongnyeon asks Mokyogun what he will do now that he has been found out. Mokyogun replies that even if he was discovered, he cannot kill the judge. Mokyogun finally found a solution. He orders the demon monk to take possession of San Ubek. The judge is afraid. He does not understand who Mokyogun is talking to. San Wubek feels an unexpected sharp shock. He cannot breathe. He cannot understand anything. There is a third son in front of him, but he is completely immune to acupuncture. In addition, someone is holding his heart in his hands. The judge realizes that he has learned something that he should never have known. He asks the demon who he is. With an arrogant smile, Mokyogun only notes that the judge is only the third master of the Brotherhood of the Sword. The sun shone above the fortress of the Brotherhood of the Sword, illuminating the rooftops with sunlight. Koken walked along the corridor, thinking that when he woke up, the bed was broken and the guards had become too polite. He thinks that until yesterday, it was the guards who were watching them, when suddenly the man in front of him says that the gentleman is waiting for him. Not understanding what was happening, Koken bowed back, awkwardly muttering gratitude. Entering the room, Koken is so shocked by what he sees that sweat immediately pours down his face. Gochang saw the Chief Justice standing next to Mokyogun, after which the latter invited him to enter. Mokyogun told Wubek that his apology was accepted, after which the latter immediately took his leave. Bowing slightly, Ubek walked past Kokkan, frozen in one pose. The blushing Gochan did not utter a word, but Mokyogun said that he was on time and offered to eat together. Unable to hold on any longer, Gochang shouted out, asking Mokyogun to explain everything, to which the third son replied that he would tell him later. Mokyogun tells Gochan that he has a question for him. Mokyogun asked if he could learn about the basics of the Brotherhood's martial arts. Discouraged by the question, Gochang dropped the food he had picked up with his chopsticks and then asked what Mokyogun meant. Shortly before the conversation with Go-chang, Mo Kyung-gun, in the company of Cheong-yeon, was repeating the movements from the Brotherhood scripture, not understanding why they did not match. Exhaling smoke from his pipe, Cheong-yeon replied that the reason was because it was an advanced level. She said that the techniques in the scriptures are high level, which means the reader must have an appropriate level of understanding. When asked by Mo Kyung-gun whether it is better to have advanced techniques, Cheong-yeon says that he is a fool, answering that developing skills without understanding the basics is impossible. Cheong-yeon told Mo Kyung-gun that the enlightenment required to reach a high level is called Ascension, and it allows you to go beyond the possible. She continued by saying that Ascension is achieved by eliminating unnecessary poses and learning skills that will not make sense without understanding the basics. Recalling Cheong-yeon's words, Mo Kyung-gun said that without understanding the basics of martial arts, he would not understand the basics of fencing. Go-chang jumped up from the table, asking Mo Kyung-gun that if he was going to learn the Brotherhood's secret fencing technique, then he was going to become the next head, which Mo Kyung-gun immediately denies. Kokhan asked why he needed this then. Mo Kyung-gun said that it would be useful, to which Kokhan replied that this is a masterpiece of art known throughout Murim. Go-chang said that if Mo Kyung-gun still manages to learn, then problems will arise in the future. Mo Kyung-gun said that only if he is caught. Crossing his arms, Kokhan said that he could not teach him the basics of martial arts. He said that the reason is that he himself does not know them, because the basis of martial arts in the Brotherhood of the Sword is unique to everyone. Kokhan said that the base, which includes the 10 techniques and the mock sword art, was inherited by the head of the clan. Therefore, only those with mock blood in their veins could learn this. Following from this, only the head of the clan or other candidates could train Mo Kyung-gun. Kokhan thought that the situation was bad, because not only did the other sons see him as an enemy, but he was also not the real Mok. Rising from the table, Kokhan replied that nothing could be done. Without dropping any details, Mo Kyung-gun left the room, saying that he had left, to which Kokhan only asked where. Mo Kyung-gun said that he would go to someone who would teach him the basics. Go-chang whispered that he didn't need to do this because they might make him suspicious, to which Mo Kyung-gun replied that nothing would change from this. Mo Kyung-gun and Go-chan came to the training place of their youngest son. Mo Kyung-gun intended to greet the younger one, when suddenly Go-chan stopped him. Kokhan said that he told him about the case when he called the mother of the fourth, the real Mo Kyung-gun, for which he was beaten. Kokhan recalled that day, saying that the third had broken legs and a couple of ribs, and how he screamed in tears for help. Go-chang said that the main problem is not so much the hatred of the fourth for the third, but that Mo Kyung-chun at 16 is already at the peak of its development. Suddenly Cheong-yeon appears and tells Mo Kyung-gun that the younger one is really not bad. She says that there are few people with such an aura at the age of 16, saying that such people are called geniuses, and that if she were alive, she would take him as a student. Cheong-yeon tells Mo Kyung-gun to be careful because the sun is up and she won't be able to help. Go-chang continued to talk about how they should find someone else while Mo Kyung-gun was already approaching Mo Kyu-chun. Noticing Mo Kyung-gun approaching, Mo Kyu-chun immediately grimaced in anger and disgust. Mo Kyung-gun just said hi while Go-chang whimpered shakingly behind him. Surprised that the third son was not afraid, Mo Kyu-chun was going to threaten to beat him. Suddenly his tone immediately changed as soon as he saw what Mo Kyung-gun was holding in his hands. Mo Kyung-gun held the basics of fencing of the Brotherhood of the Sword in his hand, inviting Mo Kyu-chun to take it for himself. Mo Kyu-chun asked where the evidence was that the book was real, to which Mo Kyung-gun threw it to the younger one, telling him to take a look for himself. Intensely leafing through the book, Mo Kyu-chun realized that the third son had not lied, and the book spoke of an advanced level of skills. Suddenly Mo Kyung-gun notices that the book is missing pages, asking Mo Kyung-gun where they are. Mo Kyung-gun just silently points his finger at his head, smiling sarcastically. An irritated Mo Kyu-chun asked him where he got the scripture. Mo Kyung-gun said that it doesn't matter, because the only thing that matters is that he now has the scripture. Breaking into a cry, Mo Kyu-chun asked why the third son came here. Mo Kyung-gun just smiled, listening to Mo Kyu-chun, who thought that the third son had come to mock him. Throwing the book at Mo Kyung-gun, Mo Kyu-chun told him to get out of here. Picking up the scripture and dusting it off, Mo Kyung-gun said that he came to make a deal because the post of head of the clan does not bother him. Mo Kyu-chun asks if Mo Kyung-gun is really not interested in the position of head. Then, without waiting for an answer, he attacked him, hitting him in the face with his fist. Mo Kyung-gun flew a couple of meters away from the blow of the fourth son to the screams of Ko-chan. Mo Kyung-gun says that he will not believe this nonsense, saying that the memories of the beating 2 years ago have already faded in Mo Kyung-gun's mind. Mo Kyu-chun shouted that Mo Kyung-gun didn't even think about approaching him again. Wiping away the blood flowing from his nose, Mokyong-gun is delighted, thinking that the fourth son is on a completely different level. He thinks that he still cannot compare with his grandfather's killer. Mokyong-gun thinks that after seeing other experts like Master Kam and Sanun-baek, he understood why Gochang was fussing. After all, looking at Mokyuchan and the aura that he exuded, Mokyong-gun realized that he was a real monster. Mokyong-gun realized that this time, luck couldn't solve everything, because he didn't even have time to react, which made him wonder whether it was really possible to become so strong thanks to the arts. Thinking that if everything worked out, he would avenge his grandfather, Mokyong-gun grinned, saying that Mokyuchan had a heavy hand. Approaching Mokyong-gun, he said that apparently Mokyong-gun did not have enough and should be added, to which the latter replied that he knew that Mokyuchan would not believe him. Raising his hand for another blow, Mokyuchan replied that he would not believe a single word Mokyong-gun said. Hearing Mokyuchan's words, Mokyong-gun replied that nothing could be done, and that he would have to give the scripture to Lady Seok or the second brother. From these, Mokyuchan immediately froze and his expression changed from anger to fear. Taking Mokyuchan's hand, he asked him how about Mokyonho, or Mokongpyong, becoming the head of the clan, saying that they were unlikely to leave him alone. Crossing glances, Mokyong-gun said that Mokyuchan was the receiver whom the head trusted the most. Mokyuchan screamed angrily, asking if he was thinking of threatening him. With a chilling look, Mokyong-gun said that he was only presenting him with a fait accompli, asking if he thought that he was really trying to intimidate him. Surprised by Mokyong-gun's words, Mokyuchan froze for a moment, realizing what was happening. Letting go of Mokyong-gun's robes, Mokyuchan asked him who he was. Looking at him, Mokyuchan asked him the question, "Have you been replaced?" Hearing Mokyuchan's words, Gochang immediately clenched his teeth in fear and panic. Mokyong-gun continued to silently look at Mokyuchan with a mixture of equanimity and indifference on his face. Changing his facial expression to a slightly irritated one, Mokyong-gun asked, "So what?" Amazed by what he heard in response to his question, Mokyuchan was perplexed. Mokyong-gun said that he spoke as if he knew everything about him, to which Mokyuchan laughed, saying that he did. Mokyuchan grinningly said that 2 years ago, one guy was beaten like a dog, and as soon as he appeared, he ran away in fear, asking if he was this guy. To Mokyuchan's surprise, Mokyong-gun immediately agreed with his words but continued. He asked what else Mokyuchan knew about him, besides their relationship and the incident 2 years ago. Does he know about his tastes, beliefs, train of thought or position, or what feelings prompted him to refuse the post of head, asking if he will answer at least one question? Suddenly, Mokyuchan burst into flames, shouting back the question of what Mokyong-gun knew about him, saying that he ignored him and stayed away, considering him a non-entity. Mokyong-gun said that it was his turn to ask, asking why he, because no one except his father recognized him, asking why Mokyong-gun did not choose a more worthy one. Mokyong-gun told him that the reason was simple, saying that he was the best. Mokyong-gun's answer shocked Mokyuchan so much that he was only perplexed. He remembered how he grew up being persecuted because he was born out of wedlock. He was completely alone, which is why he began to train tirelessly. Mokyuchan trained so that someone would recognize him. And now this someone is standing in front of him, the one from whom he least expected to hear a confession. Mokyuchan felt that Mokyong-gun hated him for that incident 2 years ago. Bringing his gaze to the sky, he wondered if this meant that he too had to change. Sighing, Mokyuchan, to Gochang's surprise, showed agreement regarding Mokyong-gun. He replied that he would listen to Mokyong-gun, no matter what the deal was. Mokyong-gun smiled in his usual manner, announcing his business proposal. Mokyong-gun and Gochang leave the place where the younger one was training. Mokyong-gun hummed a melody. Gochang was silent. Looking after Mokyong-gun, Gochang thought that he could only recognize the skill of his double. Gochang wondered how he would get the foundation of the family martial art, but he had no idea that everything would work out like this, thinking that no one would be able to play so naturally. Mokyong-gun told Mokyuchan that he had 3 requests for him. His first request was not to touch him, even if he became the head of the clan. The second request was financial support. Mokyuchan agreed to Mokyong-gun's requests, saying that as long as he did not touch him, he would not touch him in return, asking about the third request. Mokyong-gun's third request was to teach him the basics of family art. Hearing Mokyong-gun's words, Mokyuchan did not suspect anything, and only laughed, asking Mokyong-gun if he had forgotten them. After which he agreed, saying that he would help Mokyong-gun remember the basics, which was his original plan. Because Mokyong-gun satisfied Mokyuchan's desire to be recognized, he taught him the basics without a doubt. Even a genius like Mokyuchan needed a couple of hours to memorize the secret techniques, but Cheon only needed to hear them once. Glad that everything went smoothly, Gochang told Mokyungun that he had done a good job. Gochang said that he was very impressed but regretted that Mokyungun had to talk about the scripture, which Mokyungun did not share. Mokyungun told Gochang that he told his youngest son exactly the wrong thing. Mokyungun said that he thought it was worth keeping it a secret by telling Gochang the secret. Mokyungun said that he changed the scripture slightly, changing every 13 or 14 characters. He was worried that he might get caught, but everything went smoothly. Gochang understood why he was telling everything so simply. Mokyungun continued, saying that if someone makes a mistake in the exercise, they will go crazy. After which, smiling as indifferently as always, he asked what's wrong. To which Gochang could only hopelessly answer that in general, nothing. Meanwhile, in the Shadow Palace, a Taoist master named Guo sat. The shadow of the ghostly palace addressed him, saying that they had lost contact with the new moon. Shadow revealed that she not only failed to put Myosin to rest, but also accused and betrayed Lady Seok, which was the end of their relationship with the Brotherhood of Swords. Shadow called upon Go, his favorite student, to find New Moon, find out the truth, and restore their reputation. Guo replied, "I obey," after which the spirit in the form of a huge bird appeared behind him. A thick fog descended on the mountains, enveloping the surrounding forests. On the ground near the old roots of a tree lies the hat of a Taoist master stained with blood. A steel ring tied with an orange ribbon lay on the ground next to a pool of blood. Taoist Master Guo stood near a huge pool of blood, next to which scraps of cloth were scattered. Go brought the talisman, holding it with 2 fingers, and it immediately decayed. Go realizes that this is the place where New Moon was brutally killed, despite the fact that she was one of the 3 great masters of the Phantom Palace. Realizing that there was something more to it, Guo said a prayer to shed light on the events that happened with the new moon. Continuing to read the prayer, Go perceived in the air, and the energy of death began to flow towards him from the area around him. Go's wide eyes lit up with a radiance, and he was able to see the full picture of what had happened. He sees how New Moon met Miss Seok and performed a ritual with Musin's body. Then he saw how someone repelled the New Moon spell, and then her battle with Mokyungun. He saw how New Moon lost the battle with Mokyungun, how her spirit was captured by him. And then he saw the last minutes of the New Moon, hearing her words about the thirst for revenge. Returning from the vision, Go feels that something foreign is looming menacingly over his shoulders. He is overcome with horror. He will feel the fear that New Moon experienced before her death. Unable to bear the horror hanging over him, Go turned around with eyes full of fear. But when he turns around, he sees only the New Moon hat, which was lying leaning on a tree. Sweat drips from his forehead as he realizes that the incredibly strong Supreme Spirit Cheongyeon was here. Raising his head to the sky, Go somehow realizes that he needs more time to prepare, mentioning a certain Gojo. Meanwhile, a peaceful, cloudless sky froze above the castle. The sun was shining on the valley from behind the mountains. Cheongyeon was tense and silently smoked her pipe while watching Mokyungun. Mokyungun followed the scripture exactly, repeating every martial arts move one after another. At one point, he raised his leg, repeating the stance from the scripture. He then repeated the straight punch shown in the book. Then he finished the combination with a direct blow, pulling his second hand to shoulder level. Observing Mokyungun's actions, Cheongyeon tried to understand what he was trying to achieve with such methods. After all, usually beginners must repeat standard positions over and over again in order to develop basic techniques. However, even now, with the exception of the first position of the technique, Mokyungun simply has no mistakes in any stance. He only needs to repeat training to strengthen his muscles because the accuracy of his movements is already at a high level. Cheongyeon, with a clear look of surprise on his face, realizes that Mokyungun is an absolute genius of martial arts. She is slightly annoyed because she expected Mokyungun to ask her for advice. And although she was not going to tell him anything, now she is ready to help him if he asks nicely. Cheongyeon became enraged by her own thoughts about Mokyungun so loudly and emotionally that he himself noticed it. Gochang comes to Mokyungun, informing him of his arrival. Mokyungun only says that he wants him to do something, which surprises Gochang. The events move to Cheongnan County, a place filled with crowds of people on the street and a high wall of the city. Gochang is sitting in the Lily of the Valley Pavilion, holding in his hands a small piece of paper with some content that Mokyungun gave him. With a somewhat incomprehensible and thoughtful face, Gochang read what was written on the piece of paper. Gochang, looking at the piece of paper received from Mokyungun, wondered what kind of hieroglyph was depicted on it. When asked by Gochang about the nature of this sign, Mokyungun only asked to deliver a piece of paper with the hieroglyph to the Information Guild. But Gochang is skeptical, because he believes that the only problem is that no one in the area is even doing this. Kokan suddenly catches himself thinking that he doesn't understand why he's worried, because now he's just an errand boy. Kokan looked at the ceiling and thought, and during the course of his internal monologue, he came to the conclusion that he had no purpose in life. In the distant past, Kokan was abandoned by his parents, which led him to the path of an assassin. And even with this work, he had to leave, after which he met Master Kam, a terrible man who only used Kokan as a tool. There is nothing to complain about with Mokyogen, especially with his own low-level skills, says Kokan. Kokan realizes that he can only go with the flow until he becomes completely useless and is abandoned again. On the other hand, Goken is now less burdened with hard work. However, he constantly worries about what such an impulsive Mokyogen might get himself into. Under Kokan's words that he was simply doing what he was told, someone approached him going down the steps. A large man enters the room with a roar of laughter. Next to him is a young girl in expensive clothes. A man, seemingly tipsy, asks for forgiveness for the long wait. This is the informant of the Lily of the Valley Pavilion, or rather its owner, Guak. Kocha is infuriated that his interlocutor looks drunk already in the morning, but he simply gives him a request. Guak wraps his arm around the girl next to her. Her look is sophisticated as it is miserable. The owner of the pavilion asks what Kokan thinks about the girl, whether she is beautiful. He kicks the girl out of the room, to which Guak replies that there is nothing to worry about. Kokan's face turns gloomy, and in a terrifying manner he repeats the request to drive the girl out. Guak lets go of the girl and tells her to leave. His drunken grin still hasn't subsided, while the girl bows to Gochan. He tells the girl to wait for him and raises her hand for a lewd spank. Gochan stops Guak's heinous act by slamming his fist on the table. However, even without Gochan's help, the girl herself gives Guak a strong slap in the face. Gochan, slightly taken aback by the current situation, froze with his fist on the table watching what was happening. She talks about how tired she is from all this, raising her hands to her hair, while Guak embarrassedly held his hand to his cheek. The girl lets her hair down. Guak recognizes the girl as the one and then attacks her from behind. Suddenly, the girl dodges and jumps over Guak using his own head as a support, which shocks him. Standing with one hand on Guak's head, the girl twists his neck in one movement. Guak's body falls as the mysterious girl jumps away from him. Kokan immediately grabbed his sword, not understanding what the hell was happening. However, he does not have time to draw his blade, because the girl has already kicked the table in his direction. Kochan's face was distorted with fear and anticipation of being hit in the face with a table. The girl, grinning from behind the table flying towards Kokan, says that they have not seen each other for a long time. She calls him the 86th low-ranking assassin and stabs needles into his body. Frozen from the technique performed on him, Kokan watched as the girl began to tear off her clothes. Finally, the girl takes off her covering clothes, saying that she's disappointed that the 86th was not able to recognize her. After which, biting the tip of her flying knife, she calls him Mr. Kokan. He is that in front of him, Hacherin is the first and only granddaughter of the head of one of the 4 clans of killers, namely the Flying Killers. In surprise, he only muttered, "Madam. To become the head of a clan, you need to kill 100 people. This is a tradition. The one who passes this test will become the head of the Flying Killer clan and one of the 4 great killers of the center. In addition, he will receive 1 secret poison weapon for his personal use." Charon pulls out the benevolence needles, her personal weapon, from Gochung and releases the blood poisoned by them. Kokan understands that since such a legendary weapon belongs to her, she is already the head of the clan. And although she was the only worthy heir, Kokan considers her character a huge minus for the status of the head. He remembers how in childhood, she was already unbearable and did not know any boundaries of what was permitted. Goken stares at Charon, realizing how much she has changed in appearance since then. The girl took the last needle out of Kokan's body, not painlessly. She says she didn't expect to see Kokan in such a place. He continues to address her as mistress, but she interrupts him because she is now the leader of the clan. With a satisfied smile, she boasts that she is now the head. Kokan confirms his guess. Charon asks him if he plans to treat the clan leader appropriately. Kokan kneels down and already addresses her as the leader of the clan. Charon came here to get to her first son, because she heard that he is extremely depraved. Now she will go with Kokan. She received information that the 29th mid-rank assassin, Master Kam, had failed a mission in the palace. Kokan is overtaken by memories of the master and how he was killed. Charon is surprised that he couldn't cope with his skills and realizes that he's most likely already been killed. At the end, Charon adds that she is here, first of all, to deprive Mokyogen of his head and complete the mission. The sun is already setting over the palace. Scarlet color covers the entire sky. Cheongyeon still silently watches Mokyogen repeat the exercises. Cheongyeon, with obvious dissatisfaction, asks Mokyogun when his training will stop. Mokyogun looks at the sky and finally remembers how much time has passed since the morning. Mokyogun suggests that Cheongyeon should have dinner, since this is the time. Cheongyeon blushes at Mokyogun's proposal, only smiling silently in response. While Mokyogun is reading a book on techniques for summoning spirits, the girl behind him unashamedly eats everything on the table. He asks if she likes the food, to which, continuing to chew, she nods positively. The girl says that one of the greatest joys in life is food. Cheongyeon possessed this girl only to experience the pleasure of the meal. She took possession of the maid a few days ago and really liked it, but Cheongyeon is indignant that the body cannot withstand even a quarter of an hour. However, when Cheongyeon tried to take possession of a prettier maid, she almost killed her, because an ordinary body is not able to withstand such a level of force, after which Cheongyeon throws the body of the maid. Cheongyeon tells Mokyogun that he's too interested in Taoism. He only says that he is sincerely interested in reading the Book of the New Moon, namely the technique of summoning 6 spirits. Mokyogun suddenly thought about what if he managed to summon the spirit of a dead man. Suddenly Mokyogun turns around and Cheongyeon also notices something. She notices that he has become more attentive and sensitive. They both look towards their brothers-in-law. A dark aura fills the room. Meanwhile, Gochang provides Charon with maid clothes. She calls her a rag and says that courtesans have even better outfits. Gochan is at his limit. He is incredibly infuriated by Charon's character, but something else worries him. If she finds out that Gochang betrayed Master Kam, he is finished. He needs to quickly tell Cheongyeon about her. He wants to go out while Charon is changing clothes and getting ready to go out. Charon mockingly asks if he wants to watch. After all, when else will he get such a unique chance? Gochan blushed and fell silent, and Charon burst out laughing, saying that it was just a joke. After Charon thanks Gochan for his help, he answers politely. Kokon says that he himself was looking for an opportunity to avenge Master Kam. He understands that otherwise, he will not survive. Charon is happy to hear this because even after all these years, they are a team. Here she stops and says that she trusts Kokon. Suddenly, the tone of the conversation changes. She asks if this is what he wanted to hear. She says that if Master Kam died and Kokon did nothing, then he is on the same page with the murderer. Charon calls Gochang a pathetic scum who is incapable of even taking revenge. Kokon is already thinking that Charon has found out about everything, and he is destined for death. The girl's tone becomes light again. She remembers that Kokon has not changed at all since his early years, still stupid and boring. She believes that such scum should be killed immediately. Kokon asks himself when everything went wrong, when the double killed the real candidate, when he betrayed Master Kam. He realizes that the cause of everything was his own weakness. Charon offers a different ending. Gokhan must kill Mokyogun, avenging Master Kam, and then commit suicide. She raises her dagger as she bids farewell to Gokhan. This could be his last memory. A hand covered in chi energy bursts out from behind the wall. Fusion Right knocks out Charon's dagger and pulls it to her hand. Charon looks in surprise towards his enemy, while Gokhan has not yet recovered from the horror he experienced. Mokyogun appears in the room holding a dagger and addresses Gochan. With a happy face, he asks if he has any problems. Charon put a sharp knife to Gochang's neck. She threatens Mokyogun with the death of his beloved henchman if he attacks. Mokyogun stands opposite, assessing the situation. Everything has frozen. Kokon understands that most likely Charon's source reported that the third son is a complete zero in martial arts. It is clear that she is completely confused because Mokyogun just used telekinesis. In her opinion, he could already have reached the peak of his strength and become extremely dangerous. But she doesn't know that Mokyogun doesn't care at all about other people's lives. Mokyogun begins to walk with a raised dagger towards Charon. Gochan believes that this is the end of him. He swings and throws the dagger between them. It pierces the floor. Mokyogun confidently demands that Gochan be released immediately. Gochan doesn't believe what he hears, that Mokyogun would care about anyone's life. He promises to let the killer go if she lets him go. Charon only asks if he is so important to him. Mokyogun says that this is just his whim, because he would not want to lose a servant so trivially, and he allows her to leave. Gochan does not believe that Mokyogun is really asking for his life. Charon is furious that Mokyogun is asking the leader of the murder clan to release his servant. She asks Mokyogun to kneel down and ask her to let Gochan go. Sighing heavily, Mokyogun prepares to kneel, to the surprise of those around him. Charon herself does not understand why he's doing this for some guard. Almost crouching, Mokyogun snatches a dagger sticking out of the floor. With one quick dash, he closes the distance with the killer. Charon is happy, because she calculated his actions far in advance. However, she is worried that Mokyogun is not looking at her, but somewhere to the side. She's surrounded by the forces of the bloody supreme spirit Cheongnyeon. She feels a hand above her head. Her legs are tied with thick blood. Cheongnyeon attacks and Charon barely manages to jump back, feeling horror. With one wave of his hand, the spirit pushes Go Chang and Charon away from him. Charon still doesn't understand what's going on in the room. She looks around and sees nothing of what she thought she was doing just a minute ago. Cheongnyeon reappears. She is not surprised that her blow was felt because Charon has great strength and training. But while Cheongnyeon was addressing her, Mokyogun swings a dagger from behind. At the last moment, Charon throws out his knife in order to deflect the flying dagger. Now she is disarmed, so she retreats from Kokon. Mokyogun congratulates Gochan on his successful return before quickly removing the needles from his body. Charon is even more confused about Mokyogun's actions and his real strength. She feels a strong energy behind him, but is not able to fully see. Having assessed the strength of the throw, Charon realizes that Mokyogun is not yet at the peak of her strength, which means she can win. Charon and Mokyogun run towards each other, closing the distance for close combat. She takes out the clan's secret weapon, the legendary flying clan needle. Mokyogun raises his hand with concentrated chi and says that this is a stupid decision. Charon does not agree and throws the needle towards the enemy with all his might. Mokyogun uses the fusion ritual. He understands that such a needle can kill him instantly. He realizes that he cannot move. His body is covered in snow. The needle is designed in such a way that it cannot be influenced by internal force, which is why it is a deadly weapon against martial artists. The needle is getting closer to Mokyogun. Charon is already looking forward to victory. Gochan runs in front of Mokyogun and pushes him aside. Everyone in the room held their breath for what might happen. The needle pierces Koken's body, going straight into the chest. He falls, severely wounded by the legendary weapon. Mokyogun turns around, his gaze full of confusion, and he turns to Gochan. Gochan, who took the blow of the needle and pushed Mokyogun, fell to the floor, the needle sticking out of his chest. Mokyogun was furious that Gochan was hurt, his eyes glowing crimson. Filled with rage, Mokyogun sent Cheongnyeon to deal with the annoying Ha-Charon. Ha-Charon found herself in a hopeless situation and had no choice but to throw paralyzing needles at Mokyogun. Mokyogun used the fusion ritual, taking the needles flying at him with his hand. To Charon's surprise, Charon did not have time to notice how Cheongnyeon approached her, and the blood began to entangle her like a cobweb. Charon, unable to resist the power of her spirit, only screamed while the bloody hands pulled her closer. Cheongnyeon, hovering over Charon, told her that she should have left on good terms when she was given such a chance. Charon asked Cheongnyeon what she was, while she herself was already transported to the bloody spirit dimension. Mokyogun appeared in front of her with the words, "I told you so," looking at her with a stern gaze. He continued, saying that it was stupid until his hands finally entangled Charon, who was crying in horror. Cheongnyeon finished her work, and Charon's body fell to the floor like a sack of potatoes. Mokyogun turned around and headed back to Gochang, who was lying on the floor mortally wounded. Sitting down next to Gochang, Mokyogun said that he was really sorry that this happened to him, adding that he wanted to work with him more. Mokyogun asked Gochang why he shielded him from the killer's needle by taking the blow on himself. Gochang answered him with difficulty that it was his responsibility to protect Mokyogun, and besides, he was trying to save him, and therefore Gochang could not leave him. Gochang told Mokyogun that he was the only one who did not betray him, because everyone else had betrayed him all his life. With his last breath, Kokan said that he was the only one who did not abandon him, which is why he is happy, after which he died with a blissful smile on his face. Mokyogun was silent and only put his hand on the chest of the guard Gochang, who had just died. Suddenly, Charon asked Mokyogun that Gochang had died after all, which made Mokyogun turn around. Mokyogun silently looked at the smiling Charon, glaring at her, and then said, "You have mastered her." Cheongnyeon in the body of Charon said that this is true, adding that young bodies are better than all others. Suddenly, on her body, like on everyone else whom Cheongnyeon possessed, traces of the disintegration of the vessel appeared. Cheongnyeon was furious that even Charon's body could not support her for a long time. Looking at Gochan's body, Cheongnyeon said that she still felt sorry for him, because everything should have ended differently. She tells Mokyogun that Gochang didn't even become a vengeful spirit, believing that this means that he was glad to die for Mokyogun and left without regrets. Cheongnyeon's words did not console Mokyogun, and after a short silence, he suddenly started talking about the technique of summoning 6 spirits. Having begun to collect chi in his hands, Mokyogun also said that vengeful spirits are born due to strong hatred, or in places where the breath of death and regrets are full. Then he added that its core consists of the energy of death, which caused an emotion of bewilderment on Cheongnyeon's face. Making a seal with his hands, Mokyung-gun said that he would use the energy of his core to create a vengeful spirit. While Mokyung-gun was concentrating the energy of death around himself, Cheong-yeon asked if he was sure that it would work. Changing the seals one after another, Mokyung-gun began to carry out the ritual of creating a vengeful spirit. Suddenly, light energy began to appear directly from the chest of the dead Kokkan, gathering into a single stream. The energy gathered together, forming a bright blue glowing sphere. A crimson thread immediately reached out to the sphere, connecting the spirit with its new owner. Surprised that Mokyung-gun succeeded, Cheong-yeon says that since he used the breath of death, he returned as a familiar spirit. Then he says that despite this, the energy of the spirit is very weak, and if you don't find a vessel for it, it can disappear very quickly. Mokyung-gun replied to Cheong-yeon that then he would find the vessel, to which she skeptically asked where he intended to look. Suddenly, the expression on her face changed. Raising her hands in front of her chest, she asked if he was joking. Kokkan's spirit, having separated from his body, seemed to endlessly drown in the void. Kokkan wondered if he had died. Looking at the light from above, he realized that his consciousness was becoming cloudy and that he would no longer get out. Kokkan thought about how it had turned out, wondering why he had been trying all this time. Having come to terms with his situation, Kokkan thought that in the end he did not regret his action. Suddenly, from the depths, fragments of Mokyung-gun's voice reached Gochan, saying his name. Suddenly, Gochan opened his eyes and saw that Mokyung-gun was calling him, sitting right in front of him. Gochan immediately began to freak out, asking Mokyung-gun why he was alive, to which Mokyung-gun told him to listen to him carefully. He told Kokkan that he used the breath of death to keep Kokkan in the mortal world, and therefore he became his familiar. He then added that despite this, there was still little energy and his soul could disappear. Kokkan interrupted him by asking what all this meant. Mokyung-gun replied that he had to quickly find a vessel for the soul of Gochang, who still did not understand what was happening. Silently raising his hand, Gochang trembled, but Mokyung-gun replied that there was only one body nearby. Mokyung-gun said that this is why he transferred Gochang's soul into the killer's body. After examining his new body, Kokkan, being in complete shock, only shouted, "What the hell?" Gochang begged Mokyung-gun to let him out of Chirin's body and return him to his body, saying that a woman's body was too much. While straightening the broken door, Mokyung-gun replied that then Gochang would disappear, and even if there was another body, the assassin's girl would still have to be killed. Holding his head, Gokhan understood that Mokyung-gun was right, because if he had killed Chirin, he would have had to face the whole clan, realizing that there was no way out. Kokkan heard a voice behind him saying that he was incredibly lucky, after which he turned around to see where the sound was coming from. Gochang saw an overly dissatisfied Cheong-yeon, who told him that it was difficult for her to even get the vessel. With a pitiful face, Kokkan thought that he didn't know who was in front of him, but becoming a ghost, he began to feel something new. He felt the difference in status between him and Cheong-yeon, enough to see a sea of blood. Gochan looks at Mokyung-gun in surprise, thinking about who he is, since there was something like this next to this devil all the time. Cheong-yeon asked what happened to Gochan's face, saying that the newcomer should be glad that he got at least some kind of body, to which he replied that he was a man. Cheong-yeon got angry, saying that he still thinks like a mortal, and that he should be happy, because from a second-rate fighter, he became a high-class martial artist. Suddenly he heard the phrase, "Let's check it in practice," which took him by surprise. Mokyung-gun's foot immediately quickly approached Gochang's face, but he managed to dodge the attack. Gokhan didn't have time to ask Mokyung-gun what he was doing before he told him that he had changed a lot. Kokhan became inspired, thinking that he had never moved like this, and marveling at what the masters were capable of. Cheong-yeon asked Gochang if he was happy now, to which he sheepishly replied that he was still a man. Cheong-yeon teased Gochang by saying that he wanted to enjoy all the delights in secret, to which Gochang objected. Mokyung-gun replied that for now they would leave everything as it is and transfer it as soon as the opportunity arises. Suddenly a man knocked on the door of the room, introducing himself as Bokyun from the courtyard. Opening the door, Mokyung-gun asked him what was the matter. Bokyun replied that he brought good news. Bokyun told Mokyung-gun that the clan head had finally woken up. Taoist Ghost Palace Master Guo stood on the hill, looking into the distance and holding his in a strange position. Looking through the memories received from New Moon, he recognized the estate where Mokyung-gun lives, who challenged them, believing that this would be an unusual job. A huge bird-shaped shadow flew toward the Sword Brotherhood castle. Go thought that he was going to explore he was thinking about what he should do, because he would be caught as soon as he touched the barrier, when suddenly Go saw something unusual. He notices a nobleman standing at the gate, next to whom are two ladies and a guard. The tipsy nobleman turned out to be none other than the eldest son of Mokyong-ho. The guard informed him that the rest of the candidates had gathered in honor of the awakening of the head. Guo overheard the conversation, learning that all the candidates were gathering together. He decided that this was his chance, because Mokyong-gun would have to go to the head. Go planned to deal with Mokyong-gun one-on-one, provided that his familiar Gojo could defeat his spirit. Mokyong-gun was silent for some time, which took the guard aback, after which he replied that he was confused with joy. Mokyong-gun was mired in his thoughts. The fact that the head woke up is a problem, because he managed to find out that fighting for the place of the head of the clan is annoying and was about to leave since he managed to learn the basics of martial arts. Bokyun also added that the head asked to gather all his sons. Mokyong-gun replied that then they should go immediately. On his way out, Mokyong-gun almost misspoke when addressing Gochang by name, but he corrected himself by telling Charon that the cleaning was hers. Smiling awkwardly standing next to his own corpse, Kochkan and Charon's body only agreed with his words. Gochang silently peered out from behind the door, watching as Mokyong-gun, accompanied by Cheongnyeon, went to the meeting of his sons. Kokan is surprised that he will have to clean up his own corpse, complaining that his life is now a dark streak. After which, looking at his new body, he blushes, thinking about how he ended up in this body. Looking around, Kokan, smiling, began to take off his clothes from his body, thinking that he shouldn't walk around in such clothes and that he should wear a security guard's uniform. With an arrogant smile, Cheongnyeon suddenly looks into Gochan's room, penetrating through the wall. Cheongnyeon only silently exhaled smoke, after which she disappeared behind the wall with a laugh, leaving the embarrassed Gochang alone with himself. Walking towards the head of the clan, Ian suddenly notices someone coming towards him, who also notices Ian. This man turned out to be the youngest son, Mokyu-chan, clearly not happy with having met Mokyong-gun. Cheongnyeon sarcastically noted that Mokyu-chan had survived after all, to which Mokyong-gun asked with a laugh whether it was true, after which he said that Mokyong-gun's skin color was not entirely healthy, adding that at least he did not receive a chi deviation due to the technique fabricated by Mokyong-gun. Mokyong-gun told Mokyu-chan that he was glad to see him, saying that 3 whole days had passed. Mokyu-chan told him to shut up. Mokyu-chan asked Mokyong-gun if he had tried that secret technique to answer. Cheongnyeon amusedly sympathized with Mokyu-chan, and Mokyong-gun asked if he had any problems. Mokyong-gun says that he is asking about this seeing his condition, after which he asked if he tried it himself, to which Mokyong-gun replied that of course he tried. Mokyu-chan grabbed his head and blushed, saying that his knowledge was apparently not enough. Cheongnyeon suddenly told Mokyong-gun that someone was already here, noticing his incredible impudence. She says that someone dared to enter here fearlessly, even after seeing her territory of the will of the spirits. Mokyong-gun realized that it was someone from the ghostly palace, but Cheongnyeon took her leave to solve the problem of the intruder. Heading to the head of the clan, Mokyong-gun and Mokyu-chan exchange phrases to pass the time. Upon entering the palace, Mokyong-gun and Mokyu-chan are confronted by Mokyu-pyeon and his mother, surrounded by guards. Mokyu-pyeon was thinking about why Mokyong-gun and Mokyu-chan came together while Mrs. Seok was wiping Mokyong-ho's face with a handkerchief. She told her son not to say a word because he reeked of alcohol, saying that his mother would do everything for him. Looking back at Mokyong-hon, Mogun-pyeong thought about how pitiful the firstborn of the family is. He wondered if their father had called them for the one. Mrs. Sok nervously thought that there was only one reason to call all the sons immediately after waking up, and it had to be it. Mokyu-chan only thought that he didn't care whether there was truth in the scriptures because if he became the heir, it would solve all his problems. Mokyong-gun thought that the head of the clan was one of the 10 strongest masters in the central province. He was only able to sense the powerful man's energy when the head woke up. The head of the clan allowed his sons to enter, after which the doors to his chambers swung open. The sons of the clan immediately greeted the head, congratulating him on his recovery. The head of the Mokundan clan sat in front of his sons, surprised that they all came. Mokyong-ho and Mogun-pyeong just stood silently in front of the head, noticeably nervous. Mokyong-gun looked at his sons, silently running his gaze over each of them. He suddenly understood the reason why everyone was so attentive to the state of the head, thinking that it was not a matter of position. Mokyong-gun realized that the reason was that all his sons understood his authority. Mokyong-gun thought about how surprised he was that despite the fact that the head was practically dying, he did not show a drop of courage, as if nothing had happened to him. Looking at the Hallmaster Mokundan with all his power, Mokyong-gun thought about what kind of creature could bring him half to death. Meanwhile, events moved to another place in the castle, to the usual sword hall. In the annex of ordinary warriors, certain 2 people killed all the guards, discussing that Mokundan had been saved from death. The man with the straw hat on his head answered the second one with the huge sword that he heard the screams of Gu Dao, the Dokebi of Mount Lu'u. The big man laughed, saying that the Taoist master intervened and saved his life. His colleague asked what their plan was now. Passing by the surviving guard, the big man replied that there was only one plan now, to personally kill Mokundan. Suddenly the big man stopped, asking the guard if he had slept well. After which, with a swing of his huge sword, he didn't leave a wet spot on the poor fellow. The big guy broke down the door to the dojo by kicking the head of one of the now deceased guards. Then he raised his sword, indicating to the many fighters hiding on the roof to move forward. The sons of the clan lined up in front of the clan head, holding their hands behind their backs. The head of the Mokundan clan turned to his sons, asking them if they understood why they had been called. None of the sons could say a word, closing their eyes or looking away. Suddenly, Mokyungun casually asked the head of the clan whether the head's decision to name the heir was the reason for the meeting. Looking at Mokyungun, Mokundan thought that his son had changed noticeably, wondering if the chief servant's words could be true. Only after waking up, Mokundan spoke with the main servant, who told him that it was none other than his third son who saved him. The servant replied that it was so, saying that they say that he single-handedly stopped the maddened master of Taoism, who was possessed by an evil spirit. Mokundan at first thought that this was a coincidence, or that Mokyungun simply wanted to get the head position. Looking at Mokyungun, he thought that the child who could not raise his head in his presence now did not show a single drop of excitement, wondering what changes had occurred while he was not paying attention to him. Mokundan decides to test Mokyungun, answering that he will conduct a test to choose a successor. Mokundan said that he would carefully check them to see if they had enough qualifications to become the head, when suddenly Mokyungun raised his hand. He apologized to the head, saying that he would not take this test. Everyone in the room looked at him in surprise. Mokundan asked if he really would not take the test. Mokyungun replied that it was so. Mokyungpyeon at that moment thought that it was even better, because if he immediately gave up, then there would be no problems from him. Mokundan, stroking his beard, asked him the reasons for his refusal to participate in the test. Mokyungun replied that the reason was that he was not good enough to be the head. Mokundan asked why Mokyungun thought so, to which he replied that he lacked qualifications. Mokyungun continued by saying that he has a lot of disadvantages when compared to his older brothers, or even his younger brothers. He said that the head must have valor, or he must reach the top, after which he says that he does not fall into this category, saying that he refuses the position of head of the clan. Such an answer only caused Mokundan to burst into laughter, unexpected for everyone present. Having calmed his laughter, Mokundan replied that he understood Mokyungun's arguments. Mokundan realized that Mokyungun had truly changed, that he was not deceiving him to get the position, and that he had saved him of his own free will. He sees that the child who was previously noisy is now reflecting on himself, and is even ready to give up his place as head for the sake of the prosperity of the clan. Smiling, Mokundan thinks that it is nice to see how your child grows, coming to the conclusion that he is more than worthy. Taking off his robe, Mokundan again asked Mokyungun why he considered himself unworthy. Everyone present immediately froze in shock when they saw what the clan head's robe hid behind. Mokundan told his sons that they must have been aware that he was being attacked, and that in a rage, the attacker cut off his hand. Mokundan said that the one who saved his life was his third son, which makes Mokgupyeong angry. Mokundan said that Mokyungun himself said that the head must reach the top, saying that this is quite enough to achieve. Mokyungpyeong, filled with anger and envy, thought about what he had heard about some incident, but did not think that Mokyungun could do something like that. However, continuing to look at Mokyungun, Mokyungpyeong wondered why he was silent. The picture of his past that had returned to him froze before Mokyungun's eyes. He again stood at the burnt house next to the corpse of his grandfather, unable to change anything. Looking at the body of the head of the Mokundan clan, he saw a hieroglyph that was painfully familiar to him. The same hieroglyph that he instructed to convey to Koken depicted on a small sheet of paper. The same hieroglyph that was on the body of his dead grandfather when he found it. It's a mark just like the one left on his chest and stomach. And this mark, this burning wound, was inflicted by none other than the killer of his grandfather. Mokyungun's face suddenly broke into a crazy smile with the realization that he was finally on his trail. Mokyungun looks at the clan leader's scars. He finally found what he was looking for. His gaze glazed over, and his expression was frozen between joy, bewilderment, and hatred. The third son finally comes to his senses and realizes that the head of the clan continues to speak. The head still considers the third son to be quite worthy of claiming his legacy. In the middle of his speech, the chapter is interrupted, and he instantly becomes wary. He asks what is happening. His anxiety is noticeable, but his sons do not understand what he is talking about. The servant opens the doors of the room and says that the clan is under attack. Near the main gate, the battle between the guards and the enemy forces continues. The leader walks in the vanguard, a terrifying, evil smile on his face. The commander of the guards orders his subjects to stand until the clan leader arrives. A fierce battle is underway. Swords sparkle in the darkness, and the cries of the maimed can be heard. The enemy commander walks between the fallen warriors, unfazed by the pools of blood and bodies under his feet. He approaches the main gate of the castle, noticing something very strange. He was surprised by how flimsy the gates were on such a large fortress. The guards turn around and hear a terrifying, loud explosion. With one powerful blow, the commander smashes the gates into pieces, their parts flying in all directions. He tells the troops to move deeper into the castle. The defense has been broken through. With a furious face, the commander orders that it be found at all costs. Meanwhile, the Taoist master of the Ghost Palace, Jiu, is watching the events. He doesn't understand what happened, looking at the escalating battle between the guards and the attackers. The Taoist master realizes that there is no way to eliminate the Mokyogun now. A special invisibility technique helps him remain unnoticed. In an instant, the calmness on the Taoist master's face changed to extreme surprise. A mysterious silhouette was visible from behind. A long familiar feeling visits the master, something familiar and frightening. It's a Taoist technique. Someone in a helmet casts a spell to complete the ritual. The Taoist master's invisibility disappeared in an instant, even though he had been noticed before. The man in the helmet grabs Master Go by the neck. He cannot move. From the enemy's movements, the master understands that he is at least on the 4th level of the moon. This man attempted on the life of the leader. A high-level Taoist, mysterious masked men. Master Guo tries to figure out what's going on while his body dies of suffocation. The Taoist reveals his organization, the original assassins, a group of masters subordinate to a large Murium organization. With the last movement of his hand, he ends Master Go's suffering. The master tells the leader that he was simply destroying the insect, but the former again reminds him of the search for it. Taking the magic seal in his hand, he agrees with the commander. The estate is already engulfed in flames. The leader orders to go to the head of the clan, Mokundan, to return the treasures. The clan leader walks along the roof with a sword in his hand, exuding true anger. He calls on the enemy army to prepare for death and raises his sword to the sky. Mokundan and his sons advance to defend the estate. Mokyogun follows behind, seeing his brothers eagerly rushing into battle. Having fallen behind a little, he stops, deciding that in such a massacre his disappearance will not be noticed. However, he is still considering whether to help the leader in the battle. The energy of death begins to flow through his hand. He senses danger. From behind, a masked swordsman attacks Mokyogun while he looks at his hand. At that moment, the third son stops the assassin's sword in its tracks, stunning him with his speed. With one almost imperceptible movement of his hand, he disarms the enemy. Mokyogun watches the burning mansion and the ongoing battle with blood on his hands. A multitude of deaths, spilled blood, and boundless despair merge into something. It is this breath of death that fills Mokyogun with power. As long as the battle lasts, he can absorb this energy without limit. However, he understands that doing this here is completely unsafe. Gohan appears in a new form and hurries to Mokyogun. He's confused by what is happening. The attack caught him while he was changing clothes. Mokyogun notes that Gochan arrived just in time. He asks the servant to cover him while he circulates the energy. While Koken is talking about how dangerous it is to do this here, he is attacked from behind. He reflects the blow. Meanwhile, Mokyogun is already circulating energy. The purest breath of death can be formed from the deaths of dozens of people. And now Mokyogun can absorb 3 times more energy than from the spirit of the battleship. Koken continues to fend off the assassin's attacks, protecting his master. Even with his newfound strong body, he can't easily hold off the attack on his own. He wonders where is Cheonyeon. Suddenly, the Supreme Judge Sanubek appears behind. Koken remembers that his body was possessed by a demon monk and asks him for help. Sanubek does not respond and stands silently opposite. A red line runs across his face and body, as if he had just been cut with the sharpest sword. From under Sanubek's shell, the face of a completely different person can be seen. There is fear in Koken's eyes. He doesn't know what to do. The mysterious man notices that Mokyogun is circulating energy right on the blood-soaked battlefield. Koken's body is shaking. All his senses are telling him to run, because the opponent is clearly much stronger than him, because he is already an unrivaled master. The swordsman grins, realizing that he has found what he has been looking for so long. Mokyogun concentrates energy and is completely detached from reality. Koken tries to wake him up, because a strong enemy is already a few steps away from them. He is confused because if he interferes with the circulation process, Mokyogen may forever lose touch with reality. Kokon understands that he simply cannot cope with such a strong opponent. The enemy was behind him before he even realized it. It doesn't look like a simple circulation of energy, and he notices it. Kokon just realized how strong the opponent in front of him was. He was filled with fear. The enemy commander looks at Mokyogen. He immediately realized that he was from the Mok clan. He wants to see what happens if he is disturbed while it is circulating. With tears in his eyes, Kokon decides to attack the strongest opponent. The killer's body retains the memory of techniques using poisons, which can buy him some time. Flying assassin's technique, third form, silent cuts. But even such a striking technique was not fast enough for him. With the simplest movement of his hand, he repelled one of the best secret techniques of the clan of assassins. He condescendingly warns Kokon that if he tries again, he will kill him. And again he wants to see what will happen to Mokyogen after his intervention. His hand is already above him. It is about to touch his head. But after thinking for a bit, he decided to finish the job right away with the sword. With great force, the sword comes down, cutting through the gusts of wind. But he is stopped by the clan leader's sword, which does not surprise the warrior at all. The aura of the battle of the strongest swordsman overshadows everything around. The clan head stands next to Mokyogen to protect the third son. Suddenly he coughs up blood because even the leader needs time to recover. Having mocked the leader's weakness, the warrior makes him an ultimatum. It consists in preserving the brotherhood by returning the stolen treasure to it. Meanwhile, Chonyeon is in the forest not far from the walls of the estate. The spirit that invaded her territory suddenly died, which means its owner is already dead. She understands that a mere mortal would not be able to cope with a Taoist who possesses a spirit of such a level. This means that there is someone with unimaginable power in the sword mansion. The battle has died down. The estate is slowly smoldering. An ominous silence hangs over it. Mokyogen opens his eyes, returning to the real world. Finding himself alone, surrounded by ruins, he does not understand what happened. Turning around, he notices a crowd of people gathered around something. The guards of the clan's estate kneel before the killers. The clan leader stands humbly before the enemy who defeated him. Mokyogen, realizing that the battle is over, goes down to the others. He asks the demon monk and Kokon about what happened. They are glad that he has awakened. Kokon says that the clan leader surrendered after a short battle. He promised the murderers to return their treasure in exchange for preserving the brotherhood of the sword. The enemy leader mocked the pathetic clan leader, but he promised to leave his people alone, swearing on his name, namely the name of the king of radiance, Song Yun, one of the 5 kings of the union of heaven and earth. Kochen, hearing this, fell into a stupor. The union of heaven and earth was what bothered him. Mokyogen asks what kind of alliance this is. The union of heaven and earth is a very influential organization, one of the great trinity of the central plain of Marima. For a long time, they wanted to unite all the fighting clans with blood and iron. Even the mention of them causes horror. Kokon notes that even in comparison with the great brotherhood of the sword, the union of heaven and earth has an absolute advantage. They are on a different level. And their leader, one of the strongest warriors of the Marima plain, one of the 5 kings of the union of heaven and earth, the king of radiance, Song Yun. Be that as it may, the fate of the brotherhood of the sword now depends only on his words. The head of the clan is already told about the location of the treasure. The warriors of the union are already on their way to it. But the treasure they are looking for is located in the basement of the medical ward. Song Yun asked where their treasure was, the sacred book made of human skin. Mokyogen remembers the book they're looking for. His gaze changes. Kokon advises Mokyogen to remain silent for now, when he suddenly realizes that he is no longer near him. He found himself right next to the clan leader, who clearly did not expect his appearance. Because Mokyogen was circulating energy, the leader thought that he was seriously injured and advised the third son to rest for a while. Mokyogen asks about the scar on the leader's side where he got this mark. The head asks in response why he decided that this was a mark. A subordinate runs up to Song Yun and loudly reports that the treasure has been found. Song Yun's expression changed instantly and he laughed triumphantly. The clan leader tells the third that now is not the best time to talk. Mokyogen, on the contrary, wants to hear everything now. Mokyogen proposes a deal, namely to resolve the current situation. Meanwhile, Song Yun discovers the clan's lost treasure. Suddenly, the atmosphere around changes, which everyone around notices. An enraged Song Yun turns around and addresses the head of the Mok clan. Meanwhile, Mokyogen informs the head that there is nothing left in the basement of the medical ward. Song Yun's furious aura fills the entire square. His anger is felt by everyone. Lady Seok expected this reaction, since Mokyogen had taken the sacred book. She suddenly realizes that if she tells about this now, she will destroy her third son without harming herself. Song Yun takes out some jewelry from the box and asks what it is. The clan leader and Sok were speechless when they saw the earrings. She turns around to see Mokyogen smirking, prepared for anything. The third son shouts out that these earrings belong to Sok. The leader is angry and already understands what Mokyogen wants, while Sok is seized with horror. Song Yun, clutching the jewelry in his hand with a cracking sound, says that the culprit will be punished. Mokyogen continues to accuse Seok of stealing, and the leader tries unsuccessfully to stop him. The other sons confirm that these are her earrings and believe Mokyogen. The third one, as if mockingly, keeps fanning the flames of discontent towards the lady. She tries to justify herself to the enemy leader, but this does not stop him. Her main argument is that if she stole the book, why would she leave her things there? She tries to point out the culprit, but is interrupted by Song Yun. At the last moment, the head of the Mok clan manages to deflect the blow of the sword aimed at Sok. The head itself from such a blow falls to the ground. Now Song Yun asks why he would want to spare the life of someone who doesn't know where his treasure is. Song Yun addressed the entire Sword Brotherhood, his voice echoing throughout the entire estate. Mokyogun suggests that the leader should still tell about his scar. The Sword Brotherhood ridiculed the union of earth and heaven and hid the book. After saying this, Song Yun raised his sword. With one smooth blow, he cut the Brotherhood guard in half. The rest of the guards watch in horror at what happened to their brother. The leader is angry and says that he will tell about the scar later, but this does not suit Mokyogun. Meanwhile, Song Yun continues to spill the blood of prisoners and promises that no one will leave the territory of the Brotherhood unharmed. The leader angrily asks if the third son wants his clanmates to die. He just waits for an answer to his question. Hoenn approaches everyone to inform them that Seok has been framed. He reports that the person who took the book put her earrings there on purpose. Each of the sons, albeit at different times, actually held this book in their hands. Mokyupyeong was sent it by Mokyogun through a servant, and Mokyucheon received it directly from him, supposedly for Mokyucheon's advantage as the future head of the clan. Hoenn, who is controlled by a demon monk, says that then the one who has the second book will be guilty. The sons realize the danger of the situation and begin to complain about Master Ho. Song Yun heard what Ho was talking about and liked the idea of finding the culprit. He suggests starting with the brothers and orders them to be dragged away and skinned. The clan leader can't take it anymore and says that the scar was left by a ghost blade, a ghost from the 6,800 Stars clan. The leader demands that the sacred book be brought here, but Mokyogun only smirks. He is glad because he finally learned more about him. The loud ringing of Taoist bells can be heard. The demon monk comes out of Master Ho's body. Everyone is shocked by what is happening. From behind, the Taoist master Shaman Cho appears with bells in his hand. He says that a black sheep spoils the whole flock. One glance was enough for Mokyogun to instantly understand how dangerous an opponent this was. The master raised his fingers near his face. Looking towards the demon that had escaped, he said that it was time to exorcise the spirit. Waving his hand and moving his fingers, the master cast a spell, the target of which was the demon monk. The body of the girl possessed by the demon monk was distorted in agony, and the demon monk himself was pulled out by the spell. Intending to complete the spell, the monk raised his hand to his face, telling the demon to prepare to return to oblivion. However, the ritual was not destined to end so soon, because the monk was interrupted by a dagger flying at him. One of the attackers immediately jumped up in front of the monk and blocked the knife flying towards him. The monk shouted, asking who dared to attack him. Another fighter ran up to the monk and asked if he was okay, after which the fighters turned their gaze to Mokyogun, calling him a puppy. Seeing who dared to attack him, the shaman only laughed and waved away the defenders with his hand. Holding an intricate staff with many bells on it, the shaman moved towards Mokyogun. Looking at Mokyogun's face, the shaman's eyes glowed with curiosity. He asked Mokyogun if he could see them too. Mokyogun answered the shaman that he did not understand what he was talking about. The guy thought that he got into the fight because he did not want to lose the demon monk, but he was too hasty. Looking at the monk, Mokyogun immediately realized that he was a very dangerous person, on par with the thug named Song Yun. Not hearing an answer from Mokyogun, the shaman assumed that the guy did not understand what was being discussed, after which he raised his staff, preparing to exorcise the spirit. With a wave of his staff, the demon monk and his vessel howled, surrounded by the spell seal. Continuing his spell, the shaman told Mokyogun that the others here had no idea what they were doing, because for them the guardian simply fell to the ground. He told the boy that one must be born with a talent for martial arts, but there are many fewer who have the gift of a shaman. Mokyogun did not answer. Pointing to his eyes, the shaman said that among shamans, Those who could see spirits were the most valued, because this is an exceptional skill that cannot be acquired through training. Looking at Mokyongun, the shaman summed it up by saying that the boy was born with the abilities of a great shaman. Finishing his speech, the shaman said that even he did not have such a gift, after which he said that Mokyongun could be proud of this. But the guy again replied that he did not understand what he was talking about. The shaman got a little angry that Mokyongun was pretending to be an idiot, after which he said that he would ask differently, and as he began to cast the spell, he asked why the guy interrupted him. Pillars of light burst out of the ground, surrounding the demon monk on all sides and forming a kind of cage. As the spell surrounded the demon, the shaman told Mokyongun that evil spirits usually do not follow people, but this creature is completely devoted to him. He asked Mokyongun how he managed to reach such a level, ordering him to speak or else he would cast out the demon. Instead of answering the shaman, Mokyongun immediately began to cast a spell, imitating every movement of the shaman. The shaman was shocked that the guy in front of him was not only capable of commanding the spirit, but that he was also capable of such spells. Mokyongun's spell surrounded the demon monk, completely shielding him from the shaman's spell. Not believing his eyes, the shaman said that the guy managed to cancel his technique using the same one, after which he asked if he had been taught the mysteries of shamanism. Looking questioningly at the shaman, Mokyongun asked if they really teach something like this somewhere. The discouraged shaman did not understand how the youth managed to repeat his technique after seeing it only once, because only a few masters are capable of creating such a technique. What seemed even more surprising to the shaman was that the guy created a spell over his own zone, and in the blink of an eye. The shaman realized that the guy was hiding much more talent within himself than the ability to see ghosts, which made him think. Unexpectedly for Mokyongun, the shaman burst into laughter and began to laugh uncontrollably. The shaman then lifted the restraining spell, releasing the demon monk. The shaman shouted to the Sword King that he didn't care about anyone else, but he would take Mokyongun with him. What they heard shocked everyone present, and the members of the Mok family opened their mouths in amazement. Heading towards the shaman, the King of Swords replied that he was talking nonsense again. The shaman retorted by saying that he was allowed to take any reward he wanted. Without arguing with the shaman, the man replied that he really didn't care, saying that he would kill the rest himself. Hearing that the Sword King intended to kill everyone present, the head of the Mok family looked at Mokyongun in fear. In response, he just chuckled and looked away, thinking that a deal is a deal. The King of Swords raised his blade over the heads of the servants of the Palace of Swords, and the terrified servants begged for mercy. Mokyongun asked the intruder to stop, saying that he had what they were looking for, and therefore the massacre should be stopped. In response to the guy's proposal, he replied that if Mokyongun was lying, the king would wrap his intestines around his fist, after which he asked where it was. Mokyongun only pointed to his head. Mokyongun said that what they were looking for was in his head, and he had burned the book itself a long time ago. Hearing Mokyongun's words, the man grinned, and then burst out laughing. Not understanding the man's reaction, Mokyongun asked why the King of Swords thought he was lying. He replied that this book could not be burned or destroyed in any way, because it was surrounded by powerful protection. Having said that the guy lied, the King of Swords swung his sword, adding that Mokyongun would learn to use his brains in the next world. The blade suddenly stopped at Mokyongun's neck when he said that the binding made of human skin really did not burn, but the text written in blood burned away. The man froze. He could not understand how the guy could have known that the book was written in blood. Thinking that only the elders knew about this, the King of Swords began to understand that the guy might not be lying. However, he still considered it impossible, because everyone who had read the book had died. Thoughts tormented the man. He could not understand whether the guy was really telling the truth about having read the book. The image of a dark and sinister man immediately appeared in the King of Swords' mind, forcing him to take a risk and test Mokyongun's knowledge. The man told Mokyongun to quote the book because he said he had the text in his head. Mokyongun thought that he could very well lie, but if the King of Swords knew the contents, it would cause problems, so he decided to quote a few verses. But as soon as he took a step, he stepped into a pool of blood, and the sky was covered in a crimson haze. Standing on top of the tower in the moonlight, Mokyonguna was transformed into a spirit that commanded blood. Crossing her arms over her chest, the spirit told the mortal that if he dared to speak, he would die immediately. Rivers of blood flowed towards Mokyongun's feet, and looking up to the sky, he saw what her anger really was. The wave of blood before his eyes was so huge that it could easily wash away the entire estate, leaving not a single stone unturned. Looking at the spirit's face, he also understood that the reason for the appearance of such a terrible illusion was an incomprehensible rage in its boundlessness. And this suffocating rage was aimed at the invaders in front of Mokyong-gung, the Heavenly Land Association. Standing in front of the fighters of the association, Mokyong-gun remained silent under the observation of the spirit. He did not understand why, but he knew for sure that the spirit sincerely hated them. Given the spirit's words, Mokyong-gun clearly understood that she didn't want the association to know what was hidden in the book. However, if Mokyong-gun tells this secret to the Sword King, then not only he will die, but the spirit itself. Telepathically, Mokyong-gun addressed the spirit, saying that she already understood all the risks, after which he said that he did not intend to die until he avenged his grandfather's death. The spirit replied that she knew about all the fears of her current owner, telling the guy to repeat after her. Mokyong-gun doubted it. He decided that the spirit would decide to say something different from the contents of the book, but if they knew about the contents, they would immediately understand that the guy was lying. Interrupting the guy's thoughts, the spirit tells him to do the same thing that she will do, and to trust her. Sighing, Mokyong-gun reluctantly walked towards the kneeling servants, and the King of Swords asked if the boy was going to speak. Suddenly, the guy snatched the sword from the guard's hands, confusing him and the servant next to him. The association fighter looked at the Sword King to see his reaction. The man only nodded that everything was under control. Holding the blade in his hand, Mokyong-gun stood in the middle of the square, his eyes closed and his concentration at its limit. The azure spirit took out her pipe and began to show movements, which Mokyong-gun repeated in sync with her. Illuminated by the moonlight, the spirit froze on top of the pagoda, imitating the movements of the spirit. Mokyong-gun froze under the gaze of the people around. Mokyong-gun opened his eyes and then recited a portion of the poem, "Moonless depths of the night, sowing seeds, wandering like clouds." The guy's words were immediately followed by a powerful but at the same time graceful lunge, reminiscent of an exquisite dance. Movement after movement, Mokyong-gun repeated exactly the movements of the spirit, as if they were one whole. Looking at the guy, the King of Swords was amazed. His movements were flawless, combining grace and power. His eyes rolled in admiration and a smile appeared on his face. It seemed to him as if he was watching a swordmaster, because the guy did not make a single mistake. He realized that what the guy was showing was nothing more than the lunar vein technique, which had been considered lost for many years. Having stopped moving, Mokyong-gun stopped, frozen in one position. He held the blade next to his face. The King of Swords closed his eyes. He never thought that the lost ancient technique would be able to be revived in such a strange way. Suddenly, Mokyong-gun broke the silence, saying out loud that the eternal glory of heavenly evil is something that cannot be resisted or stopped. Hearing the boy's words, the Sword King became agitated, shouting at Mokyong-gun to stop talking, since he couldn't let the others hear anymore. Lowering his sword, Mokyong-gun asked the man if this performance was enough to be believed. Without giving the guy an answer, the King of Swords thought about his new problem. The technique that Mokyong-gun showed can only be taught after receiving permission. The man's sword slid along the ground. He thought that forcing Mokyong-gun to show the technique was quite logical, and that now he could kill him right away. However, a shaman called out to him from behind, and upon hearing his address, the man's hand trembled slightly. Without saying a word, the shaman merely shook his head, clearly showing the King of Swords his disagreement with this decision. Looking at Mokyong-gun, the man realized that the shaman really wanted to get him, and the king himself was interested in him, because the guy could do what no one else in the organization could. The man understood that Mokyong-gun would not be able to copy the moon vein technique at his level, and so he noted his strange talent. While Mokyong-gun was swinging his sword, the man wondered what to do with this guy, because it would be a shame to kill him. Suddenly, unexpectedly for the King of Swords, Mokyong-gun brought the sword to his throat and began to cut. Blood immediately stained the blade. The man immediately jumped up to him, shouting that the guy was crazy, and knocked the blade out of Mokyong-gun's hands. The members of the association, together with the shaman, watched what was happening in shock without saying a word. Covering the wound on his neck with his hand, Mokyong-gun said that judging by the reaction of those present, the technique he demonstrated was extremely valuable. Horrified by the situation, the King of Swords couldn't understand what was wrong with this guy, because if he hadn't stopped him, Mokyong-gun would have really cut his own throat. Mokyong-gun said that now that he knew how valuable this technique was, he would not give up the association so easily. Rising from the ground, Mokyong-gun spread his arms, telling the Sword King to take him with them. All the inhabitants of the Sword Estate, standing to the side, listened to Mokyong-gun's request, with their mouths open in shock. Smiling broadly, the Sword King asked if this meant that Mokyong-gun would voluntarily join the Heavenly Land Association. Mokyong-gun grinned. He was sure that the leader of the squad understood that the man would not be able to get the secret technique from the guy with a simple threat or torture. Thanks to the fact that the association's fighters couldn't kill him, Mokyong-gun intended to use them to leave the mock sword estate. Under the moonlight, the association fighters were returning from the attack on the sword estate, with a carriage driving ahead of the group. Mokyong-gun was transported in this cart. His eyes and mouth were covered with cloth and his hands were tied to the cart. But in addition to Mokyong-gun, Mokucheon was also taken prisoner, desperately trying to understand why the choice fell on him. The association group stopped for a rest. One of the detachment commanders ordered the rest to rest, allocating half an hour for this. Mokucheon was tied next to Mokyong-gun inside the wagon, and boxes of food and supplies were carried next to them. Apparently unhappy with the current state of affairs, Mokucheon wondered why he had been taken hostage as well. 4 hours before the camp, the King of Luster knocked out Mokyong-gun, then demanded that the mock estate pay the remaining debt for stealing the association's treasure. The Black King put forward 2 conditions, one of which was that the mock sword estate would live in isolation for 10 years. The second was to take the successor hostage. Since the term successor meant the strongest person for the association, the choice immediately fell on Mokucheon. Trying to move his hands, Mokucheon admitted that he was tied up quite well, making sure that he could not use his internal chi. Although Mokucheon wasn't knocked out like Mokyong-gun, he was still quite happy with the outcome. Thinking about how this morning the guy had hoped to become the owner of the estate, he was disappointed to realize that now he was only a hostage. The guy's thoughts were interrupted by a quiet rustle next to him. There was no one in the carriage except him and Mokyong-gun, and acupuncture had been used on the latter, and he couldn't move. The blindfold was torn off Mokucheon's eyes, and it was done by none other than Mokyong-gun, which is essentially impossible since he should be paralyzed. Mokucheon shouted without thinking, asking Mokyong-gun how he managed to free himself, but Mokyong-gun pointed his finger at his lips and ordered the guy to shut up. The guy asked Mokyong-gun how he managed to escape from the bonds. He replied that he had his own methods, after which he promised to untie Mokucheon if he told him something. Tensing at the rather unexpected request given the current circumstances, Mokucheon asked what he wanted to know. Mokyong-gun's face immediately darkened, and with a serious voice he asked Mokucheon who the phantom sword of the 6 heavens and 8 stars was. Slightly surprised by what he heard, Mokyong-gun wanted to confirm whether Mokucheon's words meant that the phantom sword was somewhere nearby. Mokucheon replied that it was true, but it was just a rumor, even if it was one of the rumors that was trustworthy. As he thought about it, Mokyong-gun couldn't help but think that this made everything rather strange, since of all the possible places, the sword had to be in a very specific place. The Azure Spirit turned to Mokyong-gun and told the boy that she was done with the guards outside. Intending to keep his promise, Mokyong-gun began to untie Mokucheon, but the latter immediately shouted, asking if Mokyong-gun was going to escape from the association. The boy told Mokyong-gun that if they ran away, the association would definitely take revenge on the mock sword estate. But Mokyong-gun didn't care. Mokyong-gun told Mokucheon that if he did not want to go with him, he could stay in the carriage, and then knocked the guy out with a blow to the neck. When Mokyong-gun got out of the carriage, the Azure Spirit told the boy that they had better leave before the association shaman caught up with them. But as soon as the boy took a step out of the cart, he was overcome by a strange feeling, as if the world around him was shaking. The spirit looked at the frozen Mokyong-gun, asking what happened. The guy only looked at his own hands in confusion, trying to understand what happened. Jumping off the cart, Mokyong-gun replied that everything was fine, and the spirit immediately hurried him. While Mokyong-gun was stretching the muscles in his legs, the spirit asked him if everything would be okay, since it was his first time using Qigong. The guy answered the spirit that everything should go smoothly, after which he concentrated using a breathing technique. Mokyong-gun took off like lightning. The guy began to bounce from tree to tree, going deeper into the forest. Rushing through the forest thicket, Mokyong-gun thought that using Qigong he moves many times faster than running, and his body is light as a feather. Accompanied by the spirit, the boy ran through the moonlit forest. He was sure that he would be able to get out much faster than before. While running through the forest, Mokyong-gun passed by a strange-looking tree that resembled a snag. Running closer to this tree, Mokyong-gun suddenly stopped, which surprised the spirit. The spirit asked the guy what was wrong, to which Mokyong-gun replied that they had been running in circles all this time. He said that this was the 4th time he had seen this dried-up tree since they had run past it time after time. Turning to the spirit, Mokyong-gun said again that he was absolutely sure that he was wandering in circles in this forest. The spirit asked the boy if he meant that they could have fallen into some sort of illusion. Mokyong-gun says that it is possible. The spirit waved her hand and replied that Mokyong-gun was most likely mistaken, since she would have certainly sensed the illusion. Mokyung-gun didn't react to the spirit's words, but she echoed that the guy was just nervous and that they needed to hurry. Suddenly, the boy called out to the spirit. He told her that he had sprained his ankle because he had little experience in Qigong, adding that before going further, he needed to do something about it. Putting her hands on her hips, the spirit replied that Mokyung-gun was an idiot, after which she agreed to heal his leg. The spirit inserted the fingers of her hand into Mokyung-gun's palm, intending to heal the dislocation. Suddenly, Mokyung-gun grabbed the spirit by the neck, after first addressing her by name. Holding the spirit by the throat, Mokyung-gun asked who the one posing as the blue spirit really was. The spirit immediately shouted for the guy to let her go. Mokyung-gun replied that the blue spirit was strong enough to free herself. Mokyung-gun was squeezing the spirit's neck when suddenly her face began to crack, illuminated by a blue light. The guy said that the entity copied the wrong opponent. The boy's empty gaze was accompanied by a frightening smile. Mokyung-gun said that the impersonator should have tried harder. Soon, instead of the blue spirit, a wooden doll with a talisman on it was floating in front of Mokyung-gun. Pushing the doll away, Mokyung-gun folded his hands together and then began to prepare the technique of attracting joy and harmony. With every word Mokyung-gun spoke, small cracks appeared in the space in front of him. As soon as the guy completed his technique, the barrier he was in cracked, and a shaman appeared behind its fragments. The shaman sighed and couldn't believe that the guy had managed to cancel the Willow spiritual training technique in a couple of minutes, a spell that makes the enemy see the wooden doll as someone he trusts. The shaman spoke to Mokyung-gun, after which he invited the boy to become his disciple. Hearing Mokyung-gun's proposal, he immediately calculated that there were 10 steps between him and the shaman. The guy intended to take advantage of the fact that there was no one nearby and kill the shaman before he could do anything. But as soon as the guy took a step forward, something immediately left a cut on his cheek. Mokyung-gun saw that the shaman had erected a barrier around him. He asked if the guy was going to do something since there was no one around. The shaman said that he installed this barrier for exactly this reason, and as soon as the guy moves, his body will fly into pieces. He added that if Mokyung-gun wants to survive in such a harsh world, he should prepare well, and that this will be the first lesson. When Mokyung-gun told the shaman that he had not yet agreed to be his disciple, the shaman said that the boy was not at all decisive, after which he threw him a doll with a talisman on it. Holding the wooden doll in his hands, Mokyung-gun immediately realized that a demonic monk was imprisoned in it, but the guy was interested in how he managed to completely hide the spirit's energy. The shaman turned away, folding his hand behind his back. He told Mokyung-gun that it would be easier for him to survive in the association if the boy became his student, because there Mokyung-gun could die at any moment on the orders of the elder. After a short silence, Mokyung-gun looked at the doll, after which he finally agreed to become the shaman's apprentice. Mokyung-gun said that he did have one condition, however, and the shaman, not expecting to receive consent so soon, asked what it was. The guy replied that he didn't feel the doll's energy at all, after which he told the shaman to teach him this spell right now. The shaman laughed, after which he realized that he should have convinced Mokyung-gun with his skills from the very beginning. Not seeing a problem with this, the shaman agreed, because he would have taught the guy this anyway, but before that, he threw the beads to the guy, saying that he had to take an oath. Mokyung-gun had to put the beads on his hand, and then say that he, Mokyung-gun, the son of Mokindon, would become Aegun's disciple. The shaman said that this way the guy wouldn't be able to harm him, because you can't just trust someone who wanted to kill you and run away. Having put the bracelet on his hand, Mokyung-gun recited the oath that the shaman dictated to him, folding his hands in greeting. The beads that Mokyung-gun wore were nothing more than a bracelet of cursed words, and whoever swore an oath to something by wearing this bracelet would not be able to disobey the orders of the one to whom he swore an oath. Shaman Cho Aegun was one of those who always got what he wanted, and he used this method every time he wanted to get a disciple. After the boy uttered the oath with the bracelet on his hand, Aegun threw a book called Secrets of the Dead into his hands, adding that he had written it himself. Aegun told Mokyung-gun that the knowledge he needed was in it, and after studying it, he should return the book to the shaman. Mokyung-gun asked his teacher if he was going to remove the barrier. The shaman replied that the guy himself would find out how to remove it after reading the book. The shaman gave Mokyung-gun 2 hours to study the book, adding that the boy would not want to know what would happen if he did not succeed. Opening the book, Mokyung-gun could not help but be surprised that the shaman had already begun teaching him. As soon as the shaman went deep into the forest, a blue spirit approached Mokyung-gun, rejoicing that the shaman had finally left. Mokyung-gun immediately tried to grab the blue spirit by the neck, but she easily dodged it. The puzzled spirit asked Mokyung-gun what he was trying to do. The boy replied that it was a test. The spirit admitted that she watched as the shaman caught Mokyungun in an illusion, saying that watching him run back and forth was funny. Having stopped laughing, the spirit looked at Mokyungun's hand, saying that this bracelet was very powerful, after which she asked why the guy had taken the oath. Holding the book in his hands, Mokyungun replied that he wanted to get it. The spirit said that it was not at all like him to take an oath for the sake of a book. Mokyungun replied that in fact this bracelet meant nothing, after which he took it off in front of the spirit, who was in shock. The spirit could not understand how he removed such a powerful cursed object. Mokyungun replied that in order to take an oath one must use one's name, after which he continued, explaining to the spirit that in reality his name was not Mokyungun, and Mokyundan was not his father. The spirit asked the guy what he intended to do now. He replied that he was going to run away but changed his mind. Putting the bracelet on his hand, Mokyungun said that he would indeed become his disciple. The blue spirit immediately became alarmed. She asked if he really intended to join the association of heaven and earth. Mokyungun replied that he had heard something from Mokuchien regarding the phantom sword. He explained to Mokyungun that the 6 heavens and 8 stars are the names of the strongest people in Murim. The 6 heavens are those whose mastery has reached heights comparable only to the heavens, and those who have reached lesser heights are still considered incarnations of humanity, calling them 8 stars. Mokuchien said that Phantom Sword is one of the 8 stars, and is the most popular of them in the past 17 years. The Phantom Sword killed several orthodox martial arts masters. So many people thought that it was either from the royal court or from the association of earth and heaven. That's why Mokyungun was inspired to join the association, because that way he would have a chance to meet him. Mokyungun told the spirit that once he heard the shaman's offer to become his disciple, the boy could not ignore the opportunity to infiltrate the association. While puffing on her pipe, the spirit told Mokyungun that it seemed he was destined to go to the association from the moment they first met. Not understanding what exactly the spirit wanted to say, Mokyungun asked what it meant. The spirit also offered Mokyungun to become her disciple, and by accepting the spirit's karma, to avenge her. Mokyungun thought about it. He remembered that in the Sword Mansion, the spirit's anger was directed at a group of association fighters, concluding that the spirit was somehow connected to them. Although the conversation turned to revenge, Mokyungun asked if the spirit had not yet rested, considering that so much time had passed. In response to Mokyungun's question, the spirit asked in return whether the boy was going to wait for time to avenge him. She said she could not forgive the association until the truth was buried and their lineage lived and breathed. Blood gushed from the spirit's eyes. She didn't care how much time would pass because the anger in her soul would not subside. The blue spirit said that she wanted this anger tormenting her soul to go away, even if for this she had to drown the world in blood. As he sank deeper and deeper into the illusory ocean of blue spirit blood, Mokyungun felt cold and dark. Inside, the blue spirit lives a resentment that will not go away no matter how much time passes. Feeling her loneliness, Mokyungun realized that the blue spirit, just like him, had lived her life obsessed with revenge. Mokyungun agreed to become the blue spirit's disciple, and she was so surprised that she couldn't say a word for a while. Having exhaled the smoke, the spirit closed her eyes, saying that she did not expect any other answer. But Mokyungun put forward a condition to her. He wanted to know why the blue spirit was seeking revenge, as he didn't want to get involved in something incomprehensible. The blue spirit agreed to explain the reason, starting with the story that the association of heaven and earth consisted of 3 divisions, one of which was the division of the moon. Mokyungun asked the spirit if she was part of the moon division, but the spirit did not answer his question. He wanted to know what happened. Mokyungun wondered what could have happened if the spirit did not want to talk about it. However, without questioning the spirit, the guy decided that he would be able to find out in time anyway, after which he introduced himself with his real name Zhong. He vowed to inherit the spirit's will and therefore take up the division of the moon as her disciple. Exhaling smoke, the spirit condescendingly told Mokyungun that from now on he should call her nothing less than master. Mokyungun added that his second condition for consent would be the ability to disregard the formalities of a student and master. The spirit became angry, saying that he called the shaman his teacher. In response, the guy noted that the spirit herself, being his familiar, never once called him her master. Having brought the conversation to its logical conclusion, Mokyungun told the spirit that it was now time for them to leave, after which he prepared to dispel the barrier around himself. Meanwhile, it was already getting light. The shaman, surrounded by the association's fighters, stood near the cart, his hands folded behind his back, lost in thought. The shaman thought that it took Mokyungun much longer to get out of the barrier than he expected, deciding that he had expected too much from the newcomer. Just as he decided to go and free the boy himself, Mokyungun himself appeared from behind the trees, to the surprise of the fighters. The guy bowed to the shaman, informing the master that he had returned, while the shaman himself was surprised at what potential had fallen into his hands. But more than his student's talent, the shaman was glad that this student was in his power. The shaman told Mokyungun that he should rest because very soon they would continue their journey to the association. Mokyungun returned back to the carriage. This time he was sitting in it not tied up, unlike Mokuchion who was lying next to him. Mokyungun breathed a sigh of relief and noted that they had not been caught after all, saying that of all the possible things he had with him, the only one was a doll. A small wooden doll in the shape of a human suddenly burst out from under his robe. Mokyungun told the spirit to be careful, because a crack had appeared in the doll. The spirit was indignant and replied that the doll would break from the slightest movement. The guy promised to find a better vessel for the spirit a little later and asked to be patient, to which the spirit chuckled with displeasure. The spirit was surprised that Mokyungun managed to get rid of the spell so quickly, and he also managed to fill the doll with spirit, believing that if the shaman found out about this, he would have fainted. When the sun had already risen, many carts of the association's fighters were returning back to the fortress, and Mokyungun was riding in one of them. The journey to the Association of Earth and Sky had already lasted 2 weeks. The carts were traveling along a narrow path surrounded by rocks. Someone secretly watched the convoy's movements from a cliff and tried not to give himself away. The mysterious observer was none other than Kochan, now in the body of a girl, and wondering why all this was happening to him. He was only able to get this far, thanks to the connection that formed between him and Mokyungun when he made Gochan his familiar. Kochan felt anxious every time they separated, because he instinctively knew that if Mokyungun died, then he would not survive either. Wondering how he would be able to get into the Heavenly Land Association, Gochan couldn't believe that Mokyungun had become their hostage. Tracking Mokyungun's movements had become much easier since Gochang became his familiar, but he still couldn't muster the courage to infiltrate the association. Suddenly it dawned on the guy that he was now in the body of the granddaughter of the master of the Flying Assassin sect, and she must surely have a technique that would allow her to penetrate the enemy's land. Concentrating, Kokon tried to find something in the memory of his vessel that would help him penetrate the territory of the Heavenly Land Association. Almost falling asleep, he continued to concentrate, and a single image appeared in his mind, the honey trap technique. Realizing what exactly needed to be done to penetrate using this technique, Kokon blushed and began waving his arms hysterically. One of the convoy fighters heard the noise made by the hysterical Kokon. When the fighter turned around, Kokon barely managed to hide behind the rock. While hiding, Kokon thought that something was wrong because, for some reason, the convoy did not go straight to the association after receiving what they needed. Instead, the group walked back and forth, collecting many teenagers from each place they visited. Mokyung-gun, sitting in the carriage, was reading a book he had recently received from his new teacher of the Taoist art. His attention was drawn to a shout from outside the carriage, someone announcing that they had finally arrived at the association. Mokyung-gun looked out of the window of his carriage, tearing himself away from his reading. The teenagers who were walking in the convoy were looking ahead in fascination. Before them appeared a huge fortress with many buildings inside, divided by 2 gates, outer and inner. The carts approached the main gates of the fortress, which towered majestically over the surrounding area. The King of Swords noted that no matter how many times he passed through these gates, they always delighted the eye with their magnificence. The part of the convoy that Mokyung-gun was in was still moving toward the gate. The carts were surrounded by many teenagers. The spirit in the doll asked Mokyung-gun if he was nervous, and then added that he definitely should be nervous. She said that Mokyung-gun is now a first-class martial artist, although 2 weeks ago he was third-rate, but added that the guy still has a lot to learn. Mokyung-gun asked the spirit if he would have to absorb the deadly chi again, to which she replied that he would need enlightenment to do so, and that chi alone would not make him stronger. The spirit, lost in her thoughts, told the guy that she was with him just to help with this, but Mokyung-gun suddenly interrupted her. Looking out the window of the cart, the guy said that something was clearly wrong because their group was not heading towards the entrance. Instead, they turned away from the gate, heading somewhere else entirely. The door to the cart swung open and a shaman entered. He told Mokyung-gun that everything had not gone according to plan. Mokyung-gun asked the shaman what was going on, to which the teacher replied that there was no time to explain, while putting his hand in the pocket of his robe. The shaman placed a ring in Mokyung-gun's hand, explaining that with it, the boy would be able to use spells without a talisman. The annoyed master could not understand how something so absurd could happen, but Mokyungun replied that he did not understand what the master meant. The shaman replied to Mokyungun that the head of the Heavenly Land Association had ordered the two Mok brothers to be sent to the Valley of Bloody Corpses. Mokyungun asked the master again what Valley of Bloody Corpses he was talking about, looking at him in confusion. Suddenly, an image appeared before Mokyungun's face, a multitude of bloody bodies lying in the river and on the shore near it. The shaman told the guy that the Valley of Bloody Corpses was the association's testing ground. He added that the chance of surviving in such a place was less than 10%, and then asked Mokyungun to survive this ordeal. With malice in his voice, the shaman said that he would immediately ask the head of the association to take Mokyungun away from there, but until then the boy must survive. Someone in closed robes from head to toe interrupted the shaman's speech, saying that enough talk. In front of the cart stood three identically dressed people. The one standing in the middle replied that only those who had to pass the test could come in here. A man with shining blue eyes addressed Mokyungun, greeting him in an ominous voice in the Valley of Bloody Corpses. The moonlight fell on the mountain range. Between two long rocks, a small rope bridge was stretched connecting them. Under the supervision of mysterious examiners, the teenagers from the caravan crossed the bridge. Stretching, Mokyuchin grumbled discontentedly that after 2 weeks of shaking in the cart, they were being dragged somewhere again. Suddenly, Mokyuchin noticed that Mokyungun was walking not far ahead, which the guy was noticeably surprised about. Pushing aside the guys walking in front of him, Mokyuchin tried to reach Mokyungun, shouting for him to stop. However, one of the examiners stopped him by hitting him on the back with a stick and telling him to be quiet. Mokyuchin groaned in displeasure, indignant that their internal chai was blocked without any explanation. While Mokyuchin was ranting with dissatisfaction about the ruler's treatment of their captives, Mokyungun watched him silently. Looking at the guy in front of him, Mokyungun saw a forbidden path lock on his neck, a technique used to block energy. Mokyungun didn't understand why this technique was used not only on him and Mokuchion, but also on the other captives. Whispering with the azure spirit, Mokyungun hoped to find out what was going on, but the spirit replied that she did not know how the rulers conducted business, saying only that this had never happened before. The spirit told Mokyungun to be careful because she had a bad feeling about this. The test participants were led to the foot of a high cliff, at the base of which a small stage was built. Mokyungun noticed that other people had joined them along the way, making him wonder if the test was originally planned for them. Someone in a crimson-red mask addressed those present, announcing that their inspection would begin in this place. The test participants immediately turned all their attention to the masked man standing on the stage. The man said that the test started right now, after which he showed a small gray pearl. Pointing his finger to the other side of the river, the man said that such pearls are scattered throughout the valley, and whoever does not find such a pearl will fail the test. One of the participants raised his hand, saying that participants from many clans and nations had come a long way. He said that they all came to undergo a real test, but they are required to look for some kind of pearl. In response to the boy's objection, the man immediately shot the pearl into his face with great force, breaking the bones of his skull. The boy's body fell to the floor, blood spurting from his head as the shocked crowd watched the poor guy. The man's fingers were still smoking from the pearl attack, and he told the participants that their status, reputation, or anything else didn't matter here. He said that only the obedience of the participants was important here, and that if they asked questions or did not obey, they would die immediately. Having finished announcing the basic rules of the test, the man in the crimson mask resembling the face of a demon once again greeted the participants in the Valley of the Bloody Dead. The shaman was very angry that the King of Swords did not tell the head of the association that Mokyungun became his disciple. The man replied that there was no point in talking about it. The man asked if the shaman could remember even one case in which the head of the association had backed down from a decision he had made. The king concluded by saying that the orders of the leader were absolute and not negotiable, and therefore they had no choice. Disagreeing with the position of the King of Swords, the shaman said that he intended to try to rescue his student because he did not intend to lose such a capable guy. The King of Swords grinned, agreeing that the boy was capable. He thought that the boy had managed to repeat the style of the Moonblade that had been lost centuries ago. No matter how much the man thought about it, he could not understand why Mokyungun had to be dragged to the Valley of the Bloody Dead, when suddenly he realized. The King of Swords finally realized the true motive of the association leader. He sent Mokyungun to the valley to test him. The man in charge of the test raised a stick of incense, saying that the stick would burn for half an hour, and advised the participants to hurry, because there were fewer pearls than subjects. The participants immediately rushed to the river without missing a second and trying to overtake their opponents in the test. Mokyucho was also among those who ran to the river, but when he turned around he was extremely surprised. He saw that Mokyongu was standing motionless on the shore, while everyone else was rushing forward with all their might. Without delving into Mokyongun's motives, Mokyucho continued to run, thinking only that if he failed to find the pearl, he would be dead. The subjects rummaged around in the river, combing every meter of it, trying to find at least one pearl. Suddenly, one of the guys raised his hand up, after which he joyfully shouted that he had found a pearl. Laughing, he shouted that he had succeeded, being glad that he had managed to find the pearl first. One of the guys attacked the one who found the pearl from behind, trying to take it away. The guy immediately started running. The grinning guy continued to run, mockingly shouting that the thug wouldn't be able to catch up with him. Running up to the shore, he suddenly stopped, seeing Mokyongun standing motionless in front of him. At first, the boy thought that Mokyongun had quickly reached the shore, but he remembered that he had been standing here from the very beginning. The examiner just silently watched what was happening, waiting impatiently for what step Mokyongun would take. While the boy was standing in front of Mokyongun, his offender had already caught up with him, intending to take the pearl. Deciding that he would not be able to keep the pearl otherwise, the boy put it in his mouth, shouting that he would not give it to anyone. But when the boy tried to swallow the pearl, Mokyongun grabbed him by the throat. The thug rushing towards the guy immediately stopped, trying to understand what was happening and what Mokyongun intended to do. Holding the guy by the throat, Mokyongun chuckled, saying that he had unnecessarily complicated everything so much. Pressing his fingers into the guy's throat, Mokyongun felt the pearl inside, while the guy himself screamed shrilly from pain and horror. The examiner watched Mokyongun's actions with interest, just like all the other participants. A second later, Mokyongun forcefully ripped a chunk of flesh out of the boy's neck, leaving a gaping hole. Mokyongun let go of the boy's body, which immediately began to fall to the floor, while blood gushed from his throat like a fountain. The participants froze in horror as they watched the massacre of the unfortunate boy. The brute who had been bragging just a minute ago fell into the river in horror, shaking with terror and barely able to move. Mokyongun squeezed a pearl out of a piece of flesh right before the big guy's eyes. Holding the pearl in his hand, Mokyongun walked towards the examiner to present proof of victory. He held out the pearl with a bloody hand, his face breaking into a satisfied grin. Impressed by how Mokyongun had achieved his goal, the examiner decisively declared that the boy had passed. The examiner told Mokyongun that his number was 63, and then threw him an object. He explained to the guy that the balls they were supposed to find had numbers written on them. Mokyongun's ball had 63 written on it, so that was his name from now on. In addition to the ball, Mokyongun also held in his hands a silver plaque received from the examiner, which indicated that Mokyongun was the first to pass the test. Then one of the examiner's assistants took Mokyongun to a place where he could rest, while the other participants were busy with the exam. The examiner couldn't believe that Mokyongun was from an Orthodox family, and now he understood why the association leader had sent him to the test. Looking at Mokyongun, the examiner was looking forward to seeing how he would progress further. Holding the silver tablet in his hands, Mokyongun grinned. He had to survive by competing with others in a place where most people die. Looking at the other participants, Mokyongun clearly understood that the competition would be fierce. The incense stick continued to burn, leaving the participants with less and less time to complete the test. The search for pearls gave way to a mass brawl right in the middle of the river, where contestants fought among themselves. Some participants drove their opponents in groups, as if hunting a wild animal. However, the fleeing test participant was intercepted by another participant, covered in tattoos, who smashed his head against a rock. Grabbing the pearl, the guy assumed a proud pose, shouting that those who thirst for death might try to attack him. The examiner's assistants discussed the boy, realizing from his tattoos that he came from the Scarlet Valley of Death, one of the 3 divisions of the association. His department was one of the most notorious, and although it consisted of about 30 members, each of them was extremely experienced. Then their attention was drawn to a girl who was striking her opponents with precise and deadly stone throws. One of the observers recognized the serial murder in the Manhwa house in her technique, while the second one picked up on it, saying that this organization was one of the greatest, but came under the command of the association. Besides these two, they also noticed a huge guy from the Baekhyun sect, famous for its hand-to-hand combat techniques, and even with sealed chi, the guy was unstoppable. In addition to the descendants of great families and sects, the judges also singled out several capable candidates. The tattooed guy walked towards Mokyongun. He chuckled in displeasure because no one dared to attack him. Approaching Mokyongun, He said that he would not allow him to be first again, and that if he was first again, the guy would kill him. The only reaction from Mok Young-gun to the tattooed guy's words was a smile. Mok Young-gun definitely wanted to see how the guy was going to kill him. The incense stick had almost burned out and time was running out for the remaining participants. The test continued, and among the many bodies and participants beating each other, Mokyucho frantically tried to find the pearl. The guy was thinking that he wouldn't make it in time and was about to ask for mercy when he saw that a participant's head had been cut off nearby. The judge standing nearby repeated again that the boy should not have asked questions. The guys who passed by were watching what was happening. They were discussing that this guy had picked up the ball that was thrown out at the very beginning and that there was no number on it. Their attention was drawn to Mokyonggung standing by the shore with his hand outstretched. They were wondering why he was standing there if he had already passed. At this time, Mokyonggun was chanting a spell, a dark aura enveloping him as the boy spoke the words. Mokyonggun used the attachment technique, and since it did not require internal energy, he was confident that he could use it. The chi of all the dead that fell during the test penetrated into him, filling him with strength. He was pleased because here he managed to take much more chi than in the mock estate. With a wide smile on his face, Mokyonggun watched as the participants killed each other, because the more that died, the stronger he would become. When there was only a minute left, Mokyucho, with despair in his eyes, pounced on the boy who was lucky enough to find the pearl. He dealt blow after blow to the guy's face, not stopping for a moment even when the guy no longer resisted. When his opponent breathed his last, Mokyucho picked up the pearl from the dead body. Mesmerized by his success, he was happy, looking madly at the pearl and sitting on his knees. However, the incense stick burned out completely, signifying that the test had come to an end. As soon as the test was over, the examiner ordered the killing of all those who were unfortunate enough to fail it. Bodies were falling and heads were flying around Mokyuchian. He just stood there in confusion, not understanding what to do. One of the judges, covered in blood and holding a sword in his hand, approached the stunned guy holding the pearl in his hands. Placing his hand on the trembling Mokyuchian's shoulder, the judge uttered the cherished words, "Passed." As soon as the judge walked away from the guy, he immediately fell off his feet straight into the water, unable to squeeze a word out of himself. Surrounded by corpses, Mokyuchian sat in the water holding his head, unable to believe that he had managed to get through. Then looking down at his bloody hands, Mokyuchian finally realized what he had done. The examiner said that 468 people survived, which is about 60%, and then congratulated the survivors. But then the examiner immediately announced that the next test would begin right now.